Chapter 469. In the battle with Taoist Lu Hai, Lu Ping consumed most of the qi in his body. However, Lu Ping still defeated this demon cultivator who had just advanced to the late stage of core forging realm. After Lu Ping swallowed Taoist Lu Hai's golden core into the Linchuan cauldron and refined the divine sense in it, both sides of the human race who had been watching the battle between the two had a look of disbelief. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief. After Taoist Ao Lai and Taoist Mo Wei trapped Taoist Chu Xuanqing, the demon race's biggest source of confidence in occupying Huangli Island was Taoist Lu Hai. This 7th-level core forging realm cultivator was enough to defeat all the human cultivators who dared to stop the demon race from reclaiming Huangli Island. However, the demon race's most confident existence was killed by Lu Ping. This was a heavy blow to the demon race's morale. If there were no accidents, with him killing Taoist Lu Hai as a deterrent, the demon race would have no hope of occupying Huangli Island and would quickly retreat. Lu Ping's whole body relaxed. However, in this moment of relaxation, a strange iron mace with a thick top and thin bottom suddenly struck silently from behind Lu Ping. This was not only out of Lu Ping's expectation, but also out of everyone else's expectation. After Lu Ping killed Taoist Lu Hai, among the cultivators present, except for Taoist Ao Lai and Taoist Mo Wei who were fighting with Chu Xuanqing, who else dared to attack Lu Ping? Lu Ping's divine sense finally found something wrong the moment the iron mace was about to hit him. The protective aura around his body quickly expanded outwards. The golden scale sword that was swimming beside Lu Ping immediately blocked the iron mace that was coming towards Lu Ping. Amidst a loud clang, the golden scale sword finally collided with the metal truncheon just as it was about to reach him. A series of sparks flew. The golden scale sword finally blocked the metal truncheon, but it was also sent flying. However, after this tower-shaped metal truncheon was blocked by the golden scale sword at the base, the body and tip of the tower bent and rapidly fell forward with great force. Pa! Under the stunned gazes of the surrounding cultivators, the iron mace hit Lu Ping's protective aura in a strange way. 5 of the 6 layers of protective aura were broken in the blink of an eye, leaving only the most solid Kuei water true aura barely blocking in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping's body flew forward with all his might, trying to neutralize the impact of the iron mace breaking the protective aura. However, when the huge force broke the protective aura layer by layer, it messed up the circulation of the true essence in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping fled while coughing. At the same time, he tried his best to suppress the boiling true essence in his blood. A trace of blood overflowed from the corner of Lu Ping's mouth as he coughed. If Lu Ping hadn't consumed too much true essence in the battle with Taoist Lu Hai, the same attack would not have forced Lu Ping into such a passive position. Although the owner of the iron mace did not expect that under his sneak attack, Lu Ping could still have such a fast reaction speed and had an extraordinary protective aura, this sneak attack had, after all, taken the initiative. The iron mace turned in the air, letting the golden scale sword in front of him continue to hit behind Lu Ping. The speed of the lightning made Lu Ping unable to turn around to face the enemy, and the sneak attacker obviously did not want to give Lu Ping a fair chance to compete. However, the sneak attacker had miscalculated, or it could be said that the sneak attacker thought that Lu Ping had made a mistake. After escaping the initial sneak attack, Lu Ping did not escape again. Instead, he suddenly turned around and faced the sneak attacker behind him. The sneak attacker was immediately overjoyed. In the instant that Lu Ping turned around, the strange iron mace had once again hit toward Lu Ping. In the view of the sneak attacker, even if this attack could not kill Lu Ping, it could at least severely injure him. Lu Ping stared at Aojia's face with a pair of obsidian eyes that were like 2 sharp swords. He held a broken flag in his hand and waved it at the incoming iron mace. A black light barrier instantly appeared in front of Lu Ping, shielding him from the incoming attack. Aojia had seen the power of Lu Ping's little flag when he blocked Lu Ping's attack from Taoist Lu Hai. The little flag's defensive power was only comparable to a top-grade spirit-channeling mystic treasure with 6 layers of seals. Aojia was the most outstanding monster cultivator among the 3rd generation of the primordial crocodile clan. His iron gen itself was a top-grade spirit-channeling mystic treasure. It was made from the tail of the primordial crocodile clan, along with many rare spirit materials. The iron gen was also a top-grade spirit-channeling mystic treasure. In a head-on confrontation, Aojia was confident that he could directly shatter the black light curtain cast by Lu Ping's little flag. However, Aojia soon found that the black light curtain cast by Lu Ping with the water-controlling flag was slightly different this time. From time to time, the shadows of White Lotus flashed in the black light curtain. Aojia had no time to think about the difference between these white lotuses and the black curtain of light. the iron truncheon once again struck the black curtain of light. However, contrary to Aojia's expectations, the black curtain of light was like a stream of water, continuously sending white lotuses over. The iron truncheon shattered one lotus but was blocked by another. In the end, it was unable to break through the black curtain of light. The golden scale sword flew back, ready to fight. The iron mace returned without any success, waiting for an opportunity. Lu Ping looked at the dark-skinned, burly and hostile young man in front of him, frowned and said, "Primitive giant crocodile? Do you have a name?" The dark-skinned young man smiled fiercely and said, "I have always heard that you are strong, and today I see that you are indeed worthy of your reputation. However, although the 2 attacks just now did not take your life, I am afraid that you are not feeling good now. After fighting continuously, how much strength do you have to fight against me?" Lu Ping smiled lightly and said, "You can try." Aojia could not see the depth of Lu Ping's face. The iron mace in his hand swayed and pointed at Lu Ping, but it was difficult to guess where he was going to attack. From the opponent's means just now, Lu Ping could already perceive that although this primitive giant crocodile's cultivation was only at the 6th level of core forging, its strength was not much weaker than Taoist Master Lu Hai. He was afraid that the person in front of him was the real trump card of the demon race in attacking Huangli Island, so he was also ready to fight. Just when the battle between the two was about to break out, the teleportation array guarded by the cultivators of Huangli Island suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. Amidst the deafening cheers of the cultivators of Huangli Island, Jinling reinforcements from Dikuan Island, led by Taoist Master Xian Chang, a total of 6 people appeared on Huangli Island. Taoist Master Xian Chang's divine sense instantly covered more than half of Huangli Island, and then he ordered Taoist Master Xian He and the others who followed behind him, expel the demon race from Huangli Island, and kill all those who resist. 5 mid-stage core forging cultivators quickly joined the battle, and this new force quickly changed the situation of the 2 races on Huangli Island. Taoist Master Xian Chang flew to join the battle above Huangli Island, followed by a series of earth-shattering explosions in the sky, and at the same time Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing's hearty laughter could be heard. In the sky, 2 rays of light flew away, and Taoist Master Mo Wei's voice came from afar. "Boys of the demon race, the situation is hopeless, quickly retreat from Huangli Island." Aojia fiercely put away the iron mace and said to Lu Ping, "Count yourself lucky, remember Aojia will take your life next time." Lu Ping smiled contemptuously, "Next time? Do you think I will give you another chance?" Aojia snorted coldly, turned around and fled out of Huangli Island. Lu Ping didn't chase after him, but he didn't dare to be careless again, fearing that he would repeat the same mistake as before. He quickly swallowed a healing pill refined with spirit water, and began to fight with the cultivators of Dikuan Island who came to help, killing those demons who hadn't retreated in time. Since the cultivators of Dikuan Island came to help, it meant that Xianling sect's siege on Tianling Mountain had been broken, and Jinling had freed up his hands to fight against the demons who were taking advantage of the situation. The demons who were restraining Taoist Master Xian Chang on Dikuan Island must have found out about this and quickly retreated. Therefore, Taoist Master Xian Chang led the cultivators to reinforce Huangli Island. With the help of Taoist Master Xian Chang and the others, the demon cultivators who invaded Huangli Island were quickly wiped out. Hu Lili led her junior martial sisters and disciples to quickly repair the broken formation plates on Huangli Island and restore the island's protective array formation. In this battle, the demons returned in defeat, but Jinling's side also paid an extremely heavy price. On Jinling's side, including Lu Ping's companions and Taoist Master Xiance's group who came to Huangli Island to prepare to go out to sea, a total of 18 core forging realm cultivators fought against more than 20 core forging realm experts led by 3 late core forging realm demon cultivators. Although the cultivators on Jinling's side were at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation, Yin Xianchu, Ji Xianxian, Yao Yong, Du Feng, and the others were Jinling's most outstanding 3rd-generation disciples. Although they were no match for the mid-core forging realm demon cultivators, they were still able to hold off the mid-core forging realm demon cultivators for a while. Especially after Lu Ping appeared in time. First, he severely injured a mid-core forging realm demon cultivator who was fighting against Chen Lian and Taoist Master Shen Tao. Then, he seriously injured another mid-core forging realm demon cultivator and forced him to escape. Then, when Yao Yong killed Lu Hai, Yin Shenchu and the others took the opportunity to kill another mid-core forging realm demon cultivator. At this time, Jinling's disadvantage in the battle between core forging realm experts was suddenly reversed. Even so, on Jinling's side, 3 outer core forging realm cultivators who followed Taoist Master Xian Su to Huangli Island died. Jianghu was seriously injured and in a coma. Whether she could break through to the mid-core forging realm in the future was a problem. Yao Yong encountered the primordial giant crocodile Audiobook who later attacked Lu Ping and was seriously injured. At this time, Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing was furious. Fortunately, after Lu Ping examined Yao Yong, he found that although Yao Yong's injuries were serious, they did not damage his foundation. However, he was afraid that it would be difficult for him to recover without a few years of recuperation. Zhong Jian, Ma Yu and his wife as well as Du Feng, Yin Shenchu, Ji Shenshen, and Taoist Master Xian Su, the 6 people who fought against the mid-core forging realm demon cultivators were also seriously injured. The only ones who were still in good condition were Shi Lingling, Hu Lili, Chen Lian and Taoist Master Shen Tao. Shi Lingling's body was full of treasures. Just like Lu Ping's junior sister Jiang Shenshen, if she couldn't win she would use countless high-level talismans. The talisman weapons made by Fa Xiang Laozu were thrown out as if they were free. Instead, she successively killed 2 early core forging realm demon cultivators who were besieging her and scared the remaining one away. Hu Lili had the purple crystal bee demon soldier formation to protect her. Even a mid-core forging realm demon cultivator would have to avoid the formation formed by more than 1,000 fist-sized purple crystal bees. Chen Lian and Taoist Master Shen Tao were relatively lucky. After killing a mid-core forging realm demon cultivator, they didn't encounter another mid-core forging realm demon cultivator. When the 2 of them joined forces, the other early core forging realm demon cultivators couldn't do anything to them. However, the 3 of them also had a dispirited appearance, as their true essence was greatly damaged. Among them, Hu Lili had to force herself to repair Huangli Island's island protecting array with the help of her junior sisters. Wan Lu Qiner had learned a lesson this time. First, she hid among the demon cultivators and took the opportunity to sneak attack a core forging realm demon cultivator. After that, she was chased by a mid-core forging realm demon cultivator. Helpless, she hid in Hu Lili's demon soldier formation. The demon cultivators couldn't do anything to this demon soldier formation and could only resentfully retreat. Lu Ping had a huge battle with Taoist Master Lu Hai. After that, he was sneak attacked by the primordial giant crocodile Audiobook. In fact, his body was also quite heavily injured. Fortunately, his body was much stronger than ordinary cultivators because he had taken the gold quality pill and bone forging pill. In addition, his true essence was much more vigorous than ordinary people. Therefore, Lu Ping endured the injuries on his body and thanked Taoist Master Shen Chang and the others who came to support him. After that, he hurriedly began to restore order to Huangli Island. In this battle, Huangli Island suffered heavy losses. There were nearly 3,000 blood condensation and blood refining realm cultivators on the island. Only slightly more than half of them survived. Most of the cultivators who died were killed by the early core forging realm demon cultivators. This was because Hu Lili had learned her lesson when the demon clan destroyed the teleportation array in advance. She had set up a small protective array around the teleportation array in the middle of the island's protective array. It was precisely this array that allowed many cultivators on the island to defend the teleportation array while resisting the attacks of the core forging realm demon cultivators. Thus they were able to survive. Just as Lu Ping had arranged everything, he asked Fang Tao to lead Junling and the surviving cultivators to restore order to Huangli Island. The teleportation array on the island lit up again. A figure that was extremely familiar to Lu Ping appeared in Lu Ping's vision. Lu Ping's face lit up. He quickly walked forward and said, "Master Immortal Lu, why are you here? Does Martial Uncle Gua have any instructions for me?" Master Immortal Lu also walked over quickly. However, he looked a little anxious. He grabbed Lu Ping's arm and took 2 steps to the side. He said in a low voice, "Something happened. The sects in the North Sea are pressuring our sect to capture junior brother Yin Xianchu. Master said that if we capture him, his life will be in danger. I'm afraid that even our sect is powerless this time. You must be prepared." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Although he had already expected this situation to happen and had made preparations in advance, when it really happened, Lu Ping couldn't help but feel disappointed. In the end, the sect still couldn't withstand the pressure and protect its own disciple. However, the fact that Master Immortal Lu had rushed over to inform the sect was most likely due to enlightened Master Guoxuanshan's guidance. Perhaps this was also the sect's attitude that they were unwilling to admit. Chapter 470. Master Immortal Lu Ziyuan was known as Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan after advancing to the core forging realm. He was Enlightened Master Guishuanshan's fifth direct disciple. Enlightened Master Guishuanshan's eldest disciple died in a demonic beast's attack before advancing to the core forging realm. His third disciple was limited by his aptitude and was stuck in the ninth layer of the blood condensation realm for several years before his lifespan ran out. Although his second and fourth disciples had broken through to the core forging realm, they were stuck at the threshold of the mid-core forging realm for over 100 years. Before Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan advanced to the core forging realm, he looked like a mediocre blood condensation realm cultivator. Blood condensation realm cultivators had a lifespan of 300 years at most. Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan spent over 150 years to successfully advance to the core forging realm. Compared to geniuses like Lu Ping and the others, the difference was like heaven and earth. However, Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan was a person of innate talent. His aptitude wasn't outstanding, but he had great perseverance and wisdom. He was willing to sacrifice his cultivation speed and spend over 100 years polishing his cultivation base, laying down a solid foundation and accumulating a rich foundation. It wasn't until the North Sea opened up the buffer zone that Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan made a name for himself at the late blood condensation realm and was listed as one of the North Sea's 18 generals. After that, Taoist Master Lu Shenyuan successfully advanced to the core forging stage. Due to the accumulation he had accumulated in his early years, his progress was unstoppable. In just a few decades, he had broken through the mid-stage core forging stage and reached the fifth layer core forging stage. He was quite famous among the mid-stage core forging stage disciples of Zhenling sect. He was the typical late bloomer among Zhenling sect cultivators, and he was also Taoist Guishuanshan's designated successor. If it wasn't for the fact that Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan advanced to the core forging realm late and that the North Sea's rookie list had a limit of 100 years of cultivation time, he would have long been on the list with his strength. After Hu Lili finished repairing the island's protective array, Spiritual Master Shen Chang and Spiritual Master Chu Xuanqing left first, leaving only Lu Ping and his companions on Huangli Island, as well as Spiritual Master Lu Shenyuan and Chen Lian's junior brother, Spiritual Master Shen Tao. Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing originally wanted to take Yao Yong away, but after Yao Yong woke up, he insisted on staying on Huangli Island. Yao Yong's reason was very simple. If he stayed on Huangli Island to guard an alchemy grandmaster, his injuries would recover faster. Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing chuckled and left first. After listening to Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan's brief account of the battle on Tianling Mountain, and hearing that Dao Xing Laozu wanted all the islands within 1,000 miles of Huangli Island, everyone cursed loudly. Lu Ping narrowed his eyes slightly, and a cold light radiated from his eyes, while Yin Xuanchu's body emitted a coldness that was even stronger. When they heard that Yuan Guang Laozu from the Crystal Palace had appeared and was obviously biased, everyone was a little annoyed. Although no one here except for Lu Ping had been to East Sea, everyone knew a thing or two about the power of the Crystal Palace. This was a giant sect that was even more powerful than the Fei Ling sect that existed 4,000 years ago. When they heard that Tiankang Laozu had appeared out of nowhere, and that the 4 mid-Dharma Laozu from Jinling had scared off the Shenling sect, and that even Yuan Guang Laozu had tactfully retreated in the end, everyone cheered again. Everyone's face was full of joy and pride. The 4 mid-Dharma Laozu, at the moment when Tiankang Laozu appeared, had in fact announced the change of ownership of the number 1 sect in North Sea. Yao Yong was a straightforward person. Although he was seriously injured and his face was sallow, he still could not help but ask, "Immortal Elder, didn't Elder Tiankang reach the end of his lifespan and have been relying on the elixirs refined by our sect to prolong his life? How did he suddenly advance to the mid-Dharma stage?" Although Yao Yong and the others were all third-generation disciples of Jinling like Perfected Lu Shenyuan had been the leader of the 7th group in Jinling Courtyard and had been respected by everyone. Therefore, even though most of them were now core forging adepts, Yao Yong and the others were still used to addressing Perfected Lu Shenyuan as Immortal Elder. Perfected Lu Shenyuan pondered for a while and said, "The specifics may involve a big secret of our sect, and only the few Laozu in our sect know about it. However, I've heard Master Jinrengua mention that Elder Tiankang was indeed on the verge of reaching the end of his lifespan, and he did indeed rely on the elixirs to prolong his life. However, the elixirs that our sect found for Elder Tiankang not only helped to prolong his life, but also gave him an additional 30 years of lifespan. It seems that Elder Tiankang used these extra 30 years of lifespan to perform a secret technique of our sect. At the cost of these 30 years of lifespan, he triggered the tribulation of the early Dharma stage. Elder Tiankang was already at the peak of the early Dharma stage, and after passing the tribulation not only did his injuries heal, but he also gained an additional 200 years of lifespan. Everyone was overjoyed, but Lu Ping was frowning and no one knew what he was thinking. After a while he asked, "Immortal Lu, other than using the precious elixirs as the price, is there anything wrong with this secret technique?" Everyone knew that Lu Ping was a master of alchemy, and he had a deep understanding of these secret techniques that used up lifespan and healed injuries. Since he said that there was something wrong with it, then there really was something wrong with it. Hence, everyone quietened down and listened to perfected Lu Xuanyuan's explanation. Enlightened Master Lu Xuanyuan looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "Junior brother Lu, you are indeed an alchemy master. Teacher once said that this secret skill is a death trap. If it wasn't for martial uncle Tian Kong who was already at the last step to enter the mid-dharma stage before he was injured, it would have been extremely difficult for him to survive." At this point, perfected Lu Xuanyuan paused as if recalling what perfected Gua had said before and then said, "There is indeed something wrong with this secret technique, but Master did not explain it clearly. It seems that although Elder Tian Kong had advanced to the mid-dharma stage, his actual lifespan was not as long as other mid-dharma adepts like Laozu." Lu Ping nodded and said, "That's right, this secret technique was used when Elder Tian Kang's lifespan was about to run out. At the moment when Elder Tian Kong advanced to the mid-dharma stage, he was actually equivalent to a 1,000-year-old adept. His actual lifespan was only the 200 years that a mid-dharma adept would have compared to an early dharma adept." "What?" Shi Lingling exclaimed, somewhat losing her composure. "That's impossible. Grandfather has only cultivated for 700 years now. According to the lifespan of a mid-dharma adept, which is close to 1,200 years, grandfather should have at least 400 years left to live. How could it only be 200 years? Everyone had been guessing which descendant of Laozu Shi Lingling was, but Shi Lingling had always been tight-lipped, so no one had asked. Now that she had said it herself in a moment of desperation, everyone knew that Shi Lingling was actually Tian Kang's granddaughter, Laozu. When a practitioner advanced to the core forging stage, their lifespan would be extended to 500 years. After advancing to the mid-core forging stage, the practitioner's lifespan would be extended to another 100 years. When they reached the late core forging stage, their lifespan would be extended to 700 years. And once a practitioner crossed the threshold of the Dharma stage, their lifespan would be extended to 800 to 1,000 years. While a mid-Dharma adept like Laozu could live for 1,200 years, when he reached the late Dharma stage, his lifespan would be extended to a terrifying 1,500 years. Lu Ping sighed and said, "Although I don't know the contents of the secret technique, my guess is most likely correct. It's just that I didn't expect Sister Shi Lingling to be the descendant of Elder Tian Kong. But there's nothing we can do about it. Elder Tian Kang's lifespan was depleted because he used the secret technique all those years ago. If he didn't use this technique to fight for his life, I'm afraid he would have died by now. Although this technique reduced Elder Tian Kang's lifespan as a mid-Dharma adept by more than 200 years, he still came back to life in the end. Furthermore, he's no longer in a state where he was heavily injured and on the brink of death. Instead, he's now a true mid-Dharma adept." Shi Lingling also knew that what Lu Ping said was right, but since this matter concerned her own family, Shi Lingling could not help but feel emotional. Hu Lily and the rest consoled her from the side, and only then did Shi Lingling calm down. But these are all minor details. Right now there's something more important. As Lu Ping spoke, he glanced at Yin Shenchu out of the corner of his eye. Yin Shenchu seemed to have sensed it and raised his head slightly, but his expression was still as cold as ice. Lu Ping nodded at perfected Lu Xuanyuan. Perfected Lu Xuanyuan also glanced at Yin Shenchu and sighed inwardly. He repeated what he had said to Lu Ping earlier. "What?" Yao Yong ignored the injuries on his body and jumped up immediately. He roared, "Are you kidding me? Our Junling is now the #1 sect in the North Sea. Why should we listen to 4 mid-Dharma adepts like Laozu? How can we just hand Brother Yin over just because they say so? How can the sect do this? Wouldn't that disappoint everyone?" Everyone was still shocked by Yin Xuanchu's identity as a descendant of the human and demon race. Seeing that Yin Shenchu was still sitting there without any expression on his face, everyone knew that his identity as a mixed-blood human and demon was real. However, Yao Yong had already started shouting loudly without a care. Perfected Lu Xuanyuan smiled bitterly. "Brother Yao, be careful with your words. Since ancient times, humans and demons have always been at odds with each other. This is a matter of great righteousness and no one can do anything about it. Now that Brother Yin's identity has been exposed, even if our sect is the strongest in the North Sea, We can't withstand the attacks of all the cultivators in the North Sea. Moreover, there's also Xianling sect and Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace secretly adding fuel to the fire. Now that our Jinling tree attracts the wind, everyone in the North Sea cultivation world is watching our sect. If we're even the slightest bit careless, we'll lose everything. Be careful with your words. Be a descendant of the human and demon race, my ass. Yao Yong was already seriously injured, and after shouting he was already coughing non-stop. However, he still insisted. I only know that Brother Yin is my brother. Even if he's a demon, he's still my brother. Yin Xuanchu's body trembled. Ji Xianxian, who was beside him, patted his shoulder but didn't say anything. Shi Lingling frowned and said unhappily, Brother Yao, Master Immortal Lu was instructed by Uncle Master Guo to deliver the message. Uncle Master Guo is our sect's deacon. Since he did this, doesn't that represent the sect's attitude? Moreover, Master Immortal Lu came to deliver the message out of goodwill. Who are you shouting at? Why don't you shout at Dao Sheng and Yuan Guang? Yao Yong's face turned red, and he jumped up from the ground again. He bowed to perfected Lu Shenyuan and said, Master Immortal Lu, please forgive me for being rude. I'm not targeting you. Lu Shenyuan smiled bitterly. It's fine. But how are we going to resolve this situation? I'm afraid it won't be long before someone comes to capture Brother Yin. We have to deal with it before they come. At this moment Yin Xianchu suddenly stood up and said, This matter has nothing to do with everyone. I'll deal with it myself. With that, he was about to walk out of the cave abode when a figure flashed in front of him. Lu Ping was already in front of him. Chapter 471. Lu Ping stood in front of Yin Xianchu and said in a low voice, Where are you going? Yin Xianchu was stunned. After a long while he finally said, Run. Lu Ping nodded and said, Not bad. At least you haven't lost your mind and fought with Xianling sect. But let me ask you, where can you escape to? Yin Xianchu raised his head to look at Lu Ping. Only now did he realize that if the sects of the North Sea had forced Jinling to do so, there would be no place for Yin Xianchu in the North Sea cultivation world. Wherever he went, there would be calls for him to be beaten up. When Yin Xianchu stood up earlier, he had indeed held his breath and wanted to fight with Xianling sect. His mother was killed by Xianling sect, and his father, the mysterious Yin spiritual master, also died because of Xianling sect. Since he couldn't tolerate both the human and demon races, he naturally had thoughts of weariness. However, when Lu Ping stood in front of him and asked loudly, Where are you going? He suddenly realized that he was still carrying the blood feud of his parents. He definitely couldn't seek his own death so easily. He had to survive at all costs and then become stronger. Only then could he avenge his parents. At this time Ji Xianxian also walked over and said, I'm afraid you can't stay in the North Sea. Once your identity is known, the North Sea will be an inescapable trap for you. Unless you can hide in a place forever, there's no need to even think about the demon race's territorial waters. In this case you can only escape to the East Sea. Yes, only to the East Sea. At this time Shi Lingling also spoke, But how can I escape to the East Sea? You should know that the transportation array between the North Sea and the East Sea is controlled by the various sections. Junior Brother Yin, going there now is like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth. Everyone looked at Lu Ping. Lu Ping shook his head and said, It was by chance that I was able to reach the East Sea back then. That transportation array has long been destroyed by me. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. However, they heard Lu Ping say, For now, there is actually another transportation formation that leads to the North Sea, and that is Universe Island. Everyone fell silent when they heard this. Universe Island was where the headquarters of the North Sea's Human Cultivation World Alliance was located. The North Sea's 10 great sects as well as several renowned sects and clans had set up branches on Universe Island. As a result, there were as many experts as there were clouds in the sky on Universe Island. The security there was so tight that it was not inferior to the bases of the North Sea's 10 great sects. Yao Yong was very anxious and wanted to say something. However, he was seriously injured and couldn't help in this matter. Therefore he didn't say anything in the end. Right at this moment, another person hurriedly ran into Lu Ping's cave. When he raised his head and saw that there were many people here, he didn't have time to be surprised. When he saw that Yin Xianchu was here, he said, I received news that the sect wants to capture Senior Brother Yin. The person who came was Zhang Xuanqing. After he advanced to the core forging stage, he had been helping True Spirit Side Courtyard's Master Profound Miao take care of the Side Courtyard's affairs. Therefore this time, Lu Ping didn't ask for his help. Zhang Xuanqing hurriedly came to report the news, but when he saw that everyone in the cave was indifferent, he couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Yao Yong said in a bad mood, "We already knew that the sect wants to capture junior brother Yin. Master Immortal Lu has already arrived." Only then did Zhang Xuanqing see that Master Immortal Lu was also in the cave. However, Zhang Xuanqing didn't have time to greet Master Lu Xianyuan. He hurriedly said, "No, when I arrived, the news had already spread throughout Heaven Spirit Mountain. It said that senior brother Yin is a human and demon." Zhang Xuanqing looked at Yin Xianchu and directly skipped the rest of the sentence. He said, "All the major sects have sent people to our sect, saying that they want to supervise our sect's cleansing. Now, our sect's master Profound Shu has already brought cultivators from various sects to Huangli Island." "Bullshit." Yao Yong immediately flew into a rage. "What do you mean by cleansing?" Yin Xuanchu's entire body trembled. Although he tried his best to suppress it, the coldness in his heart immediately turned into boundless killing intent. The temperature in the cave dropped rapidly. It was obvious that Yin Xianchu could no longer control his emotions. Lu Ping patted Yin Xuanchu's shoulder. A faint blue light flashed and Yin Xuanchu's aura gradually stabilized. "They came so quickly. We also need to quickly come up with a plan. If this goes on, we can only wait here for Martial Uncle Xian Shu to come and capture us," Ji Xianxian said anxiously. He had always been quite quick-witted. The severity of this matter was far more serious than before. Even he was at a loss for what to do. At this moment, Zhang Xuanqing smiled somewhat complacently. He waved the item in his hand and said, "They won't be able to come for a while." After receiving the news, I immediately rushed over. At the same time, I conveniently took this item from the teleportation formation. If they want to use the teleportation formation, they have to first go to Earth Island, and then from there teleport to Huangli Island. Everyone looked at the item in Zhang Xuanqing's hand. It was something that could choose the direction of the teleportation. In an important region like Tianling Mountain, it was bound to be connected to many other regions' teleportation formations. Naturally, Junling couldn't build a new teleportation formation every time it was connected to another region. Instead, it would connect all the teleportation formations to the same teleportation formation. In this way, it was necessary to install this kind of compass on the teleportation formation. When cultivators needed to teleport, they could choose the region through the compass. Since Zhang Xuanqing took this item away, Master Xian Shu couldn't use the teleportation formation to determine the direction of Huangli Island. He could only go to Earth Island first, and then use the teleportation formation there to rush to Huangli Island. In this way he could buy some buffer time for everyone. However, Zhang Xuanqing also risked being punished by the sect for taking this compass away. Because Junling was a large sect in the Northern Sea, there were countless cultivators coming and going from Tianling Mountain every day. Zhang Xuanqing taking away the compass would delay the sect's matters. He would definitely be punished by the sect. Ji Xianxian gave him a thumbs up and said, "Good job." However, Lu Ping seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly lifted his foot and stomped on the ground. A blue light immediately entered the ground. He shouted, "Oh no, there are still demonic beasts hiding on this island. I'm afraid they're going to destroy the teleportation formation on Huangli Island." Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what Lu Ping was up to. Only Hu Lili and Chen Lian couldn't help but laugh. Immediately, everyone heard a deafening sound. A moment later, Zheng Wu's anxious and puzzled voice came from outside the cave, reporting to Master Lu, "The island's teleportation formation has been destroyed for no reason." At this moment, everyone realized that this was probably also Lu Ping's doing. Now, even if Xian Shu and the others used another teleportation formation to reach Earth Island, they had no choice but to delay again. Lu Ping raised his voice and said, "I already know. This is because the demonic beasts on the island have not been eliminated. After a moment, Master Hu will go and repair it. All of you just have to carry out your duties." After saying that, Lu Ping patted Zhang Xuanqing's shoulder and asked in a deep voice, "Junior brother Zhang, when you arrived, were Master Xian Shu and the others already waiting at the teleportation formation? How many people did they have? What are their cultivations? How many cultivators from our sect are there?" Zhang Xuanqing also said with a solemn expression, "The other 9 great sects each sent a mid-core forging cultivator to be a witness. Some of the bigger sects and clans also sent people. These people are led by our sect's martial uncle Xian Shu, as well as senior brother Yuan Cheng and senior brother Xian Xiang." Lu Ping frowned. Whether it was Master Xian Shu, Yuan Cheng or Xian Xiang, these people had all schemed against Lu Ping before. Among them Yuan Cheng was his mortal enemy. Lu Ping thought about it and said, there's no time to lose. We'll go to Huanyu Island right now. I believe the news has not reached Huanyu Island yet, so we still have a chance to use the teleportation formation. Shi Lingling was a little worried and said, using the teleportation formation on Huanyu Island requires the approval of all the sections. If we go just like this, I'm afraid it might not work. Lu Ping said fiercely, even if it doesn't work, it has to work. As long as we can send junior brother Yin to the East Sea, anything is fine. This matter is not going to be settled peacefully anyway. At worst, we'll just force our way in. Yin Xianchu grabbed Lu Ping and said anxiously, Senior brother Lu, you can't. This will implicate everyone. What if the sect blames us? Lu Ping pushed Yin Xianchu away and said coldly, what a joke. From the day we became brothers, you've already implicated everyone. Then Lu Ping pointed at everyone in the cave dwelling and said, blame? Oh, will the sect blame all of us? Or will the other sects blame us? Do you really think our sect's 4 mid-dharma adepts, Laozu, are made of mud? When Hu Lili saw the guilt on Yin Xuanchu's face, she said in an amiable voice, Junior brother Lu is right. Junior brother Yin don't have any other thoughts. We'll do the same no matter who it was that happened to today. Yao Yong ignored the injuries on his body and jumped up again. He took out a crimson talisman and said, that's right. Junior brother Yin, I'm afraid I won't be of much help today. This talisman was given to me by my teacher to protect my life. It's equivalent to 70% of the power of his personal attack. Even late core forging adepts will have to avoid it. Take it to protect yourself. Zhong Jian laughed and said, Junior brother Yao, why didn't you use this talisman earlier? If you had used it, you wouldn't have been seriously injured by that primordial crocodile. Yao Yong glared at Zhong Jian fiercely and said in a muffled voice, Humph, that guy was too powerful. I didn't have the time to use it. Ji Xianxian took the talisman and stuffed it into Yin Xuanchu's arms. Yin Xianchu still wanted to decline, but Ji Xianxian said in a low voice, now is not the time for pleasantries. Lu Ping nodded and said, Senior sister who still has to stay behind to handle the matters on Huangli Island. Moreover, fighting and killing is not your forte, so you don't have to go. Junior brother Zhang, return to Tianling Mountain as soon as possible. You don't have to participate in this matter. Master Immortal Lu and junior brother Xiantao will have to trouble the two of you to help senior sister who guard Huangli Island. Senior brother Yao and Zhengjia are injured. Does anyone else have anything else to handle? When Zhang Xuanqing heard that Lu Ping didn't need him, he said anxiously, Senior brother Lu, although I'm weak, I'm still at the core forging stage. I can more or less help. Lu Ping flatly refused and said, no, you can't participate in this matter. Return to Tianling Mountain as soon as possible. You've already done your best. Zhang Xuanqing still wanted to refute, but Ji Xianxian stopped him and said, Senior brother Zhang, you're not a direct disciple. It's not good for you to participate in this matter. Zhang Xuanqing was startled, then he sat down dejectedly. Yao Yong patted his shoulder. Zhang Xuanqing nodded and said, I know this is for my own good. At this moment, perfected Lu Xianyuan also stood up and said, Martial Uncle Xuanzi should still be on Huangli Island. I'll leave the matter of helping junior sister who guard Huangli Island to him. I'll lend you a hand first. Lu Ping was a little hesitant and said, Master Immortal, but perfected Gua. Perfected Lu Xianyuan chuckled and said, I know what I'm doing. You don't have to worry about teacher. Chapter 472. In fact, Lu Ping already had plans for Yin Xianchu. At the very least, Lu Ping could secretly place Yin Xianchu in the House of Gold without anyone knowing. That way no one would find out. However, Lu Ping was not willing to do that. He did not mind revealing the secret of the House of Gold to his good friend, but the key thing was that Yin Xianchu was different from Luan Yu. Luan Yu had always been someone who stood aloof from worldly affairs. Even though the Wood Luan race's situation in the cultivation world was not much better than that of a mixed-blood human like Yin Xianchu, Luan Yu did not have any thoughts of fighting for himself. He only wanted to live a peaceful and secluded life in the House of Gold. Yin Xianchu was different. He carried the blood feud of his parents on his back, and he had the ambition to excel. If Lu Ping asked him to live a secluded life in the House of Gold, putting aside whether Yin Xianchu would be able to endure such a confinement, Lu Ping himself did not think that such a secluded life could make a cultivator stronger. If Yin Xianchu wanted to take revenge in the future and establish himself in the cultivation world, he would need to be strong enough. In order to accumulate enough strength, he could not leave the cultivation world. As such, the second path that Lu Ping prepared for Yin Xianchu was the teleportation formation that led directly to the central plains from the clear stream abode that had already been submerged by seawater. However, the significance of this teleportation formation in the North Sea was probably even more important than the House of Gold that Lu Ping possessed. This was something that could cause a huge uproar in the North Sea. After all, the North Sea had been separated from the Central Plains for 4,000 years. Ever since Fei Ling's sect was destroyed, the North Sea no longer had a super long-distance teleportation formation that was directly connected to the Central Plains. If the cultivators of the North Sea wanted to travel to the Central Plains, they would have to borrow the super long-distance teleportation formations of the East Sea's 5 major sections. However, such a long-distance teleportation formation could not be built casually. It often required the cooperation of all the sects, and the location of the teleportation formation in the Central Plains had to be recognized and protected by the major sections. The various sects in the North Sea clearly did not have this ability. The so-called 10 major sects in the North Sea were only equivalent to 10 medium-sized sects in the entire cultivation world. The only difference was that Xianling sect and Jinling sect were only considered the stronger ones among the medium-sized sections. The other 6 major sects, excluding Hai Yen sect and Shui Yen Pavilion, were only the weakest of the medium-sized sections. According to the practice of the world of practitioners, a large sect would need at least 2 late Dharma adepts to hold the fort, and it had to form a more benign cycle of Dharma adepts. To put it bluntly, there had to be elites to lead the sect in every generation, so that they could fill the gap left by the previous generation of Dharma adepts at any time and maintain the sect's position in the world of practitioners. Take Xianling sect for example. After Patriarch Dao Sheng's lifespan ran out and he passed away, the leader of the second generation, Feng Shutao, might not even be able to advance to the mid-Dharma stage. If this happened in a large sect in the world of practitioners, it would mean the decline of the sect. In the past, the only large sect in the North Sea that could be considered a large sect in the cultivation world was the Fei Ling sect from 4,000 years ago. It had 3 late Dharma adepts in charge and 18 Dharma adepts in the sect. It was a famous sect in the Central Plains, but it was a pity that it had turned to dust in the end. Lu Ping did not know how this Laozu, who looked like a lone practitioner, had the ability to build a long-distance teleportation formation that led directly to the Central Plains, but Lu Ping knew that before he had enough ability, it was best not to reveal this teleportation formation in front of others. Therefore, on Huangli Island, Lu Ping did not hesitate to lie to his companions to forcibly break through the teleportation formation on Huanyu Island and send Yin Xianchu to the East Sea. In fact, his plan was to secretly send Yin Xianchu to the Central Plains along the way. With Yin Xuanchu's ability and potential, Lu Ping believed that as long as his identity as a mixed demon was not exposed and he did not die along the way, there would definitely be a place for him in the cultivation world in the future. As for how to split up the companions who were escorting Yin Xianchu along the way, this was not a problem. The reason why everyone was escorting Yin Xianchu was because they had made up their minds to stop the cultivators from the various sects who were coming to capture Yin Xianchu. When the time came, they would naturally have time to escape. Sage Xianchu was very dissatisfied with the task that the sect had given him. Ever since he knew that this task had fallen onto his head, his expression had not been good. Honestly speaking, Sage Xianchu loathed the demon race. In the past, he had also tried his best to stop Reverend Li Xianyin from marrying Yin Fei. Once the other Laozus learned of this, they had tried to interfere. Tian Shui Laozu had even pointed at Reverend Black Yin's nose and scolded him. The other Laozus had also tried to persuade him with kind words, but Reverend Black Yin had already made up his mind to be with the demonic girl Ice Dragon. Besides, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's attitude at that time was unclear, which was why Reverend Black Yin had given up and could only try his best to cover it up. Unfortunately, in the end the matter was exposed. Xianling sect's Dao Shi Laozu had practiced a divine ability that allowed him to see through the secrets of the demon race who had taken human form. When Reverend Black Yin and Yin Fei had gone out once, Dao Shi Laozu had accidentally seen through their tracks. At that time, it had been a few years after Jiang Shenlin and Lu Tianling had worked together to kill Dao Kong Laozu. The relationship between the two sects had always been tense, which was why Dao Shi Laozu had made a prompt decision to kill Reverend Black Yin. At that time, Li Xuanin's level of cultivation had not reached his current level yet, and Yin Fei had only just reached the later stage of the core forging realm. There was no way the two of them could be Dao Shi Laozu's opponent. Yin Fei had been heavily injured on the spot, and Li Xianyin had managed to block Dao Shi Laozu's attack by exploding the ice dragon pearl that Yin Fei had inherited, and only then had he managed to escape back to Jinling. Due to Yin Fei's status as a demon, Jinling could only suffer in silence and could not stand up for her. Besides, due to Dao Kong Laozu's matter, after Jinling fought a great battle against Xianling sect, Tian Kong Laozu was heavily injured, and Jinling ordered the entire sect to rest and recuperate. They held themselves back and did not make a move. Reverend Black Yin was not a foolish person. He knew that it was not the time for revenge, and so he could only place all his heart and soul on raising his son Yin Chu, who was born to him with Yin Fei. It was not that there were no people in the sect who objected to their son's identity, but because Reverend Black Yin had just lost his wife at that time, and Reverend Black Yin was also very protective of his son, he saw every single person who got close to Yin Chu as someone who harbored ill intentions. Because of that, no one had the heart to bring up this matter again. Unexpectedly, decades later, Reverend Black Yin was still unable to extricate himself from his hatred. He had recklessly tried to assassinate Dao Shi Laozu, and in the end he died. Xianling sect had even used Yin Chu's identity to make a big fuss about it in an attempt to suppress Jinling. Reverend Xian Shu really wanted to shirk this task. Even though he was originally in charge of Jinling's rules and discipline in the sect, this was an arduous and unrewarding task. This was not only because this incident was a compromise made by Jinling due to external pressure. The disciples of the sect would not see it as a compromise, but as a concession. The disciples of the sect would not resent the sect, but would instead vent their anger on Reverend Xian Shu, who was in charge of this mission to capture the disciples of the sect. Furthermore, Yin Xianshu was a genius cultivator second only to Lu Xianping among the third-generation disciples of the sect. He was being groomed as a future Dharma adept of Jinling. This so-called cleaning up the sect, this time would not only damage Jinling's own strength, but it would also offend a group of disciples who were on good terms with Yin Xianshu, such as Lu Xianping, Yao Yong, Du Feng, Ji Xianxian, Chen Lian, Zhong Jian Mayu and Shi Lingling. When these disciples grew up in the future, what would Reverend Xianshu do? Reverend Xianshu, who was in a hurry, brought his proudest disciple Reverend Xianxiang, his own nephew Yuanzhan, and more than 10 so-called supervisors, sent by various sects and clans of the North Sea to Tianling Mountain's teleportation portal. From there they would directly go to Huangli Island. That was the territory of Reverend Lu Xianping, who had the highest achievements among the third-generation disciples of the sect. Although the third-generation disciples had the highest achievements, it did not mean that Lu Ping's cultivation level was the highest among Jinling's third-generation disciples. After all, although there were no third-generation disciples who had broken through to the late core forging stage, there were many who were stuck at the sixth stage, such as Reverend Xianshu's own disciple, Reverend Xianxiang. This achievement referred to one's contribution to the sect. Just Huangli Island alone had accumulated a lot of wealth for Jinling. Reverend Xianshu's identity as an alchemy grandmaster, the spirit water meridian nourishing pill that he produced allowed Jinling to plunder a lot of resources from various sects in the North Sea. In addition, he also had the blood condensing pill, the mysterious minor forging spirit pill, and even the longevity pill in the hands of martial uncle Tian Kong. If Reverend Xianshu was not a true enlightened master among Jinling's late core forging stage cultivators, perhaps even he would not have known about these things. Moreover, he had Jiang Tianlin and Lu Tianling standing behind him. No one knew Lu Ping's influence in Jinling better than him. Back then he believed that Huangli Island should not be under the control of a third-generation disciple like Lu Ping. He had once tried to take control of Huangli Island through the hands of the demon race, or at least subconsciously he had taken control of it. However, his plan failed because Lu Ping's cultivation base had broken through to the mid-core forging stage and he had killed 5 demon cultivators at the same level as him. Lu Xuanping's name had spread throughout the North Sea, but Reverend Xianshu had received various warnings, exhortations, and even reprimands from the sect. Reverend Xianxin, Reverend Enigma Flame, Reverend Chu Xuanqing, Reverend Liang Xianfeng, and Reverend Gu Xianshan. These prestigious late core forging stage cultivators had either tactfully or directly passed on their opinions that they did not want to see something like this happen again. Reverend Xianshu's teacher, Tianfan Laozu, summoned him to Qi Mei Palace and reprimanded him. Even worse was Li Xianin. He had been following and monitoring Reverend Xianshu for 3 days and 3 nights. Although Reverend Xianshu knew that Li Xianin was monitoring him, he had no way of finding out where Reverend Xianshu was hiding. The feeling that someone could strike a fatal blow from behind at any moment still made Reverend Xianshu's hair stand on end. However, Reverend Xianshu did not understand. What did Reverend Xianshu receive from Lu Xianping that made him stand up for Lu Ping? In Taoist Master Xianshu's impression, after his wife passed away, he was one of the 3 saints of the sect who rarely interacted with others. Other than his biological son who was taught by him as a disciple, there was almost no one he cared about. Thinking of his son, Reverend Xianshu suddenly understood. Yes, it was because of his son. Xianshu had been a loner since he was young and did not interact with others. However, he only had two good friends. One was a disciple of Reverend Xian Huai, the Puppet Pavilion's deputy pavilion master. Among the third-generation disciples, he was a genius cultivator who was as famous as Xianshu Ji Xianxian. The other was obviously Lu Xianin. Back then, Li Xianin was standing up for one of his son's only two good friends. Reverend Xianshu cursed inwardly. However, he discovered that even though everyone had been standing on the teleportation array for a long time, the teleportation array was still not activated. Reverend Xianshu's disciple, Xian Xiang, walked down from the teleportation array to check. Then he walked up to Reverend Xianshu and said strangely, "Teacher, the teleportation array's compass has disappeared for some reason." Without waiting for Reverend Xianshu to speak, Yuanzhan, who was at the side, said thoughtfully, "This is definitely intentional." Reverend Xianshu suddenly smiled and said meaningfully, "I'm afraid this attack has just begun." Chapter 473. Perhaps Yuanzhan didn't know it himself, but deep in his heart, he actually had a trace of fear for Lu Ping that he was never willing to admit. This fear was planted in his heart when Lu Ping defeated Yuanzhan in the Jinling Courtyard Grand Competition. After that, Lu Ping's cultivation base caught up and improved by leaps and bounds, and he continued to achieve some amazing achievements. For example, he defeated Xianling sect on Fei Ling Island, and was chased by the cultivators of various sects to the Demon Realm Sea region. After a few years he escaped and his strength became even stronger. He even successfully became a disciple of Lu Xianling. This made Yuanzhan feel that it was difficult to reach, and the seed of fear in his heart grew stronger. Especially when Yuanzhan and Leng Qian abandoned Hu Lili as bait while being chased by the demon beasts. The two of them escaped alone with the unconscious Jiang Zishuan. When Lu Ping returned from the Demon Realm Sea region and heard that Hu Lili was missing, his anger and killing intent towards Yuanzhan made Yuanzhan even more terrified. A crazy voice kept shouting in the depths of Yuanzhan's heart, "Kill him, kill him, kill him at all costs or you will die." At that time, Yuanzhan even took the risk of colluding with the enemy and leaked the news that Lu Ping had gone out to search for Hu Lili. This attracted the cultivators of Xianling sect, Haiyan sect, Shuiyan Pavilion, and other sects to chase after him. Moreover, they also encountered the demon beast tide. Even Yuanzhan himself was glad that God was on his side. However, just when Yuanzhan could finally breathe a sigh of relief, another piece of news that made him uneasy came out again. Lu Ping was indeed missing, but his lamp of consciousness was not extinguished. In other words, Lu Ping was not dead yet. An indescribable fear immediately engulfed Yuanzhan's body. Very quickly, even worse news came out. Hu Lili had actually returned to Tianling Mountain without anyone knowing and became the personal disciple of the sect's #1 array master, Taoist Xianqin. After that, Taoist Lu Xianling and Taoist Xianqin joined hands to wreak havoc in the Yuan clan. With Taoist Xianqin, the array master, and Taoist Lu Xuanling's unparalleled strength, the protective array on the island that the Yuan clan occupied was like a piece of paper made of mud. The few elders of the Yuan clan hid in the clan's ancestral hall, not daring to show their faces, allowing the two Taoists to wreak havoc in the Yuan clan. If not for Taoist Xianshu, who had already left the Yuan clan nominally, inviting Tianfan Laozu to help, who knows what kind of disaster the Yuan clan would have suffered from these two female demons whose fame was second only to Tianshui Laozu. Under the stimulation of the possibility that Lu Ping could come back to seek revenge at any time, Yuanzhan's cultivation miraculously improved by leaps and bounds. Very quickly he broke through to the core forging realm. Just when Yuanzhan was feeling complacent, thinking that even if Lu Ping returned, he wouldn't have to worry about it. Instead, he would defeat him in a fair and square manner to untie the knot in his heart. However, reality was always so cruel. After returning to Jinling, Lu Ping defeated Li Xianliang with just an early-stage core forging realm cultivation. Then, during Lu Tianling Laozu's Dharma Idol Assembly, he displayed his great swordsmanship and defeated Xianling sect's genius sword cultivator Lu Ping Ouyang Weijian. Only then did Yuanzhan realize that the gap between him and Lu Ping had not shrunk, but had instead widened. Of course, Yuanzhan had never given up on plotting against Lu Ping. However, as Lu Ping's status grew higher and higher, it became more difficult to plot against him. With Yuanzhan's help, even his uncle, Taoist Master Xianshu, had to suffer when plotting against Lu Ping's Huangli Island, let alone Yuanzhan. As Lu Ping's fame grew, his achievements grew, and his position in the sect became more and more important. Yuan Zhan finally returned to the feeling of being on guard against Lu Ping's revenge day and night. Strangely, the revenge that Yuan Zhan had imagined never came, and Lu Ping seemed to have forgotten about it. However, Yuan Zhan did not feel lucky because of this. On the contrary, he felt that he had been greatly insulted. He thought that Lu Ping was looking down on him. He thought that in Lu Ping's eyes, Yuan Zhan had lost the qualifications to be an opponent. Yuan Zhan was eager to prove himself. With the help of his uncle Zhenling Sect's enlightened master Xian Shu, Yuan Zhan's cultivation finally reached the threshold of the mid-core forging realm. However, just when he thought that he finally had a chance to prove himself by challenging the cultivators of the same level as him from the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea, Yuan Zhan once again suffered an unforgettable defeat. That kind of defeat was not at the hands of the disciples of the Eastern Sea's Purple Talisman Pavilion, but at the hands of a pair of swords that he had never seen before. When the golden flying sword, which looked like a flying immortal, defeated the cultivators of the Crystal Palace in a shocking way, it also shattered Yuan Zhan's last hope of surpassing Lu Ping in cultivation. However, this did not mean that Lu Ping was invincible. At least this time, it was a great opportunity to strike Lu Ping. Therefore, regardless of Taoist Master Xian Shu's advice, Yuan Zhan insisted on accompanying his uncle to capture Yin Xianchu, the bastard of a human and a demon. At least, he wanted to see the pain and helplessness of Lu Ping when he captured his best friend. The more powerless Lu Ping was, the happier Yuan Zhan felt. Of course, Yuan Zhan, who had schemed against Lu Ping several times, had his own shrewdness. Naturally, he would not show that he wanted to see Lu Ping make a fool of himself. Instead, he had his own set of high-sounding reasons to cover it up. Even though Taoist Master Xian Shu had seen through Yuan Zhan's thoughts, he did not expose him in the end. Taoist Master Xian Shu had his own selfish ambitions. He had the ability and vision, but he also had a strong desire for power. The reason why he left the Yuan family was because he saw that the Yuan family would eventually become the biggest obstacle for him to control Zhenling, which would eventually become the #1 sect in the North Sea. Zhenling would never hand over the power of a sect to a cultivator who had the support of a very strong external family, no matter how outstanding the cultivator was. Taoist Master Xian Shu wanted to become a master in the North Sea's cultivation world. In order to control Zhenling, he was willing to give up his family. However, Yuan Zhan was different from him. Yuan Zhan also had a desire for power. However, his dream was to strengthen his family by absorbing the resources of Zhenling. He wanted the Yuan family to be a parasite on Zhenling, and in order to strengthen his family, he would not hesitate to sacrifice Zhenling. It could be said that the starting points of the two were completely different. However, the sad thing was that Yuan Zhan did not see this point clearly, while Taoist Master Xian Shu had long seen that this possibility could not be realized. This was also the reason why he left the Yuan family. Zhenling had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and there was a reason for its existence. Zhenling had never belonged to one person, not even the Grand Ginseng Laozu from 6,000 years ago. You could use Zhenling to achieve great glory in the cultivation world, but all these achievements could not exist independently of Zhenling, unless you had the power to suppress the entire sect. Thus, when Yuan Zhan insisted on going to Huangli Island with him, Taoist Master Xian Shu did not explain the importance of this matter to him just because Yuan Zhan was his nephew. On the contrary, he hoped to use this opportunity to once again weaken the power of the Yuan family through Zhenling. Taoist Guo Xianshan was about to advance to the Dharma stage, and he would no longer be the deacon of the sect. Chu Xuanqing and Liang Xianfeng were both unwilling to manage the sect, so the next deacon of Zhenling would most likely be Taoist Master Xian Shu, who no longer had the power of the family to hold him back. Just as Taoist Master Xian Shu and the witnesses from the various sects and families of the North Sea had finished setting up the teleportation portal compass with the help of Zhenling's array master and had also determined the direction of Huangli Island, Yuan Zhan also rushed excitedly to Taoist Master Xian Shu's side. He said in a low voice, "Uncle, I've already asked around. The person who used the teleportation portal before us was Zhang Xuanqing, who assisted Uncle Master Xian Miao in managing Zhenling's courtyard. This person was heading towards Huangli Island, and he is a good friend of Lu Ping and the others. This teleportation portal compass must have been taken by him to inform Yin Xianchu and the others, and at the same time to buy time for Yin Xianchu to escape." Taoist Master Xian Shu said lightly, "Oh, that doesn't mean anything. After all, no one saw Zhang Xuanqing take away the teleportation portal compass." Yuan Zhan was stunned for a moment, then he said, That's true, but this Zhang Xuanqing is the most suspicious. There's no time to lose. We must hurry to Huangli Island as soon as possible to prevent Yin Xianchu from escaping. Taoist Master Xian Xiang, who was standing to the side, also felt that it was somewhat irritating. He couldn't help but say in a low voice, "Junior Martial Brother Yuan, no matter what, Yin Xianchu is still a disciple of our sect. The cultivators from the other sects haven't spoken yet, so there's no need for us to say anything." At this time, the cultivator in charge of activating the teleportation portal suddenly said, "Huh? This is strange. The teleportation portal on Huangli Island can't be connected. It seems that there's a problem with the teleportation portal on Huangli Island." Taoist Master Xian Shu seemed to have already expected this situation. He said, "Then let's go to Dikuan Island. Through Dikuan Island we can go to Shenqi Island, then we can fly there." At this time, Xianling sect's witness, a mid-stage core forging cultivator named Su Weihong, finally couldn't help but say sarcastically, "Your sect is clearly trying to evade responsibility. I'm afraid that by the time we get to Huangli Island, Yin Xianchu will have already escaped. Who knows, that vile spawn might have already surrendered to the demon race. In any case, your sect and the demon race have such a deep relationship, so I'm sure you won't mistreat him." Taoist Master Xian Xiang couldn't help but curse, "Su Weihong, shut your fucking mouth. I'm telling you, before my master personally announces to Junior Martial Brother Yin Xianchu that he is expelled from the sect, he is still my disciple, regardless of his identity. If you continue to spout nonsense like this, I, Xian Xiang, will be the first to not forgive you." Su Weihong said fiercely, "You?" Although Su Weihong still had a mocking expression on his face, this was still Zhenling sect's territory. In the end, Su Weihong had no choice but to give in and stop talking. He only looked at Taoist Xian Xiang with a mocking gaze. Taoist Master Xian Shu glanced at Su Weihong and spat out two words, "Noisy." Su Weihong was infuriated, but then he thought of something and sneered without saying another word. The group arrived at Dikuan Island through the teleportation array, and from there rushed to Shenqi Island. Although Shenqi Island was a small island, its importance to Jinling couldn't be compared to Huangli Island. Therefore, Huangli Island had a teleportation array that led directly to Tianling Mountain, while Shenqi Island only had a short-distance teleportation array on Dikuan Island. Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing naturally knew about the matter of being expelled from the sect, but he was a true core member of the sect, and his status in Jinling was extremely high. Although he couldn't openly stop Taoist Master Xian Shu from arresting Yin Xuanqing, he still pretended to be asleep in his cave, ignoring the arrival of Taoist Master Xian Shu and the others to vent his dissatisfaction. Chapter 474. Taoist Xian Xiang's expression was somewhat conflicted. He knew that there would be resistance when he followed Taoist Xian Shu to capture Yin Xianchu, but he didn't expect that there would be so many obstacles and hostility from his fellow sect members. Taoist Xian Xiang faintly regretted and even felt wronged. He didn't want to be isolated in the sect because of this matter. On the other hand, Tao Master Xian Shu was still as indifferent as ever. The cultivators from the various sects who came with them remained silent. In fact, they were all waiting to see Tao Master Xian Shu and his disciple make a fool out of themselves. Not only that, they were more willing to see the internal strife that might be triggered because of Yin Xianchu. Of course, only Xianling sect would act like Su Weihong did. On the surface of the sea, Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu, and the others were flying towards Huanyu Island at lightning speed. Ji Xianxian saw that the atmosphere was somewhat heavy and couldn't help but ask, "I'm afraid Taoist Xian Shu and the others have already arrived at Huangli Island. I hope they won't guess that we're going back to Huanyu Island." Shi Lingling thought for a moment and said, "I'm afraid it'll be difficult. There aren't many places that Junior Martial Brother Yin can hide in. Taoist Xian Shu is also an exceptionally shrewd person. As long as he calms himself down, he will most likely be able to guess where we're going." Lu Ping touched the house of gold hanging on his chest and said, "I never intended to hide from them. Now, I can only hope that Senior Martial Sister who can delay Taoist Xian Shu and the others on Huangli Island for a longer time." When Taoist Xian Shu and the others arrived at Huangli Island, only Hu Lili, Zhang Xuanqing and Taoist Xian Su were left to greet them. As for Yao Yong and Zheng Jie, they didn't come out to greet them due to their injuries. Taoist Xian Shu's group of 18 people, other than Taoist Xian Shu who was a late core forging cultivator, the other 17 were all mid-core forging cultivators from various sects and clans. At this time, Huangli Island had just gone through a full-scale attack by the demon race. Although the island's protective array had been restored, the island still looked desolate and bleak. Su Weihong chuckled and said, I've heard that water sword deity Lu Xianping runs Huangli Island very well, as if it's a treasure bowl for Zhenling's sect. But now that I've seen it, it's nothing much. No one said anything. When Yuan Zhan arrived at Huangli Island, it was as if he saw Lu Ping everywhere. The hatred in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Without thinking he said, That's true. This Huangli Island has been run so badly by Lu Xianping, it's really disappointing. After Yuan Zhan finished speaking, he suddenly realized that Su Weihong had a sneer on his face. Hu Lili sneered at Yuan Zhan and didn't say anything. Daoist Xian Su and Zhang Xuanqing looked at Yuan Zhan with surprise and doubt in their eyes. Daoist Xian Xiang frowned and cautiously reminded Yuan Zhan, Junior Martial Brother Yuan, please be careful with your words. The martial uncles on Huangli Island had just repelled the demon race's attack. The main culprit that caused the demon race to attack Huangli Island was Xianling's sect. Yuan Zhan smiled awkwardly and said bitterly, Senior Martial Brother Xian Xiang, Junior Martial Brother is just, Yuan Zhan said, but, for a long time but still couldn't come up with a reason. Spiritual Master Xian Shu ignored Yuan Zhan. Seeing that there were only 3 people here, he glanced expressionlessly at Zhang Xuanqing, turned his head and nodded at Spiritual Master Xian Su, then asked Hu Lili, Is Yin Xian Shu on the island? Daoist Xian Shu's stare made Zhang Xuanqing's hair stand on end and cold sweat appeared on his back. Hu Lili stepped forward and bowed, reporting to Martial Uncle Xian Shu, Junior Martial Brother Yin is not on the island. At this time, Xianling sect's Su Weihong said in a strange tone, I'm afraid you all still don't know that Yin Xianshu is a bastard from the union of a human and a demon. The Junior Martial Brother Yin you all speak of is an existence that everyone in the cultivation world wants to beat up. This time your Daoist Xian Shu is here to clean up the sect. If you continue to protect him, do you still see Daoist Xian Shu as your senior? Hu Lili sneered and turned to Su Weihong, Who are you? What qualifications do you have to speak here? Su Weihong was provoked by Hu Lili's disdainful gaze and disdainful sneer. He shouted, Presumptuous, I am Xianling sects. Hu Lili rudely interrupted Daoist Su Weihong, who was about to act tough, and said indifferently, Xianling sect? So you're not Zhenling's disciple? My Zhenling sect is here to discuss the sect's internal affairs. Since when do we need disciples from other sects to make jokes? Can Martial Uncle Xian Shu please teach me? Su Weihong was furious. He looked at Hu Lili with a cold glint in his eyes, but then he looked at Reverend Xian Shu. He smiled coldly, waiting to see how Reverend Xian Shu would respond. He thought that he had succeeded in sowing discord, so he endured the ridicule of being looked down upon and watched the situation develop further. Daoist Xian Shu looked at Hu Lili with narrowed eyes, while Daoist Xian Su smiled bitterly. This time, a gloating look appeared in Yuan Zhan's eyes. Unexpectedly, Daoist Xian Shu nodded and said, You're right. We are discussing our sect's internal affairs. Disciples from other sects are indeed not allowed to participate. This was out of Su Weihong and Yuan Zhan's expectation. Su Weihong said coldly, Daoist Xian Shu, we are here under the orders of our sect's Laozus. Your sect's words, are you not putting the other sect's Laozus in your eyes? Daoist Xian Shu replied bluntly, Your sect's Laozus only asked you to come here as witnesses. When did he ask you to interfere in our sect's internal affairs? This Daoist doesn't know about this. When we return, I will definitely talk to my sect's Laozus and let my sect's Laozus communicate with your sect's Laozus. I believe that the other sect's Laozus are all righteous people. This order to interfere in my Zhenling's matters must be someone deliberately distorting Fa Xiang Laozu's decree. Su Weihong's face turned pale, and a look of resentment appeared on his face. If Zhenling's sect really held on to this point and refused to let go, he might end up like Yin Xianchu, becoming a sacrificial lamb for the sect. Yuan Zhan seemed to have found another opportunity and said, Junior sister, since you said that Yin Xianchu is no longer on Huangli Island, can you allow us to search the island? Hu Lili stretched out a finger and said, First, you are a true spirit side courtyard disciple in the same batch as Lu Xianping, so please call me senior sister Hu, not junior sister. Second, who do you want to search? Yuan Zhan stretched out his hand and drew a big circle. Then he thought of something and his fingers shrank in the air, pointing at Xuanxiang and himself. He said with a dry smile, Of course, yes, of course it's only me and senior brother Xuanxiang. Hu Lili sneered and said, You don't have the qualifications to give such an order. Daoist Master Lu Xianping is Zhenling's alchemy grandmaster, a core member who participates in the major decisions of the sect. His position in the sect is not lower than Martial Uncle Xuanshu's. If you want to search Huangli Island, You must have our sect's Laozu or Taoist Guishuanshan's orders. Taoist Master Xianshu naturally came with Jinling Laozu's orders, but Hu Lily's words exploded in Yuan Zhan's ears. He looked back at Taoist Master Xianshu in disbelief, only to hear Taoist Master Xianshu say in a deep voice, "This Taoist Master indeed has our sect's Dharma idol Laozu's order to capture Yin Xianchu. Even if Martial Nephew Lu is here, he will not stop us." Yuan Zhan's ears were buzzing. He didn't expect Lu Ping to be standing so high up, to the point that he had to look up to him. For a moment he was a little dazed. Hu Lily nodded with a straight face. Taoist Master Xianshu took the lead and walked into the island. Xian Xiang and Yuan Zhan, whose footsteps were a little heavy, chose to go in another direction. The other sect's cultivators were also about to search Huangli Island, but Taoist Master Xianshu suddenly appeared in front of them. He said coldly, "You don't have the qualifications to search my Jinling's island. Please follow behind Senior Brother Xianshu as a witness." This time the other sect's Taoist masters didn't have any objections. Jinling was very accurate when it came to matters of right and wrong. He didn't give the other sect's Taoist masters any chance to take advantage of him. Other than Xianling's sect, no one was willing to risk offending Jinling to raise any objections. Most of the people chose to follow behind Taoist Master Xianshu. There were also a few who leisurely followed behind Yuan Zhan and Xian Xiang. Su Weihong didn't even think about it and chased after Yuan Zhan. Hu Lily gave Zhang Xuanqing a look. Zhang Xuanqing understood and hurriedly followed behind Yuan Zhan and the others. Hu Lily then turned around and said, "I'll have to trouble Martial Uncle for today's matter. Please follow behind Senior Brother Xuanxiang and the others." Taoist Master Xianshu smiled and said, "It's fine. Anyway, I also feel that today's matter is very inappropriate. I'll just follow them for a tour of Huangli Island." Then he walked away. Hu Lily stood on the spot and let out a long sigh. Then she chased after Taoist Master Xianshu. Hu Lily walked in front of Taoist Master Xianshu. Taoist Master Xianshu looked at Hu Lily and asked, "Martial niece Hu, how long have they been gone?" Hu Lily already knew, but her expression didn't change. She said, "Martial Uncle, if you think they have already left, why are you still searching Huangli Island?" Taoist Master Xianshu chuckled and didn't say anything. Everyone walked all the way to the center of Huangli Island. There were more and more cultivators here. Although the cultivators on Huangli Island were surprised to see so many core forging cultivators, they didn't show much surprise. Instead, when they saw Hu Lily among them, they enthusiastically greeted her. "Taoist Hu, Taoist Hu." They kept calling out to her. "I can see that you are very respected on Huangli Island. You are also very popular." Taoist Master Xianshu casually chatted with Hu Lily. Hu Lily didn't know what Taoist Master Xianshu meant, but she vaguely understood that Taoist Master Xianshu didn't want to capture Yin Xianchu. But she heard from Lu Ping that Taoist Master Xianshu had schemed against Huangli Island, so Hu Lily was still very careful. Taoist Master Xianshu saw that Hu Lily's eyes were still filled with vigilance, so he didn't say anything. At this moment, a sound-transmitting magic sword suddenly flew across the sky and fell into Hu Lily's hand. Hu Lily swept it with her divine sense and suddenly her face was filled with anger. Chapter 475. Upon seeing this, Sage Xianshu's divine sense moved. He seemed to have sensed what had happened, so he smiled and said, "Let's go and take a look." Hu Lily thanked Sage Xianshu solemnly, turned around, and hurried in the direction of Lu Ping's cave abode. Sage Xianshu followed behind Hu Lily unhurriedly. Hu Lily walked to the front of Lu Ping's cave dwelling and saw that the protective array formation around the cave dwelling had crumbled. Not only that, it seemed like the protective array formation was broken through by brute force. Her face immediately turned cold. Enlightened Master Xianshu followed closely behind and frowned at the sight. As soon as Hu Lily entered the cave abode, she heard Yuan Zhan's voice, "Junior Brother Zhang, you are not my match. It's better for you to move aside. If I don't go in and take a look, how can I be sure that the monster Yin Xianchu is not inside? With you blocking me like this, could it be that Yin Xianchu is really in Junior Brother Lu's cave abode? Senior Brother Yuan, if you go any further, it will be Senior Brother Lu Ping's cultivation room. Without Senior Brother Lu's consent, you used brute force to break the array of Senior Brother Lu's cave abode and barge in. This is a taboo in the cultivation world. Now, you want to barge into his cultivation room and you even brought an outsider with you. Aren't you afraid of Senior Brother Lu's reprimand?" Hu Lily passed through the cave abode's corridor and came to the hall. She saw Zhang Xuanqing standing in front of Lu Ping's cultivation room, while Yuan Zhan, Su Weihong, and a soaring feather sect disciple were standing together, confronting Zhang Xuanqing. Su Weihong originally wanted to berate Zhang Xuanqing, but when he saw Hu Lili enter, he shut his mouth and waited to watch the show. Hu Lili's expression was unfriendly and she said to Yuan Zhan as soon as she entered, "Senior brother Yuan, you are standing in the wrong position. I thought you should be standing by junior brother Zhang's side to block the outsiders." Hu Lili didn't have a good impression of Yuan Zhan, Su Weihong and the others. With just a single sentence, Yuan Zhan's face turned red with sarcasm. Su Weihong was also a little embarrassed. He immediately retorted, "The situation is very clear now. We were ordered by our respective sects Laozu to accompany your esteemed sect to clean up your sect, and to act as witnesses. In reality, your esteemed sect is making all sorts of excuses. We will naturally report what we saw and heard to our own sect's Laozu." When Yuan Zhan saw Hu Lili enter, his arrogance from before was greatly restrained, but he still braced himself and said, "Senior sister Hu, since we're searching, why don't we search carefully? Could it be that junior brother Lu is really harboring that Yin Xianchu?" Hu Lili looked at Yuan Zhan seriously and asked, "Are you sure you want to barge into junior brother Lu's cultivation room?" Yuan Zhan's expression fluctuated while Su Weihong chuckled coldly behind him. Yuan Zhan seemed to have made up his mind and said, "Since it's to clean up the sect, Yin Xianchu naturally can't be allowed to live. We must capture him even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground." Hu Lili sneered and said to Zhang Xuanqing beside her, "Junior brother Zhang, move aside. Let him search." Zhang Xuanqing was still a little hesitant. He glanced at Hu Lili as if to confirm what she had just said, only to see Hu Lili nod. Zhang Xuanqing then glared fiercely at Yuan Zhan and moved to the side. Seeing Hu Lili openly move aside the door to Lu Ping's cultivation room, Yuan Zhan had an inexplicable bad premonition in his heart. However, the arrow was already knocked on the bow and he had no choice but to enter. Yuan Zhan walked towards the door of the cultivation room when Hu Lili suddenly said, "Junior brother Yuan, I hope that you only entered this cultivation room to find junior brother Yin Xianchu and not have any other motives." Yuan Zhan's footsteps paused, and his expression changed indeterminately. However, he still walked towards the cultivation room in the end, and Su Weihong chuckled as he followed. Zhang Xuanqing intended to go forward and stop him, but Su Weihong seemed to have sensed it and said, "We're witnesses. If Yin Xianchu is really in the cultivation room, then we can be witnesses." Hu Lili grabbed Zhang Xuanqing, who was about to step forward, and shook her head at him. Yuan Zhan walked to the door of Lu Ping's cultivation room. He saw that the entire door of the cultivation room was covered by a thick layer of restriction light screen. Yuan Zhan looked at these complicated restrictions with surprise and a trace of anticipation. Naturally, he was surprised by this layer of restriction light screen. It was obvious that only those who had a certain level of proficiency in restriction techniques could set up this layer of restriction light screen. In his heart, his fear of Lu Ping deepened. Naturally, he was looking forward to what Hu Lili had warned him before. He naturally did not come in purely for the ridiculous reason of searching for Yin Xianchu. In fact, even he did not believe that Yin Xianchu would hide here and not escape as soon as possible. Seeing that Hu Lili was indifferent, Yuan Zhan could only look to Su Weihong for help. However, Su Weihong seemed to be playing dumb and asked, "Junior brother Yuan, is there anything I can do for you?" Hu Lili sneered at the side while Zhang Xuanqing had a look of disdain. Yuan Zhan's expression changed. He stared at Su Weihong's smiling face and said word by word, "I wonder if senior brother Su still has a restriction-breaking talisman on you?" Su Weihong seemed as if he was suddenly enlightened, and he took out a talisman that flickered with golden light from within his sleeve. He said, "So junior brother Yuan wants this thing? Since little brother has it here, how could I be stingy?" He handed the restriction-breaking talisman to Yuan Zhan. Zhang Xuanqing whispered to Hu Lili, "Just now, the array outside the cave mansion was also broken by 2 formation-breaking talismans." Hu Lili nodded. She was an expert in array formations. Although she wasn't an expert in charms, she was still more knowledgeable than the others when it came to breaking array formations. Although Lu Ping's cave dwelling's defensive array formation wasn't of the best quality, Hu Lili had already guessed that Yuan Zhan and the others were able to break through the cave dwelling's defensive array formation without alerting the people on the island. However, she didn't expect Yuan Zhan to use Xianling sect's array-breaking charms. In other words, Xianling sect was well prepared for this. What was Xianling sect trying to do? Naturally, Hu Lili did not think that Xianling sect was just trying to sow discord between Jinling's disciples. Xianling sect did not need to pay such a huge price for just one Yuanzhan. Although Lu Ping was qualified, how could Yuanzhan be worthy of being Lu Ping's opponent? While Hu Lili was still thinking, Yuanzhan had already received Su Weihong's restriction-breaking talisman and placed it on the cultivation room's door. Layers of light flickered on the door, then disappeared bit by bit. The thick layer of restriction was getting thinner and thinner. However, when the restriction-breaking talisman burned out, there was only a thin layer of restriction left. Yuanzhan's expression changed while Su Weihong sucked in a breath of cold air. He thought to himself, what a profound restriction. Then, Su Weihong looked at Yuanzhan in front of him with an amused expression, waiting for him to speak again. At this point, there was no reason for Yuanzhan to back down. Lu Xianping also would not bury the hatchet with Yuanzhan just because Yuanzhan had only used one restriction-breaking talisman but failed to break the cultivation room's restriction. However, it was not easy to make a restriction-breaking talisman and restriction-breaking talisman. Including the two restriction-breaking talismans at the cave entrance, even Su Weihong felt his heart ache. When Hu Lili saw Yuanzhan take another restriction-breaking talisman from Su Weihong's hand, her eyes seemed to be deep in thought. A moment later, Hu Lili seemed to have thought of something. She looked left and right but found nothing. Where did spiritual master Xianshu go? At this moment, Lu Ping, who was already flying towards Universe Island with Yin Xianchu, changed his expression the instant the cultivation room's restriction was broken. He immediately recovered. When Ji Xianxian saw this, he couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Lu, is something wrong?" Lu Ping's speed didn't change as he said, "It's nothing. The people who captured junior brother Yin have already arrived at Huangli Island. It looks like senior sister who won't be able to hold on for much longer. With martial uncle Xianshu's abilities, I think they'll soon discover where we're going. We need to speed up." Unfortunately, after the battle on Huangli Island, everyone was more or less injured. Immediately after, they went out to sea to escort Yin Xianchu. Even though they had the support of Lu Ping's superior recovery pills, which allowed them to temporarily recover from their injuries, the true essence in their bodies couldn't support them for a long period of time. Shilingling said, "We can't go on like this. I'm afraid that when the pursuers catch up, only junior brother Lu and you three will be able to put up a fight." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then said, "This is my negligence. Since it's like this, then we'll split into 3 groups. Senior sister Shi, senior sister Ma Yu, senior brother Zhongjian, the 3 of you will form a group and recover your true essence. If the pursuers behind us come, the 3 of you will just have to think of a way to obstruct them. You must not fight them to the death." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then said, "I'll leave the Azure Phoenix here as a helper. Things don't go well, you can just run. I think that as long as the 3 of you reveal your identities as disciples of the sect, martial uncle Xianshu won't make things difficult for you. However, when you return to the sect, a punishment is unavoidable." Zhongjin smiled and said, "That's nothing. Since we came out today, we've already been on the sect's punishment list. The sect has to give the other sects an impression. However, our sect has always been protective of our own. The matter with junior brother Yin was already forced by our sect, so there's no reason for us to make an example out of it. In the end, it's all bark and no bite." Lu Qiner transformed into a phoenix and descended onto a deserted island with the 3 of them. The 3 of them and the phoenix quickly recovered their true essence while quietly waiting for the pursuers behind them to arrive. After flying for a period of time, Chen Lian and the others also couldn't take it anymore. Lu Ping had Chen Lian, Du Feng and spiritual master Xian Tao hide on a reef and left behind pills to recover true essence. Then he continued flying towards Vast Universe Island with Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian. Ji Xianxian said hesitantly, "Senior brother Lu, are we really going to force our way into Vast Universe Island? With just the 3 of us?" Lu Ping said in a deep voice, "It's just a pretense. Actually, everyone has already thought of it. It's just that out of trust in me no one exposed it. Currently, even though our sects Tian Shui Laozu and Xianling sects Dao Yen Laozu aren't on Vast Universe Island, it's not like the other sects don't have Laozu overseeing them. How can the 3 of us charge in? Our target is a secret location in the outer seas of Vast Universe Island. You'll know once we get there." The restriction on Huangli Island's cultivation room was finally broken. A dense spiritual qi was like a mountain torrent that had been accumulating for a long time. In the instant the restriction was broken, it surged out from the cultivation room. Not only Yuanzhan, Su Weihong and the Soaring Feather Sect's disciple, even Zhang Xuanqing, who was standing beside Hu Lili, revealed an astonished expression. This level of density of spiritual qi could only be achieved by at least half a mid-tier spiritual vein. Yuan Zhan revealed an expression of anticipation as he impatiently walked towards the cultivation room. Chapter 476. There's someone in the cultivation room. Both Yuan Zhan and Su Weihong exclaimed in their hearts. However, Yuan Zhan was pleasantly surprised that he had finally caught hold of Lu Ping's weakness. Who else could be hiding in the thick restriction at this time other than Yin Xianchu? He was almost fooled by Lu Xuanping's trick. Fortunately, he withstood the pressure and persisted in breaking into the cultivation room. Su Weihong was surprised. He didn't believe that Yin Xianchu could be caught so easily. Moreover, it was in Lu Xuanping's own cultivation room. If someone took the opportunity to make things difficult for Lu Xianping, wouldn't Jinling have to punish his own family in the name of righteousness again? Yuan Zhan charged into the cultivation room, but he quickly retreated at a speed faster than when he entered. A golden halberd rushed out of the cultivation room with a fiery red explosion. Yuan Zhan's expression changed greatly. He took out a white jade shield and shouted, "Brother Su, help me." Su Weihong's expression was solemn. With a shake of his hand, a rainbow shot out. Unexpectedly, the halberd that shot out of the cultivation room seemed to be a bluff. With a fierce momentum, it made contact with the white jade shield and retreated on its own before Su Weihong's rainbow could reach it. An angry roar came from the cultivation room. Who the fuck dares to trespass into someone else's cave abode? Scram. Senior brother Yao Yong? Why are you here? Yuan Zhan was still in shock. He finally put away the white jade shield in his hand and asked in surprise. He moved his feet and wanted to continue walking in. The golden halberd rushed out again and pointed at Yuan Zhan, who was about to enter the cave abode. Yuan Zhan had no choice but to stop. Su Weihong's eyes narrowed. He stood behind Yuan Zhan without making a sound, but there was a flash of light in his eyes. He inadvertently looked into the cultivation room. Clearly, it was a kind of ability that cultivated the eyes. He felt that Yao Yong's golden halberd seemed powerful, but it was indeed strong in appearance. In addition, the halberd had retreated midway, which made it even more strange. Beside him, Hu Lily's eyes were also flickering with green light. She could see the divine light in Su Weihong's eyes. Yuan Zhan, what are you trying to do? I was severely injured in the battle with the demon clan, and it wasn't easy for me to beg junior brother Lu to seal the spiritual vein in his cultivation room to recuperate. Now, you've broken the seal of the cultivation room, almost causing me to suffer from qi deviation and my cultivation to be destroyed. Yuan Zhan, what are your intentions? Are you trying to kill me? Do you really think that I, Yao Yong, am a tiger that has fallen to the ground? I might have to ask my teacher, perfected Chu Xuanqing, to judge the situation. Also, who is that person behind you? How come we haven't seen him in our sect? Could it be that you, Yuan Zhan, have received orders from some sect to murder me? Are you even a disciple of Jinling? Yao Yong's series of reprimands and questions, coupled with the fact that he had colluded and schemed with Yao Yong, immediately made Yuan Zhan, who was already somewhat guilty, break out in cold sweat. For a moment he stood at the door of the cultivation room, not knowing whether to retreat or enter. At this moment, perfected Xian Shu appeared in the cave dwelling. He glanced at the cultivation room and said, "Yin Xianshu isn't here. All of you leave." Yuan Zhan felt as if he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly left the cave dwelling. Su Weihong's face was full of resentment as he sighed inwardly at Yuan Zhan's incompetence. He also left. Hu Lili gave a few instructions to Yao Yong, who was in the cultivation room, before closing the stone door. The seal that had been broken by Su Weihong's restriction-breaking talisman began to slowly recover. When Hu Lili walked out of the cave dwelling, she discovered that perfected Xian Shu had already summoned perfected Xian Xiang and the others. Seeing Hu Lili walk out of the cave dwelling, perfected Xian Shu said indifferently, "It seems that Yin Xianshu is definitely not on Huangli Island. The Northern Sea is already an inescapable trap for him. Unless he hides somewhere and doesn't show himself, he can only leave the Northern Sea. Martial niece who is what the old man said, right?" Hu Lili smiled calmly and said, "This is only martial uncle's guess. It is not convenient for me to comment." "Alright, then we will make a trip to Huanyu Island." Perfected Xian Shu led the way out of Huangli Island. Yuan Zhan and the others had already figured something out. Their expressions changed as they followed perfected Xian Shu out of the island. Hu Lili's expression changed and she suddenly said, "Martial uncle, please wait." Perfected Xian Shu turned his head and smiled. "What? Is there any other way to stall for time?" Hu Lili said sternly, reporting to Martial Uncle, although the protective formation and the seal in the cultivation room aren't anything brilliant, it is the result of Junior Lu Xuanping's and my efforts. However, it was so easily destroyed by Junior Lu Xianping. If Martial Uncle leaves without a care, it is inevitable that we will be dissatisfied. Without waiting for perfected Xianshu to speak, Yuan Zhan flew into a rage out of humiliation and said, Senior Martial Sister Hu, don't push your luck. We are searching for Yin Xianchu under the orders of our sect's Laozu. Are you questioning our sect's Laozu? Hu Lili completely disregarded the threatening Yuan Zhan in front of her. She only looked at the expressionless perfected Xianshu with a faint smile. Perfected Xianshu suddenly smiled and said, Martial niece Hu, do you have any rules? Yuan Zhan seemed to be choked to death. His face flushed red as he looked at his uncle in front of him. Hu Lili smiled sweetly and pointed at perfected Xianxiang. Huangli Island has just been attacked by the demon race. Currently, only Martial Uncle Xianshu, Junior Zhang Xuanqing and Martial Uncle Xiansu are on the island. The others are not on the island. Junior Yao Yong and Junior Sister Zheng Jia are both seriously injured and won't be able to recover in a short period of time. Therefore the island's defense is weak. Martial niece would like to ask Martial Uncle to let senior brother Xianxiang stay on Huangli Island for the time being to help Martial niece and the others protect Huangli Island. When junior brother Lu and the others return, it won't be too late for senior brother Xianxiang to leave. Perfected Xianshu chuckled and said, You're really wishful thinking. Do you think that without Xianxiang Yin Xuanchu's strength will be weakened and he will be able to escape? Hu Lili giggled and said, Martial Uncle is right. It is precisely because Junior believes that with Martial Uncle's help, Yin Xianchu will definitely be captured. Therefore, I shamelessly ask senior brother Xianxiang to stay and help Martial niece and the others protect Huangli Island for a period of time to avoid being taken advantage of by others. Senior brother Xianxiang is one of the strongest third-generation disciples in our sect. He is only one step away from breaking through to the late core forging stage. With senior brother Xianxiang here, Huangli Island will certainly be impregnable. After Hu Lili finished speaking, she glanced at Su Weihong out of the corner of her eyes. Perfected Xianshu naturally noticed Hu Lili's actions. After muttering to himself for a moment, he turned to perfected Xianxiang, who had a somewhat complicated expression on his face and said, Fine, you don't have to participate in this pursuit. The safety of Huangli Island is much more important to our sect than a mixed human and demon Yin Xianchu. After perfected Xianxiang began to capture Yin Xianchu, he had been obstructed by the disciples of his sect, both openly and covertly. In addition, he himself was an outstanding cultivator that Jinling had nurtured since childhood, so he had long been unwilling to participate in this operation. However, this matter was handled by perfected Xianshu. As his disciple, perfected Xianxiang was naturally duty-bound to assist his teacher. Perfected Xianxiang had followed perfected Xianshu for several decades. How could perfected Xianshu not understand his disciple's thoughts? Thus, after hearing Hu Lili's explanation, he took the opportunity to have perfected Xianxiang stay on Huangli Island. After leaving Huangli Island, perfected Su Weihong had a gloomy expression on his face as he asked perfected Xianshu, Senior Xianshu, what should we do now? Why do we need to go to Huanyu Island? Perfected Xianshu leisurely said, If Yin Xianshu wants to leave the North Sea, he can only go to the East Sea. Now that he has been expelled from our sect's teleportation formation that leads to the East Sea will naturally not be open to him. Similarly, the teleportation formation that leads to the East Sea from the various sects in the North Sea will naturally not be open to outsiders. Thus, the only teleportation formation that can be used is Huanyu Island. On the surface of the sea, perfected Xianshu and the others were flying in the direction of Huanyu Island. However, at this moment, perfected Xianshu's divine sense moved, as if he had discovered something. However, he frowned as if his divine sense was being interfered with and could not see clearly. Just at this moment, a vast wave of spiritual qi spread over. Within the wave there was a special kind of wave. Perfected Xianshu's expression turned grave as he said, Demon race? The expressions of the various sects cultivators that followed perfected Xianshu changed. They saw that in the center of the spiritual qi wave high up in the sky, a huge boulder the size of a small mountain suddenly appeared in the sky, charging towards perfected Xianshu and the others. When the huge boulder streaked across the sky, it brought with it a huge spark. In an instant, it split into countless fiery meteorites, enveloping perfected Xianshu and the others within the range of the countless falling meteorites. Talisman weapon? Meteorite descent. Perfected Xianshu exclaimed as if he had thought of something. Perfected Xianshu didn't have time to say anything. He opened up a huge jade umbrella and held it up, protecting the people around him. Before the falling meteorites could hit the jade umbrella, they were slowed down by a layer of light attached to the surface of the umbrella and bounced off. However, Perfected Xianshu's jade umbrella could only protect the people around him. The cultivators from the other sects were not so lucky. Several people were injured when they tried to block the falling meteorites, or were directly smashed into the sea by the huge impact of the falling meteorites. Fortunately, these cultivators only spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and their lives were not harmed. The talisman weapon was made by Fa Xiang Laozu. Just like the talisman treasures made by perfected core forging Taoists were a huge threat to blood condensation realm cultivators, the talisman weapon made by Fa Xiang Laozu was also a tyrannical deterrent to core forging realm cultivators. A crisp and proud chirp came from the sky. A huge swan appeared in the distant sky. When it spread its wings, which were about 6 feet long, it flapped and was covered by a layer of green and red light. Immediately after, the swan quickly flew into the distance. Bastard. So it's just an early-stage core forging realm bird demon. He dares to enter the inner sea just because he has a talisman weapon? He's simply courting death. Fortunately, he's just an early-stage core forging realm demonic cultivator. It's difficult for him to unleash the full power of the talisman weapon. Otherwise, a few people would have died this time. Kill this bird demon and take his talisman weapon. When the crowd saw that the one who sneak attacked them was actually an early-stage core forging realm demonic cultivator, 3 or 4 of the perfected masters who were panicking because of the talisman weapon immediately flew out and chased after the fleeing one. Talisman weapon. It was a life-saving item for core forging realm cultivators. Chapter 477. Sage Xianshu's group was getting closer and closer to the sea region around Earth Island. Earlier, due to the sneak attack from the Yao clan and the appearance of the talisman weapons, several cultivators from the same group had rushed over to kill off the Yao cultivators. However, Xianshu Laozu did not stop to wait for them. Instead, he led the remaining 8 cultivators towards Earth Island. Seeing that they were about to enter the sea region around Earth Island, Sage Xianshu's divine sense fluctuated. Suddenly, he turned his head to look at the surface of the sea, which was several hundred zhang away. At the same time he shouted, "Who? Come out." As he spoke, he pointed at the surface of the sea, which was several hundred zhang away. As everyone was feeling surprised, they saw a huge wave rise up from the spot where Sage Xianshu's finger was pointing. It seemed as though something terrifying was about to emerge from the sea. Suddenly, 3 wretched-looking figures emerged from the sea. Glancing at Sage Xianshu's group, light flashed out from their bodies and they turned to flee in a direction where there was no one around. Just as the 3 of them left, a large clump of seaweed suddenly rose up from the sea. The clump of seaweed waved about in every direction, seemingly wanting to entangle something. As for the 3 figures, they had long since escaped from the area covered by the dancing seaweed. As the 3 figures turned to look at them, Sage Xianshu's group was able to clearly see their faces. It's Yin Xianshu, the one in black. That's right. The other one is Lu Xianping. Look at his flying technique. He has seemingly transformed into a stream of water. Lu Xuanping's master is Lu Tianling Laozu. He learned a water-type magic technique. As for the one riding a flying puppet, he must be Ji Xianxian. That's right. It's them. What cunning youngsters. They hid here and made us think that they had gone to Earth Island. If not for Sage Xianshu, we would have been easily evaded by them. What are we waiting for? Chase them. Stop them and hand them over to Jinling's Sage Xianshu. Let them deal with them. Aha. Seeing this, everyone became excited. With a shout, 8 mid-core forging cultivators from the various sects chased after the distressed trio. Although Yuan Zhan felt that it was inappropriate, in order to let Lu Ping experience the feeling of being chased, Yuan Zhan happily chased after them. Just as Su Weihong was about to chase after him, he saw Sage Xianshu frowning as though he was thinking about something. Su Weihong rolled his eyes and said, "What's wrong? Is Senior Xianshu going back on his word? These 3 from your esteemed sect are known as the strongest 3rd-generation disciples. If Senior Xianshu did not make a move, we might not be able to keep them here." Reverend Xianshu looked at Su Weihong with a strange expression and suddenly laughed. "Nephew Su is right, maybe the old man will also have to make a move, let's catch up." This time it was Su Weihong's turn to be surprised. Although the three people in front of them were extremely fast, the sea was vast and there was nothing to hide them. Therefore, the three of them were unable to shake off the pursuit of the people behind them. Although Dao Master Xian Shu only started to chase after the three of them, he was after all a peak core forging 8th layer cultivator. Very quickly he caught up and closed the distance between him and the three of them. The closer Sage Xian Shu got to the three fleeing people, the more he felt that something was wrong. Although the three's speed was fast, their escape techniques were constantly supported by talismans and not their own escape techniques. Moreover, although the three's aura fluctuated, making it difficult to grasp, but compared to Lu Xuanping's 5th layer core forging cultivator and Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian's 4th layer core forging cultivators, there was still a clear gap. Moreover, as the pursuit dragged on, the three fleeing people in front of them actually felt exhausted and their speed slowly decreased. The escape light under Sage Xianshu's feet suddenly burst out with light. His figure flashed several times in the sky and appeared in front of the three fleeing people. The three fleeing people were startled and wanted to change direction, but it was already too late. Su Weihong, Yuan Zhan and the others had already surrounded them from both sides. Seeing that they could no longer escape, the three simply stopped in front of Sage Xianshu. At this time, Su Weihong, Yuan Zhan and the others also felt that something was wrong. Yuan Zhan saw that although the three of them had the appearance of Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian respectively, their height and build were wrong. Their aura was also completely different. Yuan Zhan's expression changed and he said sternly, "That's not right. Who are the three of you? Why are you pretending to be Lu Ping and the others?" Among them, Lu Ping chuckled and said, "Junior brother Yuan has good eyesight. You noticed it so easily?" Sage Xianshu smiled faintly and said, "I don't know if you're a martial nephew of the refining hall or a martial nephew of the puppet pavilion. These three masks are made to perfection. If you conceal your aura more tightly, I'm afraid that even the old man wouldn't be able to distinguish you." The three of them wiped their faces and immediately revealed their true appearances. The one pretending to be Lu Ping was Chen Lian, while Sage Xiantao was wearing Ji Xianxian's mask. As for Du Feng, who was not good with words like Yin Xianchu, he was disguised as Lu Ping. Chen Lian smiled and said, "Martial Uncle Xianshu's discerning eyes are like torches. These masks are something that my master, Sage Enigma Flame, and the puppet, Grandmaster Xian Huai, worked together to refine." This disciple felt that it was a novelty, so he took a few from master to play around. Unexpectedly, Martial Uncle misunderstood. When Su Weihong saw the three of them changing their appearances in the blink of an eye, he recalled that when he urged Sage Xianshu to chase after them, Sage Xianshu's reaction showed that he had noticed something amiss. However, he still chased after them. Clearly, he was also pretending to not know how to protect his own sect's disciples. However, at that time, Su Weihong was the one who urged Sage Xianshu to chase after them. Sage Xianshu had used the excuse of not discovering that the three of them were pretending to be Lu Ping. Naturally, Su Weihong had no choice but to viciously say, "These people are clearly not respecting your sect's Laozu's orders." Sage Xianshu smiled gently and said, "These disciples are indeed naughty and mischievous. Although they did it out of their desire to protect their fellow sect members, they still violated the sect's laws. I Junling will naturally punish them. There's no need for martial nephew Su to worry about it." Su Weihong angrily remained silent. Sage Xianshu's expression turned serious and he said, "The three of you will return to Heaven Spirit Mountain now and inform your respective masters of your mistakes. After that, you will become woodcutters at the back of Heaven Spirit Mountain for 3 years. You will chop 3 loads of firewood every day. You are not allowed to use your true essence or magic power. During these 3 years, you will not be allowed to enjoy the sect's benefits as punishment. Do you accept this?" Chen Lian and the other two looked at each other, then respectfully bowed to Sage Xianshu and said, "Martial Uncle, you enforce the law fairly. We accept this." Sage Xianshu nodded and said, "In that case, the three of you may return to Heaven Spirit Mountain." After saying that, he turned to the other sect's disciples and said with a smile, "My sect's disciples are unfilial and have made a fool of themselves in front of all of you. Now that the Sea of Universe Island is close at hand, I'm afraid that Yin Xianchu will arrive on Universe Island soon. In order to prevent Yin Xianchu from escaping to the Eastern Sea through the transportation formation, the old man will need to go first. All of you can catch up later." At this moment, Su Weihong took a step forward and said, "Junior should go with Senior. Since I'm here to be a witness, I naturally need a legitimate reason. If there's another fake like this, I'll be able to give an explanation to the sect's elders." Sage Xianshu looked displeased and said, If martial nephew Su can keep up with the old man, then the old man will naturally have nothing to say. After saying that, there was a flash of light under Sage Xianshu's feet and he was already several hundred feet away. With another flash he was already more than 1,000 feet away. Su Weihong smiled confidently and raised his hand to toss out a flying boat. Su Weihong leaped up and stood on the flying boat. His true essence surged all over his body and the flying boat immediately drew a huge white trench on the sea surface. It instantly disappeared before everyone's eyes. As expected, its speed was not inferior to Sage Xianshu's. The remaining Yuan Zhan and the disciples from the various sects looked at each other. After a while, they remembered their respective missions and helplessly chased in the direction of Huanyu Island. When everyone returned to the place where they had met the fake Lu Ping and the other two, they coincidentally met up with the few practitioners from the various sects who had chased after the core forging stage bird demon with the intention of stealing the seal weapon from the bird demon's hands. Only then did they realize that the bird demon was actually the demon pet of Jinling's disciple. Everyone realized that they had been tricked and originally wanted to teach the 3 early core forging stage disciples a lesson. However, unexpectedly, one of the female practitioners took out 4 seal weapons in a row and said that Jinling's Tiankong Laozu, who had just reached the mid-Dharma stage, was her grandfather. This scared the 4 mid-core forging stage adepts so badly that they wet their pants and could only turn around and chase in the direction of Sage Xianshu and the others. The 2 parties met up and each recounted their encounters. They all hated Jinling's disciple to death, but in their hearts, they deeply suppressed their admiration for the camaraderie between Jinling's disciple. Thousands of miles away from Huanyu Island, the calm surface of the sea suddenly split open. 3 disheveled figures rushed out of the sea one after another and flew desperately in the direction of Huanyu Island. Immediately after the 3 of them, 8 or 9 mid-core forging stage beast cultivators jumped out of the water and chased after them. However, at this moment, a low roar suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. The 8 or 9 beast cultivators who were chasing after them suddenly stopped. Seeing the 3 of them fleeing in a disheveled manner, they all let out a long roar and turned around, leaping into the sea and disappearing. The 3 of them fled for a distance and only stopped when they saw that the beast cultivators behind them were no longer chasing after them. They were Lu Ping, Yin Xianshu and Ji Xianxian. At this moment, the 3 of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Lu Ping's brows were tightly furrowed, while Ji Xianxian and Yin Xuanshu's faces were slightly pale, as if they had overexerted their true essence. Ji Xianxian even revealed a hint of helplessness, while Yin Xuanshu's hint of coldness actually carried a hint of determination. Motherfucker, man proposes but God disposes. Lu Ping finally fiercely cursed and said, there are actually so many core forging stage beast cultivators hiding here. We almost ran into them. Ji Xianxian received a water spirit pellet from Lu Ping. This was a true essence recovery medicinal pellet concocted using the water spirit alchemy technique. Although each pellet consumed a lot of true essence, its effects were 50% better than ordinary true essence recovery medicinal pellets. Ji Xianxian swallowed the water spirit pill, looked at his good friend who was in despair and said worriedly, Senior brother Lu, why are there so many beast cultivators there? It can't be that your secret teleportation formation was discovered by the beast cultivators, right? Chapter 478. Lu Ping shook his head with a serious expression and said, that shouldn't be the case. That teleportation array is extremely well hidden, and the entrance has already been destroyed by me. If they didn't intentionally search for it, they would absolutely not be able to discover its location. However, with so many demon race cultivators hiding here, they must be plotting something. Although we've discovered their tracks now, we can't go to that teleportation array. Damn it. Thinking up to here, Lu Ping couldn't help but curse again. Lu Ping originally wanted to send Yin Xianshu to the Middle Earth through that teleportation array, but he didn't expect that there were actually over 10 core forging stage demon cultivators hiding in the nearby sea. He didn't know what they were plotting, and one of them was an old acquaintance of Lu Ping. It was the late core forging stage primordial giant crocodile, Aoli, who had pursued Lu Ping in the deep sea demon region. It was precisely this powerful demon cultivator who discovered the whereabouts of Lu Ping's group of 3. With just a single strike, it allowed Lu Ping to once again witness the terror of a late core forging stage cultivator. It also allowed Yin Xianshu and Ji Xianxian to understand the gap between them and a true late core forging stage expert cultivator. Actually, Lu Ping had some guesses about the reason why the demon race was hiding here. Seeing Lu Ping in deep thought, Ji Xianxian couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Lu, have you thought of something?" Lu Ping said seriously, "I think I should know why they're hiding here." Seeing Ji Xuanxuan's questioning gaze, Lu Ping said, "There was originally a teleportation array that led to the deep-sea demon region." Just as Lu Ping spoke up to hear, Yin Xianchu suddenly raised his head and looked towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping nodded and said, "I once saw you return to the deep-sea demon region through the teleportation array after meeting with martial uncle Xian Yin here." Yin Xianchu suddenly interrupted Lu Ping and said, "How do you know that it leads to the deep-sea demon region?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then said, "A few days ago the sect issued an order to search for AOU's traces in the North Sea. I wanted to avenge martial uncle Li, so I thought of this, so I took the risk to activate the transmission array. As a result, I arrived at the deep-sea demon region. Afterwards I was chased by the demon clan. In desperation, I destroyed the transmission array and hid in the undersea mountain range. It was only until De Gui advanced to the core forging stage that he sent the traction array disk of the single-person transmission array I set up in the undersea mountain range back to Huangli Island. Fortunately, I was able to return before the demon clan broke through the island's protective array." Lu Ping looked at Yin Xuanchu's slightly excited expression and continued, "I suspect that the demon clan is taking advantage of the confrontation between Jinling and Xianling sect. Our sects Tian Shui Laozu and Xianling sects Dao Yen Laozu aren't on Huanyu Island to restore the transmission array here. This way, the demon clan will have another secret channel to launch attacks on the various sects in the North Sea. After all, the reason why we wanted to enter the Eastern Sea through the transmission array on Huanyu Island was because these two Laozu weren't on Huanyu Island." At this moment, Lu Ping and Ji Xianxian heard Yin Xianchu say in a low voice, "This transmission array was originally secretly constructed by Mother for the sake of meeting Father. Father knew of the existence of this transmission array, but Mother never told Father about it. Father also never had the idea of using this transmission array. Mother never betrayed the demon clan because of Father, and Father never betrayed the human clan because of Mother." Ji Xianxian patted Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and didn't say anything else. As the three of them spoke, the hazy silhouette of Huanyu Island had already appeared on the surface of the sea. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, "I didn't think that we would still have to charge into Huanyu Island. I only hope that there won't be any slip-ups this time." Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu both knew that the secret transmission array discovered by Lu Ping just so happened to be occupied by a group of demon clan. Although the secret of the transmission array wasn't exposed, Yin Xianchu couldn't use the transmission array to head to the Midlands. He could only prepare for the worst and place all his hopes on the transmission array that led to the Eastern Sea from Huanyu Island. However, just as the three of them were immersed in their thoughts, a long howl suddenly came from the surface of the sea behind them. Their expressions changed, and when they turned around to look, a green streak of light had already streaked across the sky. Before the howl dissipated, the streak of light had already landed in front of the three of them. Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu revealed vigilant expressions, but Lu Ping's expression didn't change. He bowed first and said, "Disciple greets martial uncle Xianchu." Ji Xianxian also bowed. Yin Xuanchu's expression fluctuated, but in the end he still bowed towards spiritual master Xianchu. Spiritual master Xianchu glanced at Yin Xianchu indifferently and said coldly, "When your father and mother got married back then, I already expected this outcome. However, I didn't think that I would be the one to carry out this matter today. Don't hold any resentment towards the sect. Our sect is also forced to do this." Yin Xianchu clenched his fists tightly. His lowered head hid the expression on his face. Ji Xianxian hesitated for a moment, but he still took a small step in front of Yin Xianchu, blocking half of Yin Xuanchu's body. He bowed deeply and said, "Martial uncle junior brother Xianchu is the only descendant of martial uncle Xianin. There are no outsiders here, so please let junior brother Xianchu go." When spiritual master Xianchu saw Ji Xianxian like this, although his expression was indifferent, his eyes emitted a deep light. In the end he sighed and said, "It's impossible to let him go. I, Xianchu, am in charge of the sect's rules and I've never shown any mercy. However, so be it. Today I'll make the decision. As long as you allow me to personally dissolve your golden core and shatter your core space, I'll spare your life. However, from today onwards, you'll have to spend the rest of your life under house arrest on Tianling Mountain. In this way, the senior and junior brothers who were implicated by you will also receive a lighter punishment in the sect." Ji Xianxian said anxiously, "Martial uncle, how can this be? Wouldn't shattering the core space be a fate worse than death for us cultivators?" Spiritual Master Xianshu didn't comment on Ji Xuanxuan's pleas. He only looked at Yin Xianshu and said, "What do you think?" Yin Xuanxu's fists within his sleeves clenched even tighter, and a trace of green faintly appeared on his white knuckles. In the end, Yin Xianshu seemed to have made some sort of decision. His tensed body suddenly relaxed and he said bitterly, "I'm willing, martial uncle Xianshu." Lu Ping suddenly took a step forward and interrupted Yin Xuanxu's words. He said, "Disciple has been comprehending swordsmanship in recent years and has gained some insights. Not long ago, I was lucky enough to kill a late-stage core forging demon race cultivator. I've always heard that martial uncle's magic power is boundless, and that you're the #1 person in our sect's second-generation disciples below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Disciple has overestimated his own abilities, and would like to ask martial uncle for advice on swordsmanship. I hope that martial uncle can grant my wish." Ji Xianxian stared at Lu Ping's back dumbfoundedly. Yin Xianshu suddenly raised his head and opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Spiritual Master Xianshu also seemed to have been stirred up by Lu Ping's presumptuous words. He looked at Lu Ping and asked in amusement and curiosity, "What did you say? This is simply preposterous." Bus. The golden scale sword hovered above Lu Ping's head and pointed at Spiritual Master Xianshu from afar. He performed a sword salute of a junior and used his actions to once again verify what he had just said. Spiritual Master Xianshu suddenly became furious, but he forcibly suppressed his anger. Instead he laughed and said, "Good, good, good. As expected of senior sister Lu Tianling's good disciple. You're just as lawless as you are. Don't think that you can be complacent just because you defeated a late-stage core forging demon race cultivator. That late-stage core forging demon race cultivator is just an existence at the bottom. Didn't you want to spar with the old man? The old man will fulfill your wish today. I'll let you see the true difference between late-stage core forging demon race and mid-stage core forging demon race. I'll also let you understand that the difference in strength between late-stage core forging demon race and mid-stage core forging demon race will be even greater due to the difference in the quality of the second type of spirit treasure." Yin Xianshu suddenly said, "Senior brother Lu, don't fight with martial uncle Xianshu. I'll go back with him." What answered Yin Xianshu was a sky-shaking sword cry from the golden scale sword above Lu Ping's head. Ji Xianxian grabbed Yin Xianshu and fled in the direction of Universe Island with all his might. At the same time he said, "Let's go. Don't waste the opportunity that senior brother Lu has earned for you. How can you be content if you don't give it a try?" Yin Xianshu allowed Ji Xianxian to pull him away. When he turned his head, he only saw the golden brilliance that filled the sky, forming a huge vortex in the sky. The sword light within the vortex formed a huge sword formation in an orderly manner, covering half of the sky behind Yin Xianshu. At the same time, it also blocked Spiritual Master Xuanshu's path of pursuit. Yin Xianshu seemed to see Lu Ping's unwavering determination from his back. Lu Ping's first move was the limit of his current swordsmanship. The rotating sword formation, with the golden scale sword at the center, surged towards Spiritual Master Xianshu. Spiritual Master Xianshu stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the orderly sword formation that Lu Ping had mastered pressing towards him from all directions. Spiritual Master Xianshu, who was forcibly suppressing his rage, couldn't help but have a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Lu Ping, a third-generation disciple of Jinling who had just advanced to the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Spiritual Master Xianshu, a veteran late-stage core forging realm expert of Jinling who was at the peak of the 8th layer of the core forging realm. In the distance where the sea and the sky met, a white mark suddenly appeared. The white mark quickly rushed towards the two sides of the battle. When it got close, it was Spiritual Master Su Weihong of Xianling sect who had rushed over with Spiritual Master Xianshu. Seeing that the sword light that filled the sky actually included him, Su Weihong was startled. Then a look of joy appeared on his face. If Lu Xianping was here, then Yin Xianshu shouldn't be far away. The current situation was obviously because of Yin Xianshu. This Lu Xianping actually didn't hesitate to challenge a famous cultivator among the second-generation disciples of Jinling. Su Weihong shouted, "Lu Xianping, how dare you? You actually dare to attack your own sect's senior." Su Weihong deliberately roared when he spoke. His voice spread in all directions as if he wanted to let all the people of the North Sea know about this news. Su Weihong's eyes turned and he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Martial Uncle Xianshu, I'll temporarily block your sect's junior brother Lu Xianping. You first go after that vile spawn Yin Xianshu and clean up the sect." Scram. Scram. What answered him was Lu Ping and spiritual master Xuanshu's angry shouts. A powerful divine sense attack carried a huge pressure and rushed towards Su Weihong. Su Weihong's face suddenly turned deathly pale. Dang 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 dang, he stepped on the small boat under his feet and took a few steps back. The silver boat seemed to have encountered a hurricane on the sea and was pushed back more than 100 feet in an instant. Chapter 479. Su Weihong's face was gloomy. He turned around to steer the flying boat around Lu Ping's sword formation. However, at this time, Lu Ping seemed to have reached the limit of his control over the sword formation. A huge whirlpool of swordsmanship roared down, engulfing Su Weihong along with it. Lu Shenping, how dare you? Su Weihong's eyes twitched. He waved his hand and released a ray of light to protect himself. He turned around and hid behind Daoist Xianshu. He didn't believe that Lu Ping would really kill him, but it was possible that Lu Ping would seriously injure him. However, he also knew that Daoist Xianshu wouldn't ignore him. With Daoist Xianshu, a famous late-stage core forging cultivator in the North Sea, Su Weihong didn't think that Lu Ping would be his opponent. Looking at Lu Ping's sword formation, Daoist Xianshu's expression became more and more dignified. As Lu Ping's cultivation increased, and his understanding of the sword formation became more profound, the power of the Sea of All Rivers sword art in Lu Ping's hands became more and more earth-shattering. He was worthy of being an outstanding existence among the third-generation disciples. Even the third-generation disciples who had cultivated for hundreds of years and reached the sixth layer of core forging might not be able to comprehend this sword technique. At the very least, his disciple, Xian Xiang, was far from being able to reach this level. Daoist Xianshu looked at this martial nephew in front of him with a complicated expression. His clothes fluttered without any wind, and layers of protective gang qi expanded from his body. 7 layers spread out in a row. These 7 layers of protective gang qi surged with each other, forming a vague wall of countless giant trees in front of Daoist Xianshu. 10,000 wood barrier. Lu Ping's pupils shrunk. Enlightened Master Xianshu's protective aura was condensed from 7 extraordinary items, raising his defensive skill to the level of a great skill. Lu Ping had seen the wood forest wall, used by a Wang clan cultivator in the Eastern Sea's 3 Clans Island. But back then that Wang clan cultivator's wood forest wall was only at the level of a lesser skill. Compared to enlightened Master Xianshu's wood forest wall, the difference was like heaven and earth. Daoist Xianshu naturally wouldn't use his protective aura to resist Lu Ping's sword technique. This was just a precaution. From this, it can be seen that Daoist Xianshu was very cautious and attached importance to Lu Ping. Master Xianshu walked a few steps on the surface of the sea in a mysterious manner. At the same time, his hands quickly formed a few hand seals. He opened his mouth and chanted. Then he pointed at the surface of the sea. A ball of green light the size of a human head entered the sea. Then the surface of the sea began to crackle like boiling water. Lu Ping scanned the area with his divine sense and soon noticed the changes in the water. Countless sword rays suddenly changed their direction and pointed downward as Lu Ping made a series of hand seals. Daoist Xianshu's face finally showed a trace of surprise. To be able to respond so quickly, it was obvious that Lu Ping's divine sense had already reached the level of a late-stage core forging cultivator. At this time, Daoist Xianshu's spell had already been completed. It was too late to make any changes. Countless seaweeds and seaweed broke through the surface of the water. Like a group of demons, they flew towards the sword lights dancing in the sky. The sword lights in the sword formation quickly slashed towards the branches and vines. However, they found that these things were not as weak as they had imagined. The tough branches often needed 4 or 5 slashes from the psychic sword light to break. However, after these 4 or 5 slashes, the psychic sword light contained a trace of Lu Ping's true essence was almost consumed by more than half. Fortunately, Lu Ping had already made some changes to the sword formation. Countless sword lights crisscrossed in the sky. The entire 100 rivers into the sea sword formation simultaneously transformed into 18 small sword formations, each fighting independently. Although each small sword formation was dozens of times weaker than the big sword formation, it was much more flexible. The sword lights in each small sword formation struck the mutated seaweed and retreated. In the blink of an eye, Daoist Xianshu's divine sense was crushed by Lu Ping's 18 sword formations. Then the 18 sword formations clanged loudly, and the flying sword lights instantly formed a complete 100 rivers into the sea sword formation. Daoist Xianshu smiled and said, "You can control the formation so skillfully. I forgot that as an alchemy grandmaster, you must have a divine sense that far surpasses cultivators of the same level. If I'm not wrong, your divine sense is not inferior to a cultivator in the 8th or 9th layer of the core forging realm. Lu Ping smiled indifferently and said, "You flatter me, martial uncle. Please enlighten me." Daoist Shen Shu laughed and said, "Your strength is indeed not bad among cultivators of the same level. Perhaps you really killed Daoist Master Lu Hai in a head-on battle. However, if you want to challenge me with just that, then you're still far from it. Ever since you advanced to the core forging realm and returned to the North Sea, everything has been too smooth. You almost never suffered any setbacks. Fine, today I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of senior sister Lu Tianling. It's better than being arrogant in the future and falling into someone else's trap." Lu Ping didn't say anything. The 100 rivers into the sea sword formation slowly descended and surrounded Daoist Shen Shu from all directions. A slingshot suddenly appeared in Daoist Shen Shu's hand. 2 small wooden branches extended outwards, each with a belt made of unknown beast tendons. The 2 belts finally fused together and formed a leather cushion to hold the pill. Daoist Shen Shu held the wooden bow in his left hand. He pinched the leather cushion with his right hand and pulled it back. The 2 beast tendons immediately elongated. At the same time, a green light flashed on the leather cushion in his right hand. The green light grew brighter and brighter until it formed a green ball of light the size of an eyeball. Daoist Shen Shu loosened his right hand and the green ball of light disappeared in a flash. Then an explosion rang out in the middle of Lu Ping's sword formation. Lu Ping's expression changed. In his divine sense, he discovered that after the green ball of light smashed into several psychic sword lights, it suddenly exploded. The psychic sword lights around the green ball of light were instantly extinguished. A space with a circumference of 3 feet appeared in the center of the green ball of light's explosion. Lu Ping directed the sword formation to close in on Daoist Shen Shu. Countless psychic sword lights cut deep marks on Daoist Shen Shu's aura shield, but they quickly recovered. Daoist Shen Shu's figure flashed, and a series of green lights flashed. Lu Ping's divine sense changed rapidly. He directed the sword formation with the intention of blocking Daoist Shen Shu in the middle of the sword formation's encirclement. Unknowingly, Daoist Shen Shu had already appeared in the space of 3 feet that the green ball of light had exploded. A look of joy flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. The surrounding psychic sword lights suddenly reversed and rushed towards Daoist Shen Shu from all directions to kill him. Daoist Shen Shu seemed to have deliberately entered this space to give the opportunity to Lu Ping. Just when the countless psychic sword lights were about to turn Daoist Shen Shu into a hedgehog, Daoist Shen Shu suddenly raised his hands. Just like a dandelion blown away by a gentle breeze, countless green light spots fluttered in the air and accurately stuck to the psychic sword lights that were rushing towards him from all directions from Lu Ping. Lu Ping's heart jumped. This was exactly the same method that Daoist Lu Hai had used to fight against his own great spiritual sword technique. After that, Lu Ping discovered the difference between the two. These green light spots did not absorb the Zhen Yuan contained in the psychic sword lights, causing the psychic sword lights to self-destruct. Instead, they directly exploded and completely destroyed the psychic sword lights. Then, countless sounds of explosions rang out like firecrackers. The psychic sword lights that filled the sky were all detonated by the green light spots in the sky. Lu Ping's great spiritual sword technique was so easily broken by Daoist Shen Shu. Looking at Daoist Shen Shu's faint smile, Lu Ping's face was as calm as water. The golden scale sword whimpered and retreated, circling around Lu Ping like a little kid who had been greatly wronged. Although the great spiritual sword formation is exquisite and powerful, but in your hands, it is only SOSO, Daoist Shen Shu faintly said. Then he frowned. His body still stood still. Suddenly, the 10,000 woods wall in front of him grew countless branches and weaved them into a vine shield. Then, with a poo sound, the vine shield was pierced through, and a dark blue sword light flashed in front of the 10,000 woods wall. Shapeless sword art, I didn't expect you to practice this set of magic arts. Rumor has it that in order to refine this set of magic arts, not only do you need an invisible flying sword, you also need a strange natural wonder called shapeless water. It seems that your luck is not small, to be able to obtain this kind of natural treasure. Unfortunately, your sword art is incomplete and can only reach the minor spiritual level. Moreover, if your flying sword was a psychic magic treasure it would be fine, but it is just an ordinary magic treasure. Its quality is too low, and it is far from being able to deal with the old man. Daoist Shen Shu was indeed worthy of being a veteran late core forging cultivator who had been famous for hundreds of years. With just a glance he was able to see through most of Lu Ping's methods. While breaking Lu Ping's spiritual power, he also casually commented on it. Lu Ping's face was gloomy. Even though he had the strength to kill Taoist Lu Hai, but in front of this kind of famous cultivator, Lu Ping felt that he was at his wit's end. Thinking back to the primordial crocodile Taoist Aoli he encountered at the bottom of the sea, it was only a casual attack. Lu Ping, Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianshu joined forces to resist it, but in the end they still retreated in a sorry state. They were almost surrounded by the monster cultivators who rushed over. If it wasn't for the fact that these monster cultivators seemed to have some misgivings and didn't want to expose too much, it was likely that Lu Ping and the other two would not have been able to escape unscathed. Taoist Xianshu sneered and suddenly leaped up, saying, "Since it's an instruction, Martial Nephew Lu will also receive a move from the old man. In the future, Senior Martial Sister Lu will not blame the old man for not fulfilling his responsibility as a martial uncle." Taoist Xianshu flew in the air and a peachwood longsword suddenly appeared in his hand. He pointed it towards the sky and a green lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket appeared out of thin air and landed on the peachwood longsword. As the lightning flickered, Taoist Xianshu immediately slashed the wooden sword and shouted towards Lu Ping, "Lightning guiding technique, quick!" Just when Taoist Xianshu's longsword was pointed towards Lu Ping felt a great crisis descending upon him. The Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash in his core space rapidly trembled, as if it was trying its best to break free from the shackles of the gold core. How could Lu Ping dare to reveal this treasure in front of others? Looking at the green lightning bolt rushing towards him, Lu Ping did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The golden scale sword once again let out a long cry. A white sword light that reached the sky seemed to want to cut open a door in this part of the world and slash towards the green lightning bolt. At the same time, on the surface of the sea dozens of miles away in the direction that Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianshu had escaped to, a violent spiritual energy fluctuation suddenly rang out along with a deafening roar. This time, Lu Ping's expression finally changed drastically. Chapter 480. The green thunder that had been shattered by the true essence one sword strike passed through the golden scale sword's shadow and condensed back together. The color of the green thunder seemed to have faded a little, but it still contained a tyrannical power. Lu Ping's face was filled with panic as he leaped back in the direction of the explosion. At the same time, a small flag appeared in his hand and he waved it in front of him. A layer of black water curtain appeared in front of him. However, as soon as the green lightning came into contact with the black water curtain, it was easily torn apart by the green lightning in the midst of a series of electric sparks. Sage Xianshu looked at the small flag in Lu Ping's hand that was constantly waving the black water curtain. He said with some surprise, "Water control flag? I didn't expect the mystic flame to let you take away this treasure from the inheritance space." Before Lu Ping could reply, when the green lightning finally broke through the black light curtain of the water control flag, Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi suddenly bloomed layer by layer like a lotus. The transformation of the water curtain true Dipper Chi caused Lu Ping to be wrapped in a tier 6 lotus flower. This time, the green lightning that broke through the black water curtain of the water control flag was no longer as powerful as before. It was firmly blocked by the blue tier 6 lotus flower outside the true Dipper Chi protection. Sage Xianshu looked at the lotus flower that Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi protection in amazement. He asked curiously, "The water curtain true Dipper Chi can have such a magical transformation?" In this way, the defense of the 6th layer true Dipper Chi protection can actually catch up to the old man's 7th layer true Dipper Chi protection. This is really strange. When your teacher condensed the true Dipper Chi protection, he did not have such a magical power like yours. When Sage Xianshu saw that Lu Ping could actually withstand his attack, he kept the peachwood sword in his hand and did not attack again. Lu Ping gave Sage Xianshu a deep look. After swallowing a precious elixir to recover his true essence, his pale face recovered a little. He turned around and rushed toward the source of the heaven and earth spiritual energy fluctuation dozens of miles behind him. When Sage Xianshu saw that Lu Ping was leaving, he did not stop him. Instead he turned around and looked behind him. Su Weihong had been hiding behind Sage Xianshu before the battle between Lu Ping and Sage Xianshu. It was unknown when Su Weihong had fainted behind Sage Xianshu. Taoist Master Xianshu thought for a moment, but didn't act to save him. Instead, he pointed a finger and the small boat that Taoist Master Su Weihong was controlling floated towards Taoist Master Xianshu. Taoist Master Xianshu threw Su Weihong into the small boat and stood on the surface of the sea without moving. His eyes were looking towards a direction several dozen li away as he muttered, "As fellow disciples of the same sect, this old man has already done his best. Whether or not you can escape in the end will depend on your own luck. In this way, even if you all die, the sect will not have to bear the reputation of killing their own disciples." Lu Ping immediately used his escape technique. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a puddle of water as he rapidly flew across the surface of the sea. At this moment, Lu Ping was no longer in the mood to be complacent about receiving Sage Xianshu's attack. He never thought that there would actually be someone who had predicted their destination and set up an ambush for Yin Xianshu and Ji Zixuan when they approached Huanyu Island. To Lu Ping, a distance of dozens of miles was nothing more than a moment's work. However, when Lu Ping was 7 or 8 miles away from the battlefield, he stopped using his escape technique. Lu Ping swept his divine sense outwards and the scene that was several miles away was immediately reflected in his divine sense. "Ouyang Weijian, you are a famous cultivator of the North Sea. How could you be in cahoots with the scum of the Overturned Seas gang? Could it be that your Xianling sect has already colluded with the Overturned Seas gang?" Standing in front of Ji Xianshan were 3 puppets whose strength was not below that of the core forging realm. Under Ji Xuanshuan's command, the 3 puppets fearlessly charged towards the person in front of them. Around Ji Xianshan and his 3 puppets, a black shadow moved from east to west, attacking the enemies in front of them. The black shadow would often retreat after a single strike, circle around the 3 puppets, and then attack from another direction. This was precisely the killing technique that Ji Xianshan and Yin Xianshu used with great rapport. Ji Xianshan used the fearless charge of the puppets, while Yin Xianshu was responsible for restraining and disturbing the enemy. When the 2 of them worked together, they would often cause their opponents to be distracted and lose sight of one another, allowing them to defeat opponents who were stronger than them. However, this time, the 2 of them seemed to be unable to cooperate with each other. This was because the person obstructing them wasn't just Ouyang Weijian. There were also 5 or 6 core forging realm cultivators whose cultivation was similar to theirs. "Humph, your words are quite unreasonable. Why can't my Overturned Seas gang cooperate with Xianling sect? On the contrary, one of you is actually the descendant of a human and a demon. This is the true person in the cultivation world who should be killed. My Overturned Seas gang is enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens, while you, Xinling, are the one who colludes with a monster and harbors filth." A tall cultivator directed the crowd to cooperate with Ouyang Weijian to firmly block Yin Xianshu and Yin Xianshu. Then they began to flank them from both sides. Everyone supported each other and their cooperation was quite exquisite. Gradually they surrounded Yin Xianshu and Ji Xianshan, and gradually reduced the range of Yin Xuanshu's movements, forcing the 2 of them to be unable to fully display their cooperation. Seeing that victory was within his grasp, the Overturned Seas gang cultivator who spoke earlier said to Yin Xianshu complacently, "I've long since expected that you, Xinling, are unwilling to bear the reputation of murdering your own clan's disciples and want to let you go. In this case, for the sake of the human cultivators of the North Sea, my Overturned Seas gang may have to slay demons and eliminate devils. We'll talk about it after we kill a monster like you. As for the other one, I believe that Brother Ouyang would also be happy to have one less competitor in the North Sea." Ouyang Weijian remained silent, but the flowing wind sword in his hand became increasingly swift and fierce. It even forced the Overturned Seas gang cultivators who were assisting him to the side to be unable to help. The leader of the Overturned Seas gang had a rather displeased expression on his face, but in the end he didn't say anything. Instead, he directed the crowd to close in on the 2 of them, further compressing the space that Yin Xianshu had to deal with. Seeing that the 2 of them were in an increasingly precarious situation, Lu Ping, who was several kilometers away, still had no intention of helping them. In reality, Enlightened Master Xianshu was known in Xinling as the #1 person below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Among the late core forging cultivators of the North Sea, his strength was considered extremely tyrannical. Just now, Lu Ping had a sudden inspiration. At the last moment, he had used the white jade lotus on his protective stellar energy to block Enlightened Master Xianshu's cyan lightning. This had already consumed most of Lu Ping's spiritual essence, but this was already extremely valuable. However, Lu Ping had previously used the white jade lotus in conjunction with the water-controlling flag to block Enlightened Master Ao Li's attack in the deep sea demon region. Now he realized that if he used the white jade lotus in conjunction with his protective stellar energy, the power it could display would probably be even greater. Unfortunately, Lu Ping didn't have the time to ponder these things right now. Once Lu Ping was able to combine this natal magic treasure with the magical power that he cultivated, its power would undoubtedly increase by several folds. He also wouldn't have been injured by enlightened Master Shen Shu's all-out attack after expending so much of his spiritual essence. Fortunately, when the green thunder exploded on Lu Ping's protective stellar energy, the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash in the core space also spat out a trace of seven-colored thunder light, which followed along Lu Ping's spiritual essence and covered the protective stellar energy. When the raging green thunder light above the lotus stellar energy encountered the seven-colored thunder light hidden in Lu Ping's spiritual essence, a lot of the green thunder light was inexplicably absorbed by the seven-colored thunder light, reducing the damage to Lu Ping's protective stellar energy. Lu Ping first fought with the Demon Clan cultivators on Huangli Island, and then killed enlightened Master Lu Hai. His spiritual essence was already exhausted. After that, Lu Ping and the others only spent half a day to heal their injuries and restore their spiritual essence. Despite Lu Ping's supply of high-quality medicinal pills, they immediately fled to Huanyu Island and fought with enlightened Master Shen Shu. Even though Lu Ping had smelted the Shenyuan heavy water and his spiritual essence was unimaginably vigorous, it still couldn't support such a method of use. Previously, when Lu Ping arrived, he saw that Yin Xinshu and Ji Zishuan were temporarily fine, so he hid and first recovered the spiritual essence in his body that had been depleted. However, when Lu Ping sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and was about to circulate his spiritual essence, he first spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood. Lu Ping secretly sighed. In the end, he still couldn't completely withstand enlightened Master Shen Shu's attack of the green thunder light. Previously, if it wasn't for the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash secretly dispelling it, and if it wasn't for the fact that Lu Ping was anxious about the life and death of his two friends, he momentarily forgot to check the injuries in his body. Perhaps, in front of enlightened Master Shen Shu, Lu Ping would already be unable to contain the injuries in his body. Chapter 481. With a crack, one of Ji Xuanxuan's puppets was shattered by the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang. Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword was like an all-pervasive breeze, taking advantage of the gap created by the puppet's destruction to blow countless sword lights in. Ji Xuanxuan's expression changed. He shook the cloth bag in his hand and another puppet flew out, blocking the gap created earlier. However, this puppet was clearly only at the late stage of the blood condensation realm and was far inferior to the previous puppet. It only took a few attacks from the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang before it shattered into pieces. Previously, controlling the three core forging stage puppets had already reached Ji Xuanxuan's limit. The consumption of a large amount of spiritual sense caused Ji Xuanxuan's originally pale face to be even more abnormally bright red. After the two puppets were shattered, Ji Xinshen was no longer able to contain the injuries in his body. Blood dripped down from the corner of his mouth, dyeing the clothes in front of him red. However, how could Ji Xinshen still care about the injuries on his body at this moment? After the puppet shattered, the two of them were no longer able to resist the attacks of the six opponents. Ouyang Weijian seized the opportunity to execute the Windflow Sword of the Merry Wind 18 swords and cut through the defense of the two in one go. His Windflow Sword was known for its speed, and after breaking through the defense of the two, Yin Xinshu, who had been moving around in all directions, was instantly entangled by him. Ji Xinshen gritted his teeth and took out a shining bronze mirror. He rushed to the position of the puppet that was destroyed earlier and temporarily blocked the other party's attacks. The attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the members of the Overturned Sea gang did not have the slightest effect on Ji Xuanxuan's golden light mirror. On the contrary, a few rays of sword light and other colorful spells suddenly shot out from the golden light mirror, counterattacking Ouyang Weijian and the members of the Overturned Sea gang. These attacks were the same attacks that Ouyang Weijian and the others had used to attack Ji Xinshen. Ji Xuanxuan's magic treasure was actually able to reflect the attacks. Ji Xinshen shouted in a low voice, "Now!" Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. He didn't care about the few flowing wind sword lights that were bounced back by the golden light mirror. He turned the flowing wind sword in his hand and formed a huge wind cocoon around Ouyang Weijian, wrapping him up completely. At the same time, his warning voice came from the wind cocoon, "Be careful." At that moment, the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction were in the midst of defending against the attacks reflected by the golden mirror of light. However, as they were utilizing various techniques to defend against the reflected attacks, Ji Xuanxuan's shout suddenly rang out in their ears. The hearts of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction grew tense and they raised their heads to look in Ji Xuanxuan's direction. Coincidentally, they saw the golden mirror of light above Ji Xuanxuan's head shining with a dazzling light. Instantly, they felt a stabbing pain coming from their eyes and tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. It was as though the entire world was covered in gold. The members of the Overturning Seas faction were all ruthless people who had survived through life and death battles. By now, Ouyang Weijian's warning had arrived. Naturally, they wouldn't panic just because their eyes were temporarily blinded. However, just as they spread out their divine senses, they discovered that not only were the golden lights temporarily blinded, even their divine senses were distorted. They were unable to sense the situation around them. Only then did the members of the Overturning Seas faction panic slightly. However, at that moment, a ghost-like figure suddenly leapt about within the golden light. Two miserable cries rang out in succession. The remaining 3 members of the Overturning Seas faction were terrified. They used all of their defensive techniques without any regard for anything else, afraid that they would be ambushed by the other party in this situation where they couldn't see and their divine senses were distorted. As expected, another "Piu" sound rang out, followed by a muffled grunt. Instantly, the members of the Overturning Seas faction noticed that their divine senses had returned to normal. When they opened their eyes, they could finally see what was happening before them, despite the stinging pain in their eyes. However, the scene before them shocked the cultivator leading the Overturning Seas faction. In that short period of time, one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction had been beheaded. He was beyond dead. As for the other cultivator, his chest had been stabbed by a sword and he floated on the surface of the ocean. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Even if he could survive, his core space had been broken and he could only become a cripple. In addition, there was another cultivator whose face was pale and filled with lingering fear. The shield before his chest had been pierced, leaving a hole in it. The wind cocoon that was enveloped by the flowing wind sword light instantly scattered, revealing an expressionless Ouyang Weijian. The expression of the cultivator in charge of the Overflowing Seas gang contorted. Ouyang Weijian seemed to know what was going to happen to the two of them when Ji Xianxian brought out the golden light mirror. Despite Ouyang Weijian's warning, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang still roared at Ouyang Weijian in a low voice. "Why didn't you mention that the two of them had such a divine ability?" What was originally in the bag had turned out to be an unforeseen event. 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators had fallen one after another. Even if the Overturning Seas faction had the East Sea Crystal Palace as their backer, this was still a heavy loss for the Overturning Seas faction. Naturally, Ouyang Weijian wouldn't say that he had suffered under the divine power of these 2 cultivators. He pointed his flowing wind sword at them from afar and said coldly, "If I were you, I would first finish off these 2 people in front of me. As for what kind of divine power or magic arts they have, why should I tell you?" At this moment, Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu weren't much better off. Under everyone's attacks, Ji Xianxian had forcefully activated the divine power and magic arts contained within the golden mirror. Even though Yin Xianchu had seized the opportunity to kill one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction and the other one had suffered heavy injuries and was no longer in danger, Ji Xianxian had also suffered a backlash because he had forcefully used the golden mirror to distort the divine will of 6 cultivators of the same level as him. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and his face turned purplish gold. He looked like he was on the verge of collapse. If not for Yin Xianchu supporting him from the side, Ji Xianxian probably wouldn't even have the strength to stand. The leader of the Overturning Seas faction finally looked towards the 2 Jinling cultivators. He said word by word, "Kill them. Grind their bones and scatter their ashes." His cold voice was filled with boundless killing intent, as if it wanted to freeze the seawater beneath his feet. Yin Xianchu shielded Ji Xianxian behind him. 2 pitch-black daggers suddenly appeared in his hands. Ji Xianxian suddenly said weakly behind him, "Don't worry about me later. Just focus on escaping. Their target is you, so they won't do anything to me. Even if the Overturning Seas faction wants to kill me, Ouyang Weijian will stop them. Otherwise, our sect will definitely not let this matter rest." Ji Xianxian understood his good friend too well. He knew that Yin Xianchu definitely wouldn't escape alone in such a hopeless situation. That was why he deliberately said these words, hoping that Yin Xianchu would have the opportunity to escape first. However, Yin Xianchu clearly didn't listen to these words. He gripped the daggers in his hands even tighter, and his eyes were filled with determination. Yin Xianchu suddenly let out a long howl towards the sky. His howl was filled with madness, and a gust of cold white mist suddenly erupted from Yin Xuanchu's body under Ji Xuanxuan's astonished gaze. At this moment, Lu Ping was also startled awake by Yin Xuanchu's long howl. He wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and a green light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes. The scene several kilometers away instantly entered his eyes. Lu Ping never expected that the injuries on his body would be so severe. Furthermore, they would erupt right when he was about to enter the battlefield. The lives of his two good friends were hanging by a thread, yet he couldn't help them at all. Just now, he clearly saw that Ouyang Weijian's cultivation had already reached the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Moreover, he was at the peak of the 5th layer, and could advance to the 6th layer at any time. With Lu Ping's current state, once he made a move against Ouyang Weijian at his peak, he would only be courting death. Just as Lu Ping's thoughts raced, Yin Xuanchu's howl rang out. Lu Ping immediately sensed that something was amiss. When he looked again, the true eyes of the three pure ones could no longer see through the white mist that had already enveloped Yin Xuanchu due to the distance. He could only faintly see the shadow of a white whip swaying back and forth within the white mist. Ouyang Weijian's heart skipped a beat, as if he sensed that someone was spying on him. However, when he spread out his divine sense in all directions, he couldn't find anything. When he looked at the scene within the white mist again, he seemed to have discovered something. He exclaimed to the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, "This person is indeed a monster. Let's join forces and eliminate him first." By then, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had also sensed that something was amiss. With a gloomy face, he nodded his head. The flying sword in Ouyang Weijian's hand shot out first. Next, the three cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang attacked together, attacking Yin Xuanchu, who was enveloped by the white mist. Two black-colored daggers suddenly shot out from within the white mist to block Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword. Ouyang Weijian's face sank. Earlier, Yin Xuanchu clearly did not possess this level of strength. As the attacks from the three cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang were about to make their way into the white mist, a clump of white mist suddenly split out from within the white mist. It transformed into a long whip and lashed out. There seemed to be something hidden within the white mist. Faintly, snow-white scales could be seen on the surface of the whip. The white mist whip struck one of the Overflowing Seas gang cultivators' magic treasure, sending it flying. Then, it extinguished the blue clump of flames that the other Overflowing Seas gang cultivator fired out. However, it was too late to stop the flying sword from the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. The flying sword streaked through the white mist and Yin Xuanchu's howl of pain rang out from within the white mist. Then, a blood-red light sprayed out from within the white mist, dyeing the white mist a faint red. Immediately after, the white mist transformed. A gigantic claw wrapped in white mist suddenly reached out and slapped the flying sword that streaked through the white mist. The flying sword let out a mournful cry and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang suddenly paled. Ouyang Weijian saw the change in Yin Xuanchu and looked at Ji Xianxian who was behind him. A thought came to his mind and he said, "Let's capture that Ji Xianxian first." The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had already understood. He nodded at his two subordinates and the two cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately circled around the white mist that Yin Xuanchu had transformed into. The magic treasures in their hands greeted Yin Xuanchu. Yin Xuanchu, who was within the white mist, let out a furious howl. He turned around and charged towards Ji Xianxian, blocking all the magic treasures that were attacking Ji Xianxian. However, Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang took the opportunity to attack again. Two flying swords streaked through the white mist and Yin Xuanchu let out another howl of pain. Chapter 482. At that moment, Lu Ping could no longer care about the injuries on his body and the depletion of his true essence. He took out a jade bottle from his storage magic artifact and poured out a scarlet pill. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then opened his mouth and swallowed the pill. The moment the pill entered his mouth, a bone-deep pain swept through his entire body. Lu Ping could not help but groan in pain. However, what followed the intense pain was the rapid circulation of true essence within Lu Ping's body. The two high-grade spirit stones in his hands seemed to have been eroded by the wind. In just a moment they were reduced to ashes. At that moment, a loud rumble rang out in the sky. Lu Ping was overjoyed. When he raised his head to look, he saw that in the sky above the battle between Yin Xuanchu and the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang, a gray cloud had unknowingly condensed. However, the cloud looked very strange. It did not look like it was about to rain. Instead, it looked like a cloud of dust. In fact, as the dust gathered thicker and thicker, it wasn't lightning that accompanied the loud rumbles. Instead, it was huge boulders that crashed into the ground. Skies collapse. This was the ultimate skill that made Sage Guxianshan famous in the North Sea. Skies collapse. It's Guxianshan. The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang clearly recognized this great divine ability. He immediately roared in horror. On the other side, the expressions of the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang who were besieging Jianghu changed. If Guxianshan had really arrived, then not a single one of them would be able to escape. When they thought of this, they could not help but slow down. Yin Xianchu, who was within the white mist, seized the opportunity and sent the two magic treasures attacking Jianghu flying. No, this is Sky's collapse, but it's not Guxianshan. As Ouyang Weijian spoke, he shattered 3 boulders with a slash of his sword. However, more and more meteorites streaked across the sky, leaving trails of fiery light as they smashed down on Yin Xuanchu's group. Ouyang Weijian had no choice but to utilize the 9 Mary swords to nimbly dodge the meteorites. At the same time, the flowing wind sword no longer collided head-on with the falling meteorites. Instead, it nimbly deflected the meteorites above Ouyang Weijian's head. The 9 wind swords and the 9 Mary swords were obviously different. The 9 wind swords was meticulous, and its attacks were like a storm, penetrating through every opening. However, the 9 Mary swords was different. This swordsmanship focused more on speed, technique, and being traceless. Lu Ping had used Xianling Sect's 18 Mary swords as a reference several times. With a single glance, he could tell that although Ouyang Weijian had combined the 9 wind swords into one and achieved a great swordsmanship, the 9 Mary swords was clearly not at the level of a great swordsmanship. However, seeing how Ouyang Weijian handled the sky's collapse with ease, it was clear that Ouyang Weijian was only one step away from combining the 9 wind swords into one and achieving a great swordsmanship. This person was truly a rare sword cultivator genius. At this moment, Lu Ping had already donned the stone armor and dove into the water. He took out the water-repelling moon pearl and quickly and stealthily moved in the direction of Yin Xuanchu's group. Although the sky's collapse was powerful, it couldn't do anything to Ouyang Weijian. On the other hand, the other 2 cultivators from the Overflowing Seas sect were flustered by the sudden attack and had already been hit by several meteorites. One of them had his protective artifact destroyed, while the other was in the process of dodging. Yin Xianchu seized the opportunity and severely injured him, causing him to vomit blood. At this moment, the leader of the Overflowing Seas sect also noticed that the power of the great swordsmanship displayed by the ambusher was far from the earth-shattering momentum of the legendary Guxuanshans. Furthermore, when he swept his divine sense across the area, he also noticed the ambusher in the distance. It was only a 5th-layer core forging cultivator. The leader's hands formed a series of hand seals. The silver flying sword that had been smashing the meteorites above his head suddenly exploded with a silvery white sword aura. It spun and charged towards the gray clouds above his head. As the sword danced in the air, the white sword aura also spun towards the sky, shredding all the meteorites in its path into pieces. Surprisingly, this was also a great swordsmanship. At the same time, Ouyang Weijian, who was dodging on the other side, seemed to have a telepathic connection. The flowing wind sword in his hand whistled forward, closely following the leader's silver flying sword. The silver flying sword broke through the obstruction of the meteorites and finally entered the gray clouds. A series of muffled sounds rang out and rays of silver light flashed continuously within the gray clouds. Next, the flowing wind sword flew into the clouds as well, and the gray clouds were continuously blown away. The power of the meteorites falling from the sky grew weaker and weaker. Finally, a thick silvery sword aura pierced through the air from the gray clouds. After a loud explosion, the leader of the Overflowing Seas sect, who was on the surface of the sea, turned crimson. The gray clouds in the sky were finally broken by the combined power of the 2 swordsmanship. Only a dozen or so meteorites fell rapidly towards the surface of the sea. However, they were no longer a threat. However, just as the 2 of them were about to retrieve their flying swords, a cold harumph suddenly rang out from an unknown direction. When the leader turned around to check, he saw one of his subordinates standing there motionlessly, as though he had become a fool. The leader grew anxious and he opened his mouth to shout. However, it was already too late. A large boulder whistled down to smash his subordinate's head into his chest. The cold harumph clearly did not belong to the cultivator who had unleashed Heaven's Bane earlier. The corners of the leader's eyes twitched and he shouted, "Who is it? Who is it?" Ouyang Weijian was also bewildered. At that moment, a cultivator in his 30s suddenly flew across the sky from the direction of Universe Island. He moved past Ouyang Weijin and the overflowing sea sect cultivators to land beside Yin Shenchu, who was shrouded in white mist. He was none other than the one who had launched the sneak attack earlier. Ouyang Weijin asked in a serious tone, "Someone from Jinling? Guoshuanshan's disciple?" Reverend Lu Xinyuan looked at Yin Shenchu beside him, then turned around and smiled. "I am Lu Xinyuan, Reverend Guoshuanshan's 5th disciple." Ouyang Weijin came to a sudden realization. Lu Xinyuan, Lu Ziyuan. So you were one of the North Sea's 18 generals back then. I haven't heard any news about you for the past decade or so I thought you had already faded into the crowd. I didn't expect you to have such accomplishments. Although Reverend Lu Xinyuan was also a third-generation disciple like Ouyang Weijin and Lu Ping, he was a late bloomer and was 100 years older than them. Although his strength might not be on par with these two geniuses from the North Sea, his ability to maintain his composure was far above theirs. Hearing Ouyang Weijin's provocative words, Reverend Lu Xinyuan still said in a calm tone, "I wouldn't dare. Junior brother Ouyang and junior brother Lu are both outstanding talents in their respective sections. I'm just a few years older so I can't compare to the two of you. However, if junior brother Ouyang wants to teach me, then I'll naturally accompany you." When Ouyang Weijin mentioned Lu Ping, Reverend Lu Xinyuan could not help but let out a cold snort. He looked at the surface of the sea and said coldly, "You have another companion. Ask him to come out as well." Lu Xinyuan smiled and did not say anything. Yin Shenchu was wrapped in a layer of white mist, so his expression could not be seen. Although Ji Xianxian tried his best not to faint, he was also at his limit and could lose consciousness at any time. When Ouyang Weijin saw that there was no movement on the surface of the sea, he could not help but sneer. "What a cowardly fellow. Since you're not coming out, I'll kill this half-human half-demon fellow first." With that, he pointed the flowing wind sword at Yin Shenchu, who was shrouded in the white mist. With a loud clang, a grotesquely shaped stone sword swept out and blocked the flowing wind sword. Reverend Lu Xinyuan took a step forward and stood in front of Yin Shenchu. Ouyang Weijin looked at the person in front of him and asked in a deep voice, "Are you Jinling really going to protect a demon?" Reverend Lu Xinyuan stopped smiling and said seriously, "Even if he's a demon, he's still a demon of my Jinling. There will naturally be my Jinling's enforcers to clean up the sect. Aren't you stretching your hand too far? Could it be that your sect's Laozu has given the order to clean up the sect on my Jinling's behalf?" Ouyang Weijin sneered. "Everyone has the right to kill demons. There's no need for my sect's Laozu to give the order." Reverend Lu Xinyuan said sternly, "Since that's the case, please leave. I Jinling can still let bygones be bygones for injuring my junior brother Ji Xianxian. If you continue to pester me, I might have to fight." Ouyang Weijin said disdainfully, "You think you're my opponent? Among the cultivators of the same rank in the North Sea, who else is worthy of being my opponent other than Lu Xianping?" The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang was already burning with rage. This time he had brought 4 subordinates with him. He had originally thought that they could make contributions to the important figures from the palace and receive their appreciation. However, due to a series of unforeseen events, he had lost 3 of his subordinates. The remaining one was also injured, while the person he wanted to kill was still safe and sound. The silver flying sword in the leader's hand stabbed towards Lu Xinyuan as he scolded, "What's with all this nonsense? Jinling, you're so mighty." Just as the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang attacked, Ouyang Weijin also attacked. The two of them simultaneously attacked Reverend Lu Xinyuan. Yin Shenchu, who was beside Reverend Lu Xinyuan, was about to step forward to help, but the remaining cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately went forward to hold Yin Shenchu back. At that moment, Yin Shenchu was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Even though he had restored his half-demon form with the conviction that he would die, he had already been severely injured by Ouyang Weijin and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If not for his half-demon form, which allowed his body to be far stronger than ordinary cultivators, he would have died a long time ago. Under the pincer attack of Ouyang Weijin and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, Reverend Lu Xinyuan quickly fell into a disadvantageous position even though he had adopted a defensive stance from the beginning. Reverend Lu Xinyuan faced the attacks calmly. His stone sword made his body watertight. Even though he was at a disadvantage, Ouyang Weijin and Yin Shenchu could not do anything to Reverend Lu Xinyuan. The more Ouyang Weijin fought, the more apprehensive he became. Lu Xinyuan had never revealed his strength in Jinling. He had only won the title of 18 generals in the North Sea before he advanced to the core forging stage. After that, there had been no news of him for more than 10 years. Yet, his attacks were so steady and steady. He was able to persist under the joint attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If he were to fight Ouyang Weijian alone, he would not be much inferior. Zhenling. Aside from Lu Xianping, Ji Xianxian, and Yin Xianchu, there's actually another cultivator of the same level who can match me. This person cannot be left alive. Chapter 483. Just as Ouyang Weijian made up his mind to kill perfected Lu Xianyuan, another scream was heard, followed by an angry roar from the leader of the Overturned Sea sect. The silver flying sword dodged past perfected Lu Xianyuan and shot towards the sea in front of Yin Xianchu, shouting, "Get out here!" Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overturned Sea sect had been keeping an eye on the enemy that had been hiding since the divine will blast that had killed one of the Overturned Sea sect's cultivators with Sky's Bane. However, to their surprise, even though the two of them had been carefully observing the surroundings with their spiritual force while they were working together to attack perfected Lu Xianyuan, they did not find any trace of anyone. It was as if the person just now had suddenly disappeared. However, even though Ouyang Weijian and Yin Xianchu had done their utmost to guard against a sneak attack from an enemy hiding in the shadows, they did not expect that the enemy would suddenly appear in the water behind Yin Xianchu and the Overflowing Seas gang cultivators. The faint blue sword gleam flashed by. Without the cultivator from the Overflowing Seas clan noticing, it pierced through his heart-core space in one fell swoop. The cultivator died instantly. Just as the leader of the Overturned Seas sect shouted and stabbed the silver flying sword in his hand into the sea, a four-legged serpent with a single horn on its head suddenly emerged from the sea. Its golden horn knocked the silver flying sword away. The silver flying sword circled in the sky and turned back to attack the serpent. However, the serpent's tail swung and knocked the flying sword away again. The silver flying sword wailed as the Overflowing Seas sect's leader's expression finally turned solemn. Ouyang Weijian, who was battling spiritual master Lu Xianyuan, saw the strange golden jiao flaunting its prowess in the sky and his expression immediately changed. He shouted, "Be careful, it's Lu Xianping, this is his sword technique divine art." The leader had already called back his flying sword in preparation to resist the four-legged strange dragon's sudden attack. But upon hearing Ouyang Weijian's reminder, he hastily placed a glazed bell on his head and pointed his finger at the silver flying sword. The white swirling sword chi that had previously broken immortal Lu Xuanyuan's Sky's Bane, great magical power appeared again and collided head-on with the strange dragon. In one fell swoop, the strange dragon's scales were smashed into pieces. However, before the leader could show a look of joy, he saw an awe-inspiring sword light spurt out from the horn of the strange dragon, bypassing the silver flying sword and slashing toward the leader. The leader didn't have time to react and directly used the glazed bell to block the true essence single chi sword. After a loud bang, the brilliance of the glazed bell dimmed. The leader was also sent flying hundreds of feet away from the surface of the sea by the golden scale sword. Only then did the tremendous force transmitted by the sword dissipate. However, without waiting for the leader to respond, the broken strange flood dragon suddenly plunged into the sea. A huge wave rose out of thin air, flashing with a cold light under the sun as it rushed towards the leader dozens of feet away. Torrent of Sword Arts. Blue Wave's Incantation. Originally, the Torrent of Sword Techniques and Azure Wave Scripture were only at the level of a minor technique. But after Lu Ping comprehended dozens of sword techniques using the Thousand Snowpile Sword Scripture, and combined them with the Azure Wave Scripture, the power of the Torrent of Sword Techniques had already reached the level of a major technique. However, Lu Ping was always lacking that last bit of enlightenment, so he couldn't take that last step. Under the control of the leader, the silver flying sword directly pierced a big hole in the surging torrent of sword arts. However, it was useless against a huge wave. The torrent of sword arts instantly filled the hole and continued to surge towards him. The leader's expression changed and he moved his body to dodge. However, before he could do anything, countless tentacles suddenly stretched out from the sea under his feet, suddenly wrapping around his feet. Under the control of the Genshin bead, Lu Ping could exert the power of this incantation to the level of a small magical power. However, for a cultivator like the leader who had already comprehended a great magical power, the power of the incantation of water did not matter in his eyes. The true essence under his feet surged, and in an instant, the tentacles on his feet were shattered. However, naturally, Lu Ping would not place his hopes on the incantation of water. In fact, all Lu Ping needed was the moment the leader shattered the tentacles on his feet, and the torrent of sword arts had already hit the pale golden light wall formed by the glazed bell. The torrent of sword arts came up and down, and the pale golden light wall was like a small boat in a huge wave. Although it avoided the danger of being destroyed, it was also hit full of holes. While most cultivators in the core forging stage were still comprehending the big and small magical powers, and using them as a means to win or lose, Lu Ping had already begun to ponder the several types of magical powers he had comprehended as a set of combination attacks. In a battle, he would not give his opponent any time to breathe. More and more cracks appeared on the pale golden light wall, but Lu Ping's method did not stop there. After 3 consecutive sword waves, a water whip suddenly lashed out from the sea, and before the leader could recover, it struck the pale golden light wall. The already cracked light wall quickly collapsed, and the glazed bell that was suspended in midair also let out a mournful cry, and fell from the leader's head. A faint crack appeared on the body of the bell. A heaven-shaking sword sound rang out, and the golden scale sword suddenly rose from the sea. Rays of psychic sword light separated from the sword body, and began to orderly arrange around the golden scale sword. This was a great swordsmanship magical power. The leader immediately felt a chill in his heart. Even though he had also grasped a great swordsmanship magical power, his proficiency level was far from that of Lu Ping's. Not to mention creating a sword formation with a swing of his sword, even that flying silver sword light consumed a great deal of the leader's mental strength. Seeing that the sword formation had already surrounded the leader, and that if he did not break out, he would fall into the sword formation, the leader made a prompt decision, and with the silver flying sword in his hand as the lead, he rushed in the direction of Earth Island. A series of explosions rang out, and after the silver-white flying sword light was destroyed, the leader finally broke out of the heavy encirclement before the sword formation had completely closed in. The leader spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a hoarse howl. When Ouyang Weijian, who was fighting with Reverend Lu Shenyuan, heard the howl, he took a deep look at the Jinling cultivator in front of him, who was actually able to withstand his attacks for such a long time. He then turned around and retreated towards Earth Island. Reverend Lu Shenyuan let out a long breath and did not chase after him. When Reverend Lu Shenyuan turned around to look at Yin Xianchu, he saw that Yin Xianchu had unknowingly retracted the white mist and returned to his human form. At this moment he was stuffing a healing pill into the mouth of the already unconscious Ji Xianxian. On the other side, a stream of seawater flowed in reverse, and gradually formed a water person that looked exactly like Lu Ping. Reverend Lu Shenyuan was stunned and said with some hesitation, "Sunflower water true body? Junior brother was actually able to reach such a realm?" Lu Ping shook his head helplessly and said, "Immortal elder, you must be joking. How could disciple be able to cultivate a divine power like the sunflower water true body? It's just a trick to escape." However, the comprehension of the sunflower water true body can indeed be used as a reference. Reverend Lu Shenyuan laughed bitterly and said, "You've already started to comprehend the sunflower water true body. How can we, the third-generation disciples who have cultivated for hundreds of years, endure this?" Lu Ping did not comment and walked straight to Ji Xianxian. With a sweep of his divine perception, he instantly understood most of the injuries in Ji Xuanxuan's body. Excessive consumption of divine perception? Lu Ping frowned and asked, "Not only is there consumption but there's also a backlash. Did he use the divine perception secret technique divine power?" Yin Xuanchu's entire body was already drenched in blood, and his injuries were not much weaker than Ji Xuanxuan's. Right now he was just forcefully holding on. When Lu Ping saw the guilt on Yin Xuanchu's face, he comforted him, "There's no danger to his life, and it won't negatively affect his future cultivation. He just needs to spend 3 to 5 years to recuperate. Perhaps, he might even be able to benefit from this disaster." Lu Ping's words clearly made Yin Xuanchu's expression relax, and then his body began to sway due to the large amount of blood loss. Seeing him like this, Lu Ping hurriedly stuffed a jade-like medicinal pill into his hand and said, "This is the jade body pill, and it's the best medicinal pill I have on me. Swallow and refine it as soon as possible. I'm afraid there'll be a tough battle in a while." Yin Xianchu nodded and directly swallowed the jade body pill. He sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and began to refine the medicinal pill to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Reverend Lu Shenyuan walked over and said, "I'm afraid we can't go to Universe Island anymore. I first went to Shenqi Island from Huangli Island, and then used the teleportation formation to Decoin Island, and then to Universe Island. Originally, I wanted to receive you guys on the island, but the teleportation formation along the way has been heavily guarded. Even Huangli Island has many unfamiliar core forging cultivators. Right now, Ouyang Weijian and that cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang are also fleeing in the direction of Universe Island. I'm afraid that cultivators will soon find out about Junior Marshal Brother Yin's whereabouts and rush over. When that time comes, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape even if we grow wings. At this moment Yin Xianchu suddenly opened his eyes and said, I can't let my brothers pay such a huge price for me anymore. I know that Uncle Master Xianchu should be nearby. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, take me to Uncle Master Xianchu. Yin Xianchu rarely spoke. This time he said so much because he had already made up his mind not to escape anymore. Reverend Lu Shenyuan frowned and said, Foolish. Everyone has paid such a huge price to escort you to this step with great difficulty. If you give up so easily, would the price that everyone paid for you be worth it? If you really can't escape, you can just dig a hole at the bottom of the sea and hide there for dozens of years. At most, your cultivation will be greatly slowed down. With your 500 to 600 years of lifespan, what's there to be afraid of? Yin Xuanchu's body trembled. It was obvious that he was extremely agitated. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Lu Ping suddenly chuckle and say, I have a good idea. Wait a moment. Lu Xinyuan did not know what Lu Ping was going to do, but he saw Lu Ping suddenly pull out a corpse from the sea. Or rather, this person still had his last breath. This person was the Overflowing Oceans gang cultivator whose heart core space was shattered by Yin Xianchu with the cooperation of Ji Xianxian. This person's heart was different from ordinary people. It grew on the right side. When Yin Xianchu pierced through this person's left chest, he realized that something was wrong. However, due to the urgency of the situation, Yin Xianchu did not have the time to pierce the right side of the heart. He could only use his quintessential essence to completely collapse the heart core space and cripple his cultivation. After that, this person kept drifting on the sea but did not drown. It could be considered a miracle. Lu Xinyuan saw that Lu Ping stuffed a precious life-fishing pill into this person's mouth. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that this person's eyelids were trembling. With the support of the life-fishing pill, it was obvious that he was about to wake up. Lu Ping saw that this person would not die for a while. Without waiting for him to wake up, his palm that was covered in blue quintessential essence had already slapped the person's head. Reverend Lu Xuanyuan's eyes narrowed. He could not help but ask, soul-searching art? Chapter 484. The inner sea of the North Sea was different from the outer sea and the deep sea demon territory. The deepest part of the sea was only a few hundred feet deep. It was a far cry from the outer sea, which was thousands of feet deep. Furthermore, the deep sea demon territory was rumored to have seas that were thousands or even tens of thousands of feet deep. Even the demons that lived in the sea could only explore the depths of those seas. Yin Xianchu looked at the pearl hovering above Lu Ping's head and asked uncertainly, the Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl? With the help of the Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl, the speed at which Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu moved through the sea was comparable to flying through the sky. Furthermore, because the deep sea blocked divine will, unless there was a late core forging cultivator or a Dharma manifestation cultivator like Laozu, no one would be able to discover the two hidden in the deep sea. As Lu Ping flew, he smiled and said, I just happened to discover it in a cave. However, you should take this opportunity to suppress your injuries and recover the vital energy in your body. Although we have to catch them off guard this time, we can't be sure that the Overflowing Sea Sect's cultivator's memory will not be wrong. It's better to be safe than sorry. Just when Lu Ping discovered that one of the Overflowing Sea Sect's cultivators was still alive, Lu Ping had an idea. The Overflowing Sea Sect was a chess piece that the Crystal Palace had placed in the North Sea. Although this was not a secret among the high-level cultivators of the North Sea, Yin Xianchu and the others did not know about it. However, Lu Ping had seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears. Lu Ping was certain that the Overflowing Sea Sect controlled the teleportation array that led to the East Sea. Based on the last time Lu Ping used the Overflowing Sea Sect's teleportation array, the Overflowing Sea Sect did not guard the teleportation array that led to the East Sea very strictly. However, it was well hidden. With this core forging cultivator's cultivation, it was definitely possible that he knew the location of the teleportation array in the Overflowing Sea Sect. As expected, Lu Ping used the Overflowing Sea Sect's teleportation array to find the location of the three secret teleportation arrays. However, their destination was the fallen mystic realm in the East Sea. Lu Ping made a prompt decision. He asked enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan to bring the heavily injured Ji Shenshen back to Tianling Mountain, while Lu Ping and Yin Shenchu headed to the overflowing ocean sect's secret teleportation array closest to this place. In order to prevent others from discovering them, Lu Ping cast out the water-repelling moon pearl and flew towards this secret location from the bottom of the sea. Yin Shenchu regulated his breathing for a moment. When he felt that his injuries were fine, he looked at Lu Ping with a hesitant expression. Although Lu Ping had been fleeing at the bottom of the sea, he also noticed Yin Xuanchu's dilemma. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Junior Marshal Brother Yin, do you have something to ask?" Yin Shenchu nodded when he saw that Lu Ping had spoken first. "Senior brother, did you already know of my identity and knew that my identity would be exposed?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and nodded. "I found out about your identity by accident. After senior uncle Shenin died, I sensed that you wouldn't let you off since he was so determined to kill you. The easiest way was to expose your identity as a descendant of a human and a demon and use the tens of thousands of years of enmity between the human and demon races to kill you. Therefore, I asked senior sister Hu to invite all of you to Huangli Island before I left for the demon race's territorial waters. If your identity was exposed, we could join forces and escort you away." Lu Ping thought for a moment and simply voiced out his doubts. "I just didn't expect that your identity would cause such a huge reaction from the sects of the Northern Sea. Not only was my sect pressured to kill you, it seemed that the entire Northern Sea's cultivation world was focused on you. You're only a mid-stage core forging cultivator. If you really are a descendant of a human and a demon and have some incredible secret on you, any random Laozu could have just taken you in. Why did they send so many cultivators to be witnesses and even provoke the joint attack of Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea gang? This is really strange and doesn't make any sense." Yin Shenchu was silent for a while before saying, "Senior brother Lu, do you know about the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Dragon Ice Pearl? The inheritance of the Dragon Ice clan. It's the foundation that the Dragon Ice clan relies on to become a top demon race. Yin Shenchu nodded. "That's right. I believe senior brother has some understanding of the Dragon Ice clan. But does senior brother Lu know where the Dragon Ice Pearl comes from?" Lu Ping shook his head. "I don't know about that." Yin Shenchu said, "The inheritance of the Ice Dragon race for tens of thousands of years is sealed within the Ice Dragon Pearl, but only the descendants of the Ice Dragon race are able to open the seal of each level of the Ice Dragon Pearl according to the level of their cultivation. At the same time, the amount of inheritance that can be opened within the same level of cultivation is also determined according to the level of strength." Lu Ping already knew about this from Samling. Yin Shenchu continued to speak with fervor and assurance. However, the creation of the Dragon Ice Pearl is not easy. Not only does it require a large amount of precious spiritual materials, but more importantly, only the clansmen of the Dragon Ice clan who have reached the Dharma stage can start refining the inheritance of the Dragon Ice Pearl. Only the Dragon Ice clan cultivators who have reached the Dharma stage can open all the seals in the Dragon Ice Pearl and know all the secrets of the Dragon Ice clan's inheritance for tens of thousands of years. Lu Ping seemed to vaguely grasp what Yin Shenchu wanted to say, but it was still a little unclear. He asked, "Junior brother Yin, do you mean that the sects of the North Sea have come for the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Yin Shenchu nodded. "With my level of cultivation, if I have the Dragon Ice Pearl, I can only open the inheritance related to the middle and late stages of core forging. These inheritances are of no use to Dharma Laozu, but for core forging cultivators, if they obtain these inheritances, it will undoubtedly be an extremely rich foundation. The assistance to a cultivator's future achievements is absolutely limitless." Lu Ping heard the meaning in Yin Xuanchu's words and said, "Junior brother doesn't have the Dragon Ice Pearl, but the cultivators of the North Sea don't believe it. They would rather kill the wrong person than let him go." Yin Shenchu nodded and said confidently, "That should be the case. Moreover, the Dragon Ice Pearl itself is an extremely high-grade magic treasure. Even in the hands of cultivators who aren't from the Dragon Ice clan, it can still display quite a bit of power. However, I once heard my father say that the Dragon Ice clan has long since declined. Back then, the last of the Dragon Ice clan, Laozu, only had 3 Dragon Ice Pearls left, and they were all left for my mother. My mother inherited one for herself, and Aou also has one. The other one was given to Aou after my mother married my father. I've inherited my father's mantle since I was young, and I haven't learned any of the Dragon Ice clan's divine arts. My transformation into a half-demon was merely an instinctive reaction. Lu Ping nodded. Although he still had many questions in his heart, he didn't say anything. At this moment, the two of them had already arrived at a deserted island. It wasn't very big and the island was littered with craggy rocks. There didn't seem to be any signs of human activity, but no one would have thought that the overflowing sea gang had set up a secret camp here. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu found a hidden cave under a cliff on the deserted island. The two of them glanced at each other, and Lu Ping entered first based on the memories he'd obtained from the soul search. Yin Xianchu followed closely behind, keeping his guard up. The cave under the sea was slanted upwards. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu cautiously walked upwards, scanning the area with their divine senses at the same time. 4 late blood condensation realm cultivators from the overflowing sea gang stood guard at the part of the cave that was exposed above the water. At this moment, the water at the cave's entrance suddenly splashed upwards. The cultivator guarding the cave's entrance froze, but he didn't notice anything amiss. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he felt a cold sensation at the base of his neck. He opened his mouth to cry out, but only a hoo-hoo sound came out. A stream of blood immediately spurted out from the base of his neck. Just as the cultivator was about to collapse, the other 3 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang also noticed something amiss. One of them, who seemed to be the leader of the 4, raised an object in his hand as if to warn them. But a blue light flashed in front of his eyes, and half of his arm was severed. The intense pain caused the cultivator to cry out in pain. However, before he could cry out, a muffled groan suddenly exploded in the ears of the remaining 3 cultivators. The cultivator whose arm was severed felt dizzy, and he actually forgot about the pain in his arm. However, when the blue light that severed his arm flashed again, this cultivator's consciousness instantly fell into a bottomless abyss. The other 2 cultivators were still in a daze from Lu Ping's previous divine sense attack. 2 more splashes of water appeared at the cave's entrance. 2 black daggers circled the necks of the 2 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang. The 2 cultivators immediately fell backwards, their bodies leaning against the stone wall as they slowly slid downwards. Their heads rolled on the ground. With a splash, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu emerged from the cave. Looking at the 4 fallen cultivators, Lu Ping stretched out his hand and collected their storage pouches. Then he carefully probed the cave with his divine sense. He discovered that there were only 8 late blood condensation cultivators guarding this secret teleportation array. The 4 cultivators who were guarding the cave entrance had already fallen at the hands of Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu. The remaining 4 were guarding a teleportation array within the cave. Seeing that it was indeed the information Lu Ping had obtained from the soul search, Lu Ping glanced at Yin Xianchu and finally relaxed. However, to prevent the 4 from destroying the teleportation array, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu carefully snuck up to the 4 cultivators and killed them one by one. Lu Ping scanned the cave with his divine sense and discovered that there was no one alive. He then walked to the side of the teleportation array and inspected it. Not bad. This teleportation array indeed leads to the East Sea. According to the memories of that cultivator from the overflowing sea gang, the other side of the teleportation array should be in the East Sea's perished mystic realm. However, I don't know how many guards they have stationed there. After all, that cultivator from the overflowing sea gang hasn't returned to the East Sea for several years. Yin Xianchu said, "We've already come this far. There's no turning back." Lu Ping nodded and handed him a jade token. He smiled and said, "I've told you everything I know about the situation in the perished mystic realm. I'll have to trouble you to look after the faction I'm managing on Soundwave's Island. Take this jade token. When the time comes, the people on Soundwave's Island will know what to do." Yin Xianchu accepted the jade token and saw Lu Ping taking out another item. Yin Xianchu's eyes narrowed. A throbbing sensation from his bloodline caused his breathing to quicken. Chapter 485. When Yin Xianchu saw the fist-sized crystal pearl in Lu Ping's hand, he became extremely excited. Yin Xianchu looked at Lu Ping, then focused all his attention on the pearl in Lu Ping's hand. He asked with a trembling voice, Could this be?" Lu Ping handed the pearl to Yin Xianchu and said, "That's right, this is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Yin Xianchu accepted the pearl from Lu Ping with both hands. A white mist suddenly rose from his hands, and Yin Xianchu's face immediately flushed with excitement. He murmured, that's right. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Lu Ping watched as the white mist from Yin Xuanchu's hands began to seep into the Dragon Ice Pearl. It was obvious that Yin Xianchu was refining this inheritance of the Dragon Ice clan. Lu Ping couldn't help but pat Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and said, "Now is not the time to activate the inheritance." Yin Xianchu suppressed the excitement in his heart with great difficulty. The blood of both the human and demon races flowed through his veins. In the past he had only displayed the innate talent of his human race, yet he had already achieved so much. If he could obtain the inheritance of the Ice Ho race once more, his strength would undoubtedly increase greatly. However, he also knew that there was no time to refine the inheritance in his hands now. Hearing this, he smiled awkwardly at Lu Ping and began to inspect the transportation matrix with Lu Ping, preparing to activate it. Lu Ping tossed a few storage magic tools to Yin Xianchu and said, "These 4 storage magic tools were obtained from the 4 core forging cultivators of the Overturned Seas gang that I killed outside of Universe Island. I've taken all of the spiritual herbs and high-grade spirit stones inside. Master Immortal Lu doesn't want any of the remaining items, so you can keep them all. Although the Eastern Sea is rich and populous, the expenditure of various cultivation resources is also high. There are no sects in the Eastern Sea to back you up. I'll be thankful that my Hearing Surf manor can be self-sufficient and have a slight surplus. I'm afraid that it won't be of much help to you. When the time comes, it'll all be up to you." Yin Xianchu did not act pretentiously and put away the 4 storage Dharma artifacts. Lu Ping placed a few high-grade spirit stones and a dozen mid-grade spirit stones into the transmission array. Before Lu Ping could activate the transmission array under Yin Xuanchu's feet lit up. Lu Ping's face sank and he quickly kept the corpses of the 4 overturned ocean sect cultivators around the teleportation array. Yin Xianchu retreated behind a large boulder behind the teleportation array and was instantly engulfed by the boulder's shadow. After keeping the corpse, Lu Ping turned around and ran out of the cave where the teleportation portal was located. White light shone brightly from the teleportation array. When the light dissipated, a middle-aged cultivator in his 40s with a sinister face appeared on the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator looked around the teleportation array and said, "Huh? Why isn't there anyone guarding it? The overturned ocean sect has been in the North Sea for too long and has slacked off to this extent. No wonder Martial Uncle Yuan Guang has some complaints about the overturned ocean sect in the Chiu family." Just as the middle-aged cultivator finished speaking, he suddenly saw the spirit stones that Lu Ping had just embedded into the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator's face changed and he raised his hand to summon his defensive Dharma treasure. However, a cold killing intent had already attacked him from behind. The middle-aged cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He dashed forward and at the same time, 5 layers of protective chi expanded from the surface of his body. With a tearing sound, the middle-aged cultivator's protective chi was instantly torn apart. At that moment, a 9-storied crystal pagoda with 5 layers lit up had already risen above the cultivator's head. A curtain of light hung down and blocked a black dagger in front of the cultivator. When the cultivator saw that there was only one dagger, his expression immediately changed and he quickly flipped to the side. However, it was already too late. The cultivator felt a chill on his left shoulder and a half-foot-long wound appeared on his shoulder. Before the blood could seep out, it was frozen into scarlet ice by a layer of cold chi. The cultivator turned around and looked at Yin Xianchu sternly. "Someone from the Liao family? I didn't expect you to be so well informed. I, Peng Xiuan, had just found out about the Liao family's background in the Middle Lands, and now you want to ambush and kill me. Unfortunately, what use is there in killing me? I've already reported the Liao family's background to the palace. I've only come to inform Martial Uncle Yuan Guang." Yin Xianchu held the 2 daggers in his hands and listened expressionlessly to the cultivator's self-speculations. The cultivator swept his divine sense and his face immediately lit up. He sneered. "You want to keep me here with an injured body?" It seems that the cultivators of the Overflowing Oceans gang have finally become smart for once. They left behind core forging cultivators to guard this cave. If they die, then so be it. In the end, they still gave me a chance to live. Yin Xianchu waved the 2 daggers. One of the daggers suddenly shot out dozens of black shadows, covering the various places where the cultivator could dodge. The other dagger flashed and disappeared without a trace among the dozens of black shadows. Your Liao family has guts to dare to kill a cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Even the major sects and clans of the Middle Lands wouldn't dare to do this. Your Liao family of the North Sea can wait to be exterminated. Even your family in the Middle Lands won't be able to save you. The cultivator retreated to block Yin Xuanchu's surprise attack as he spoke fiercely. Noisy. Yin Xuanchu finally said his first sentence. At the same time, the daggers hidden among the countless black shadows suddenly stabbed out from an unexpected direction. The cultivator's crystal-glazed pagoda slashed empty air. Even though 4 floors of the crystal-glazed pagoda had been lit up, the 2 daggers still managed to pierce through the protective barrier of light. However, after piercing through the barrier of light, the 2 daggers were like an arrow at the end of its flight and had no choice but to retreat. However, this still shocked the cultivator. Taking advantage of the fact that Yin Xuanchu's daggers were ineffective, he turned around and fled out of the cave. As he fled, he turned his head to look at Yin Xuanchu, only to find that Yin Xuanchu didn't give chase. Instead, Yin Xuanchu revealed a mocking smile. Not good. The cultivator quickly realized that he had overlooked something. However, it was already too late. A golden sword beam suddenly shot out to collide with the fleeing cultivator. The crystal-glazed pagoda's protective barrier of light had just been pierced by Yin Xuanchu. Thus, it did not have much defensive magic power left. Not to mention, the 5 layers of protective astral energy were no match for Lu Ping's divine swordsmanship. Before the cultivator could even cry out, Lu Ping had cleaved him into 2. Lu Ping sighed and said, "This person's magic treasures are the crystal gem and the crystal-glazed pagoda. The Crystal Palace's standard magic treasure has only been upgraded. However, the crystal-glazed pagoda is related to a great divine ability of the Crystal Palace. Only the elite disciples of the Crystal Palace can obtain its inheritance. However, this person's strength is so mediocre. How did he obtain the crystal-glazed pagoda?" Yin Xuanchu shook his head and said, "I've only seen the crystal-glazed pagoda once when a cultivator from the Eastern Sea visited our sect. Moreover, that cultivator from the Crystal Palace was beaten to a pulp by you. However, this person seems to think that we are from the Liao family of the Northern Sea. From his tone, it seems that he has discovered some secret of the Liao family." Lu Ping chuckled and said, "This person is here to see Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace. It seems that the Liao family is not simple. It's a pity that I couldn't hold back just now. Otherwise, I would have captured him alive and searched his soul." Lu Ping thought to himself, not only does the Liao family have rare pills like the longevity pill and the bone-forging pill, they even have the heart-dissolving pill and the heart-forging pill that can cause a frenzy in the Northern Sea's cultivation world. They also seem to have a deep understanding of the Middle Earth. This is clearly not something an ordinary Northern Sea family can have. Lu Ping casually put away the cultivator's storage magic treasure and burned the corpse with a fire. Then he looked up at Yin Xuanchu and said, "So, do you still want to use this teleportation array to go to the Eastern Sea?" Yin Xuanchu nodded and didn't say anything. Lu Ping smiled and said, "That's good. I've told you about the Eastern Sea. Help me look after my listening wave prefecture. Once we reach the Eastern Sea, it's up to you." The white light of the teleportation array flickered again. As Yin Xuanchu was engulfed by the white light, his figure also disappeared from the teleportation array. Lu Ping wasn't in a hurry to leave. Every now and then he would use a dozen or so mid-grade spirit stones to check the teleportation array. After doing this a few times, Lu Ping's face turned a little ugly. After Lu Ping placed the spirit stones on the teleportation array again, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the teleportation array. Lu Ping's face lit up and he checked the teleportation array again. Sure enough, he found that he had lost contact with the other teleportation array at his destination. Clearly, after Yin Xuanchu teleported over, he had taken control of the situation there and destroyed the teleportation array as soon as possible. Relieved, Lu Ping opened his palm and several sword qis shot out from his palm. In one fell swoop, the teleportation array on the ground was shattered into hundreds of pieces. Then he walked out of the cave. Just as Lu Ping walked to the entrance of the seawater cave, Lu Ping was shocked. He pulled Debeo out of the golden house and pressed his head down into the ground without saying anything. A soft sound of water came from the entrance of the seawater cave. 2 mysterious core forging cultivators appeared at the entrance of the cave almost soundlessly. Seeing that there weren't any cultivators from the overflowing seas gang guarding the surroundings, the 2 of them immediately became vigilant. They used their divine senses to scan the cave. Although their expressions changed, they didn't find anything. The 2 of them hesitated for a moment. Then one of them reached out and pointed at the water surface of the cave. Then the water surface rippled and 2 more people walked in. One of them looked burly and mighty. He seemed to be the leader of the 4. He asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" The cultivator who pointed at the water surface replied in a low voice, "Something doesn't seem right." It seems like someone has already been here. The cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang are nowhere to be seen, and the teleportation array has been destroyed. Could it be that the Overflowing Seas gang has discovered our movements and abandoned this teleportation array? The leading cultivator shook his head and said, "It's not impossible. It's just that this time, not only did Peng Shiwan find some information about the Liao family in the Central Plains, he also came to the North Sea with an item that our Liao family must obtain. No matter what, we must find him alive or dead. Let's go, we'll go to the next teleportation array of the Overflowing Seas gang." After the four of them left, the narrow ground of the cave suddenly exploded into pieces of stone. Lu Ping grabbed Debao, who had exhausted all of his transcendence energy, and jumped out from under the stone floor. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said in a low voice, "Liao Hu, it's actually him." Chapter 486. Debao could use the earth escape technique, but it would be difficult for him to use the stone escape technique. Fortunately, Debao was at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm and was about to advance to the peak of the blood condensation realm. Even though he was lazy, he still managed to help Lu Ping survive this ordeal. The Yuan Burst pill was the scarlet pill that Lu Ping consumed after he was injured by enlightened Master Xianshu. It was a pill that could stimulate a cultivator's potential. It could quickly restore the cultivator's true yuan. However, the price was that the poison contained in the pill would spread throughout the cultivator's body, causing the cultivator's body to be completely isolated from the outside world's spiritual qi for a year. This also meant that for the next year, the cultivator could only cultivate by consuming pills. As for spiritual qi, spirit veins, spirit stones and other things related to cultivation, they could not be used. After a year, even if the pill lost its effect of sealing off the spiritual qi, the remaining poison would still affect the cultivator's cultivation. The cultivator would only be able to cultivate normally after 3 to 5 years, when the poison in the body was completely eliminated. This was, in fact, a poison pellet that Lu Ping had concocted using the dark prison poison fire in case of emergency. Fortunately, the first type of protective energy that Lu Ping had refined was the myriad poison meteorite shield, which was also known as the mother of all poisons. This type of protective energy was extremely effective against any kind of poison. Lu Ping was confident that he could break through the sealing effect of this pill within half a year and fully recover within a year. However, this was only under ideal circumstances. In reality, Lu Ping was already severely injured before he consumed the Yuan Burst pill. After that, he fought a series of battles and flew continuously for a long distance, which further worsened his injuries. In the end, he was trapped by Debao's half-baked escape technique and had to conceal his aura to avoid being discovered by the Liao family. In the end, Lu Ping could no longer suppress the injuries in his body. "I'm afraid I won't be able to recover for at least 2 to 3 years. Lu Ping threw Debao into the House of Gold. Then he found a healing pill that was refined using the spirit water pill refining technique from his storage ring. He threw it into his mouth and refined it, temporarily suppressing the injuries in his body. Although the effects of the healing medicinal pellets concocted using the spirit water alchemy technique were much better than ordinary healing medicinal pellets, in addition to the extremely high difficulty of concocting them, the spirit water alchemy technique could only concoct one medicinal pellet at a time. In other words, even if one could successfully concoct a cauldron of spirit herbs using the spirit water alchemy technique, there would only be one medicinal pellet. Therefore, even someone as wealthy as Lu Ping had only concocted 6 or 7 of these medicinal pellets to protect himself. He didn't expect that after a series of battles, other than the ones he used and the ones used by Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping would only have one left. After cautiously exiting the water cave, Lu Ping's divine sense had been vigilantly paying attention to the movements in the surroundings. He was afraid that the Liao clan would set up an ambush nearby. With Lu Ping's current state, he no longer had the ability to kill cultivators of the same level as him like weeds. Even Lu Ping himself could become a fish on the chopping block at any time. However, what made Lu Ping rejoice was that his cautiousness was ultimately useless. The cultivators of the Liao clan seemed to really care about the cultivator from the eastern sea called Peng Shiwan and didn't leave an ambush nearby. Lu Ping's heart stirred. He remembered that when Yin Xianchu took the lead to attack the cultivator from the Crystal Palace who came through the teleportation array, that person said his name was Peng Shiwan. He also thought that Lu Ping and the others were from the Liao clan. In other words, the thing that the Liao clan wanted was now in Lu Ping's possession? Lu Ping placed the waterproof moon pearl on top of his head and dived into the sea, heading in the direction of Earth Island. There was something strange about this matter. Lu Ping needed to return to Jinling as soon as possible. Although many of his companions, including himself, would be severely punished by the sect because of Yin Xuanchu's matter, Lu Ping didn't care. This was because Spiritual Master Lu Xinyuan had received a hint from Spiritual Master Guo Xianshan, who had informed the sect in advance, and Spiritual Master Xianshu had intentionally or unintentionally held back. Lu Ping knew that no matter what the sect's considerations were, they were not willing to put Yin Xianshu to death. Thus, those who participated in the escort of Yin Xianshu this time were all personal disciples of the third-generation disciples with the support of their teachers. In addition, the law did not punish too many people. Lu Ping believed that the sect's punishment would be nothing more than a light punishment. At the very least, they would make everyone suffer a great loss in name. Lu Ping still felt a little regretful in his heart. This was because after Lu Ping had searched the soul of the middle-stage core forging realm cultivator from the Overflowing Sea sect, he had discovered a few secret treasure vaults of the Overflowing Sea sect in the Northern Sea. These vaults contained some of the cultivation resources that the Overflowing Sea sect had obtained in the Northern Sea for several hundred years. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to take advantage of the situation and make a profit. However, it was a pity that the injuries on Lu Ping's body had relapsed. De Bao, who had always been the vanguard of Lu Ping's robbing and searching for other people's treasures, had been severely injured due to the exhaustion of his stone escape technique. Helpless, Lu Ping could only return to Earth Island first. Fortunately, there were no more twists and turns along the way. However, when Lu Ping returned to Earth Island's Snowmist Palace, what he saw was not the scene of Tian Shui Laozu pointing at his nose and scolding him as he imagined. Instead, there was an old man sitting at the head of the palace. However, the aura he emitted was extremely vigorous and heavy. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment. He saw the expressionless Taoist Shen Shu, the gloomy Yuan Zhan, the bitter smile on Taoist Lu Xuanyuan's face, and Chen Lian, Zhongjian, Mayu and the others, who had their heads lowered and did not dare to speak. Even the heavily injured Ji Shenshen was barely able to stand. He appeared to be swaying as if he could collapse at any time. Seeing that Lu Ping walked into Snowmist Palace unscathed, a strange look appeared in Taoist Shen Shu's eyes. Yuan Zhan's expression changed, but he immediately calmed down. On the other side, Ji Shenshen and the others all revealed looks of joy. The previously tense atmosphere immediately relaxed. Even Taoist Lu Shenyuan, who appeared to be unfazed, heaved a sigh of relief. However, Lu Ping's mind was racing. Lu Ping had never seen the old man sitting at the head of the palace before. Judging from the situation where Taoist Shen Shu could only stand in front of him, this old man was obviously a Dharma adept of his sect, Laozu. Up until now, the only Dharma adept that Lu Ping had not seen before was Tiankong Laozu, who had always been recuperating and only revealed his mid-Dharma adept cultivation at the last moment, causing Xianling's sect to return in defeat. At this thought, Lu Ping hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple Lu Xianping pays his respects to Uncle Master Tiankong." The old man was Jinling's fourth mid-Dharma adept, Tiankong Laozu. Laozu looked at Lu Ping and said, "You've sent him away?" Lu Ping was stunned, but he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. He did not want to deny it, but he did not want to lie in front of the elders of the sect either, so he could only wait in silence. Luckily, Patriarch Heavenly Peace didn't linger on this matter and just said directly, "You guys sure have guts to publicly defy the sect's orders and even fight with the sect's law enforcement cultivators. You guys are truly lawless. Do you still have any respect for the sect?" Lu Ping and the others stood in silence. Lu Ping carefully glanced at Tiankong Laozu, but he could not see Tiankong Laozu's expression clearly. He could only vaguely feel that Tiankong Laozu was staring at him. Shi Lingling, Zhongjian, Mayu, the three of you will make a trip to Frost Island. Ask the Mystic Flame to seal your cultivation. I'll give you 5 years. You have to obediently go to the mines and dig for spirit stones like normal blood condensation and blood refining disciples. This meant that the sect's punishment was coming. Shi Lingling and Mayu's expressions turned bitter when they heard this, but Zhongjian's expression was even more bitter. The two female practitioners' expressions were bitter because digging for spirit stones was already an extremely difficult task for them since their inner yuan had been sealed. Moreover, Frost Island was extremely cold. Without inner yuan to ward off the cold, how could the two delicate girls endure it? As for Zhongjian, he was the only male cultivator among the three. With these two girls around, he definitely wouldn't just be doing his part of the hard work. Chen Lian, Du Feng, Xian Tao, the three of you were previously punished by martial nephew Xianshu to be woodcutters at Heaven Spirit Mountain. 3 years is too short, so it'll be changed to 5 years. Every day, 3 loads of firewood will be changed to 5 loads. Seal your inner yuan and reflect on your actions. After Tiankang Laozu finished talking about the 6 of them, he turned to look at Ji Xianxian, who was on the verge of collapsing, and said, "There's also Zhang Xuanqing." He actually removed the Heaven Spirit Mountain's teleportation formation's positioning compass. How thoughtful of him. Since he's working at True Spirit's side courtyard, let him be a sweeping servant in the side courtyard. 5 years later, if the side courtyard is cleaned up by him, then he'll go and be the immortal elder of the side courtyard. If he can't clean it up, then we'll talk about it when it's time to clean it up. Although these people's punishments weren't light, they weren't too heavy either. It was just that the 7 of them had their cultivation sealed, so it would be much more difficult for them to do things. Furthermore, these 5 years would more or less affect their cultivation. At this moment, everyone in the palace turned their gazes towards Ji Xianxian, Lu Ping and Lu Xianyuan. Although enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan was suspected of leaking information, he didn't participate in escorting Yin Xianchu. Originally he was supposed to go to Huanyu Island to receive the others, but he ended up fighting with Ouyang Weijian on the sea outside the island. Tiankang Laozu pondered for a moment and said, "Lu Xianyuan and Ji Xianxian, the 2 of you have caused too much of a commotion this time. Go and find martial nephew Chao." As soon as Tiankang Laozu finished speaking, not only Lu Ping, but even perfected Master Xianshu was in disbelief. This punishment wasn't too light, but it was unexpectedly severe. There was only one perfected Master Chao in Jinling, and Lu Ping knew him back then. He was the martial Uncle Chao that he met in the 7-star Grotto Heaven back then. Later on he even taught Lu Ping the soul-searching technique. After that, Lu Ping was specially allowed by the sect to participate in some of the matters of the sect's upper echelons by Laozu. Only then did he have some understanding of this martial Uncle Chao. To put it bluntly, this martial Uncle Chao was a knife that Jinling hid in the dark. He controlled a hidden force in Jinling and helped Jinling deal with some things that couldn't be seen in the light. And this hidden force that he controlled had a name that Lu Ping was extremely familiar with. It was the Condemned Cultivator. Ji Xianxian was still a little confused, but perfected Master Lu Xianyuan seemed to have some understanding of perfected Master Chao. He was stunned for a moment before he respectfully responded. "As for you." Lu Ping couldn't help but raise his head again. Everyone's gazes were on him. Lu Ping could even distinguish a trace of schadenfreude from among them. It belonged to the serious-looking Yuan Zhan. "Make a trip to the Pill Pavilion. The earth fire there has been very unstable recently. Go to the earth fire's mouth to suppress it for 5 years to prevent the earth fire from wreaking havoc and affecting the sect's supply of pills." Chapter 487. The earth fire vein of Dan Pavilion was the result of several generations of Jinling's senior cultivators' cultivation and strengthening. For thousands of years, the fire vein of Dan Pavilion had already accumulated to an extremely saturated state. However, all of this had become somewhat out of control after Jinling had his own magic treasure-level pill furnace. In the past, Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu worked together to upgrade the Nachuan cauldron to a magic treasure. However, whether it was Dan Pavilion or Refining Hall, the fire veins managed by the two were not enough to upgrade the Nachuan cauldron to a magic treasure. Moreover, because one of the 2 fire veins was explosive and the other was relatively mild, they were incompatible and could not be fused to refine the Nachuan cauldron. In desperation, the 2 Laozu had to use the 2 uncultivated fire veins that senior Jinling Laozu had previously discovered in the North Sea. Through a secret technique, the 2 fire veins were activated in advance and merged with the fire vein of Dan Pavilion to upgrade the Nachuan cauldron. As a result, because the 2 immature fire veins were hastily activated and merged with the fire vein of the Pill Pavilion, the original fire vein of the Pill Pavilion lost control and became violent. Because of the instability of the fire vein, the various alchemy rooms in the Pill Pavilion suffered a lot of damage because of the difficulty in controlling the fire. Of course, all of this was insignificant compared to the magic treasure-level pill furnace that Jinling had obtained. However, because of the uncertain strength of the fire vein in ordinary alchemy rooms, some low-level alchemists suffered unspeakably. It would take at least 5 years to control and cultivate the fire vein again. In desperation, Qianlu Laozu organized the alchemists with Jinling's core forging stage cultivation base to take turns to suppress and control the strength of the fire vein, temporarily stabilizing the fire vein of Dan Pavilion. At the same time, Taoist Xian Qin and the cultivators of his sect who were proficient in array formations were able to regain control of the strong fire vein as soon as possible. However, because the strength of these two immature fire veins was uncertain, Taoist Xian Qin needed to spend more time and energy to control the strength of the fire vein at a stable level. When Lu Ping once again saw Taoist Master Xian Dian, who was in charge of the daily affairs of the Pill Pavilion, Lu Ping looked at Taoist Master Xian Dian's strange gaze and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do. Lu Ping finally followed Reverend Xian Dian to the vicinity of the earth fire vent. Reverend Xian Dian finally opened his mouth and asked, "I heard that you fought with Senior Marshal Brother Xian Shu?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shirshu's opponent? I only asked Xian Shu Shirshu to teach me a little." Taoist Xian Dian nodded and solemnly said, "I heard that you killed a core forging late-stage demon cultivator. Originally, many people in the sect didn't believe it, but I'm afraid they have no choice but to believe it now." Lu Ping blushed with shame and quickly said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shirshu's opponent? It was just that Xian Shu Shirshu gave me 2 pointers, that's all. If it wasn't for Xian Shu Shirshu holding back, disciple would have already been beaten to a pulp." Taoist Xian Dian obviously wouldn't listen to Lu Ping's modest words. He walked to a blazing hot underground entrance and said, "This is the earth fire vent, which is also the main vein of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. In the next 5 years, your task is to completely suppress the raging earth fire at the earth fire vent, and steadily transport it to the various alchemy rooms." This was the main hub of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. Lu Ping walked to the underground entrance and saw a raging stream of earth fire, which was being controlled by 2 core forging stage cultivators with the help of an old formation, divided into 36 fire veins of different sizes. Among them, the 3 fire veins with the strongest firepower almost accounted for a quarter of the entire fire vein. These 3 fire veins were originally going to be transported to the only 3 A-grade alchemy rooms in the Pill Pavilion. This was because before Jinling obtained the Nachuan Cauldron, Jinling only had 3 top-grade alchemy furnaces. But now, one of the Linchuan Cauldrons was in the hands of Lu Ping. Therefore this alchemy room was left idle. Later, several alchemy grandmasters of Jinling would often bring their own high-grade alchemy furnaces to this alchemy room. They would try to use the higher-grade earth fire to refine some high-grade dawn. Another quarter of the fire vein was divided into 6 parts and transported to 6 B-grade alchemy rooms. Originally, 6 high-grade alchemy furnaces were placed in these rooms. However, these 6 alchemy furnaces were each controlled by the 5 alchemy grandmasters of the Pill Pavilion. The remaining one was often used by some core forging stage alchemy masters to hone their alchemy skills. It was said that Tao Xianfang, the disciple of Taoist Xian Jing, was about to become the 6th alchemy grandmaster of the Pill Pavilion. Therefore, Qianlu Laozu specially allowed him to temporarily control the remaining high-grade alchemy furnace to hone his alchemy skills. The remaining half of the fire vein was transported to 9 C-grade alchemy rooms and 18 D-grade alchemy rooms. Seeing Lu Ping come down, the 2 core forging stage cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein relaxed. Then with some doubt they asked, "How come it's only you?" Lu Ping stared blankly for a moment, then said, "Yes, it's only me." One of the cultivators who was talking with Lu Ping had slightly neglected his control of the fire vein. When Lu Ping saw that the fire vein that was being transported to the B-grade alchemy room suddenly swelled, the cultivator was startled and quickly suppressed it. Then he heard a roar from a distant alchemy room. Then Taoist Xianyan's face darkened. Seeing Lu Ping here, Taoist Xianyan's complexion changed. Then he looked at the 2 cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein apologetically, coldly snorted, then turned around and left. The cultivator who spoke before looked at Lu Ping with embarrassment and said, "Senior brother Xianyan has recently been pondering over a late core forging stage pill. This time, I'm afraid all his efforts have been wasted." Lu Ping looked at Taoist Xiandian next to him, then said to the cultivator, "This is not your fault. As an alchemy grandmaster, even if there was a large fluctuation in the fire vein, it shouldn't have affected him." Reverend Xiandian, who was standing to the side, opened his mouth to say something but smiled bitterly instead of saying anything. In truth, as an alchemy grandmaster he was most adept at controlling fire. Reverend Xianyan's failure to control the fire well had resulted in the pill being wasted, which was a dishonorable thing to do. Originally, when Taoist Shen Yan came to the earth fire vent, he wanted to vent his anger. After all, a late core forging stage pill was extremely precious, but after seeing Lu Ping he forcibly suppressed his anger in his heart. The two alchemists who were suppressing the fire vein might not understand, but Taoist Shen Yan couldn't let Lu Ping see a joke. Not to mention that Lu Ping was his martial nephew, a martial nephew that he didn't like very much. However, this talented martial nephew was also an alchemy grandmaster, and even more brilliant than him. Under the surprised gazes of the two core forging realm cultivators, Lu Ping really took over their positions. He sat cross-legged on the fire-splitting array disc in the center of the earth fire vent and began to control and manipulate the fire vein. His skillful fire-controlling skills left the two alchemists in awe. Suppressing the earth fire vein was an extremely boring task, not to mention that Lu Ping had to suppress it for a full 5 years. After suppressing the extremely unstable earth fire, Lu Ping also had to constantly sort out and divide the fire vein. 5 years of doing the same thing over and over again was undoubtedly an extremely boring task. For Lu Ping, with his control of fire and his cultivation that far exceeded the same level cultivators, suppressing the earth fire was not a difficult task. However, Lu Ping, as a cultivator who cultivated water attribute secret arts, was extremely uncomfortable in this place that was surrounded by flames. Lu Ping could clearly feel that his cultivation speed had dropped too much here. Fortunately, Lu Ping couldn't cultivate now. He first had to recuperate from his injuries, and then slowly expel the toxins that permeated his body because of the explosive yuan pill. Otherwise, even with the support of the pill, his cultivation would become twice the effort with half the result. To Lu Ping's surprise, after only 3 months, Lu Ping had broken through the state where the outside world's spiritual energy was isolated from Lu Ping's body because of the explosive yuan pill's toxins. Lu Ping discovered that when he was circulating his cultivation method to expel the toxins, the myriad meteoric poison energy shield was also slowly absorbing the toxins in his body. Lu Ping suddenly realized that even if he didn't purposely expel the toxins, under the absorption of the myriad meteoric poison energy shield, Lu Ping's body would gradually return to its original state. After a year, Lu Ping finally completely expelled the toxins in his body. The internal injuries from the fierce battle with Taoist Shen Shu were also completely healed. However, what made Lu Ping feel regretful was that the earth fire vent was really not an ideal place for Lu Ping to cultivate. Fortunately, Lu Ping immediately discovered another benefit of cultivating here, which was that he could continuously refine the true essence in his body while suppressing the earth fire, causing Lu Ping's true essence to become purer and thicker. Originally, Lu Ping walked the path of pure true essence. He didn't even hesitate to slow down the speed of his cultivation. However, after going through the refinement of the earth fire vent, Lu Ping discovered that his true essence could become even purer. Under the gaze of divine will, drops of condensed and concentrated true essence were absorbed by the golden core in the core space along with the circulation of the blood vessels. The 5 four-legged strange dragons on the surface of the golden core suddenly became more active. After they played on the surface of the golden core for a while, the 5 strange dragons looked up to the sky and made a long roar. A faint pressure was emitted from the underground fire vent until it expanded to a radius of nearly 10 miles before it slowly dissipated. This was the limit that Lu Ping's divine will could cover. In the pill room at the back of the mountain of the pill pavilion, Tianlu Laozu, who was refining a furnace of Dharma pills, trembled and almost ruined the furnace of pills in the Nachuan cauldron. Tianlu Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "Bloodline pressure? This isn't something that can only be found in top-grade demon beasts and true avatars. Could it be that a cultivator on Tianling Mountain is controlling a top-grade demon beast, or did a bored ancestral patriarch reveal his avatar?" After thinking for a while, Tianlu Laozu shook his head seriously and said, "No, the few Laozu on Tianling Mountain don't have this kind of bloodline pressure. Then someone must have caught a top-level demon as a pet." A top-level demon is a big problem. Could it be Lu Shuangping's Luan? Although that Luan is not a top-level demon, the Fire Luan, it is a Luan with dual attributes of wind and fire. It can be seen that it also has the blood of the Fire Luan. The Fire Luan is one of the top 3 races of the East Sea Demon clan. I hope it won't bring trouble to this sect. At this time, Lu Ping was at the underground fire vent. He took out the belongings of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Peng Xiuan, who was killed at the secret transmission array of the Covered Seas gang. At that time, he heard the Liao family cultivators say that Peng Xiuan had an important item on him. Chapter 488. Lu Ping didn't expect that immortal Ping Xiuan of the Crystal Palace was actually an alchemy master. No wonder immortal Ping Xiuan was so easily ambushed and killed by Lu Ping and Yin Xianqiu in the transmission array. How rich was the collection of an alchemy master? What's more, this alchemy master was from the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He took hundreds of thousand-year-old spiritual herbs and 20 to 33,000-year-old spiritual herbs from the storage device and put them into his own storage ring. Then there were nearly 20 jade bottles filled with various elixirs. Lu Ping opened them one by one. There were at least 5 or 6 elixirs that Lu Ping had never heard of. The others that Lu Ping knew were elixirs that were suitable for cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm. Lu Ping took advantage of them. After a cultivator advanced to the core forging realm, they could only take 3 bottles of each type of elixir because of their body's resistance to the elixirs. Then they would have to change to other elixirs for cultivation. Therefore, being able to obtain more elixirs of the same level was greatly beneficial for Lu Ping to continue to use elixirs to assist in his cultivation. In addition to these, what Lu Ping valued were the more than 10 kinds of elixir recipe jade slips in Ping Xiuan's storage device. Although Ping Xiuan's storage device did not contain his inheritance, there were actually 4 or 5 elixir recipes recorded in these elixir recipe jade slips that Lu Ping had yet to master. This could be regarded as an accumulation and foundation for both Lu Ping and Jinling. What's more, these elixir recipes were obviously from a sect like the Crystal Palace, so the quality of the elixir itself was naturally guaranteed. Of course, what delighted Lu Ping the most was that Ping Xiuan's alchemy furnace was also carried with him, and it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace. This made Lu Ping sigh at the wealth of the Crystal Palace. Although the Jinling Mountain's alchemy grandmasters each controlled a high-grade pill furnace, they were not allowed to bring it out of Tianling Mountain. If the grandmaster went out, the pill furnace would be placed in the pill pavilion's second-grade alchemy room. They were afraid that if the grandmaster died outside, the pill furnace would fall into someone else's hands. However, the Crystal Palace obviously didn't have such scruples. Apart from being rich and overbearing, the other reason was that they were sure that the practitioners they sent would never dare to attack the practitioners of the Crystal Palace. Even the upper-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hands was no exception. However, Lu Ping had a better top-grade alchemy furnace, and it was obtained by Lu Ping himself. Therefore, the sect's rule couldn't be restricted to Lu Ping. However, a year ago, Tao Xianfang, Sage Xianjing's disciple, finally succeeded in refining pills for the core forging stage and became the 6th alchemy grandmaster of Jinling. Therefore, the last upper-grade alchemy furnace in Jinling was also under his control. However, as the number of core forging stage cultivators in Jinling increased over the years, the only 6 alchemy grandmasters couldn't guarantee the supply of pills for all the cultivators. This caused the other 5 upper-grade alchemy furnaces to be in use, except for the one Lu Ping was in charge of. As a result, only Lu Ping's upper-grade alchemy furnace was left in the second-grade alchemy room for a long time. It became the only place for many alchemy masters in Jinling to practice their alchemy skills in order to advance to alchemy grandmaster. This made Qianlu Laozu quite annoyed. If this continued, Jinling's cultivation of alchemy masters would undoubtedly stagnate. These things boiled down to one reason: Jinling's foundation was insufficient. It wasn't that Qianlu Laozu didn't think of refining 1 or 2 upper-grade alchemy furnaces to alleviate the current situation. However, even if it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace for Jinling, it wasn't something that could be easily refined. Even if Jinling prepared the spiritual materials for the alchemy furnace, the refining pavilion would still need to spend several years or even longer to carefully polish it before it could be successfully refined. The appearance of this upper-grade alchemy furnace on Peng Xiuan's body could temporarily alleviate the conflict between alchemy and cultivation of alchemy masters in Jinling. After packing up all the other items, there were only 2 jade slips left in Lu Ping's hands. These 2 things on Peng Xiuan's body made Lu Ping very happy. However, Lu Ping couldn't determine which important item Peng Xiuan was referring to. Lu Ping first stuck one of the jade slips on his forehead. This way he could use his divine sense to examine the contents of the jade slips more carefully. The numerous and complicated restrictions, the profound and abstruse runes, a familiar feeling immediately made Lu Ping pleasantly surprised. The only difference was that Lu Ping no longer had a splitting headache like when he first saw these runes because of the lack of divine sense. In the end, he couldn't peek at the full picture of what was recorded in the jade slips. This jade slips recorded a treasured restriction. Moreover, it was the most precious of all treasured restrictions in the cultivation world, the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. How many treasured alchemy furnace restrictions were there in the entire North Sea? Just by looking at the only 2 magic treasure level alchemy furnaces in the entire North Sea, as well as the dozens of top-grade alchemy furnaces controlled by the top 10 sects in the North Sea, one could see the importance of the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. Lu Ping looked at the jade slips in his hand in surprise. His expression kept changing. In the end he still kept the jade slips. Although the quality of the Nachuan cauldron was far better than ordinary alchemy furnaces, it was still in the melting and breaking stage of the furnace and the treasured restriction. In a short period of time, it couldn't condense the second treasured restriction. However, the Xianling sect's boiling sea cauldron had been upgraded to a magic treasure for many years. It had already accumulated enough foundation. Perhaps it had the conditions to smelt the second treasured restriction. Thinking of this, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Even though the Crystal Palace was rich and overbearing, there was no reason for a core forging realm cultivator to carry this jade slips, which clearly showed the symbol of the Crystal Palace, around him. Then there was only one explanation. Peng Xiuan was able to carry the treasured restriction on him because the Crystal Palace gave it to him. Thinking of the alliance between Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea sect outside Huanyu Island, Lu Ping was shocked. Could this treasured restriction be given to Xianling sect? Lu Ping immediately thought of the Xianling sect's boiling sea cauldron, which had been upgraded to a magic treasure for hundreds of years. It already had a deeper foundation. After the Battle of Tianling Mountain, because of Tiankong Laozu's appearance, the Crystal Palace had secretly formed an alliance with Xianling sect in the North Sea. This was already an open secret in the North Sea. Then, in order to support Xianling sect in fighting against the increasingly powerful Zhenling, it was very easy for the Crystal Palace to use some means to strengthen Xianling sect's foundation. Could it be that the Liao clan was after this treasured restriction? Considering the Liao clan's alchemy skills were famous in the North Sea's cultivation world, it was understandable. However, from the few words Lu Ping heard during the ambush to kill Peng Xiuan, it did not seem to be the case. Lu Ping thought for a while, then placed the second jade slip on his forehead and carefully read its contents with his divine sense. After a long time, Lu Ping opened his eyes, and a strange look flashed across them. This jade slip recorded an incomplete map. There was no specific location marked on the map, but it seemed to be in the fallen secret land. The only clue on the map was the dozens of islands in the center of the map, marked with labels such as Myriad Poison Island, 100 Miasma Reef, Black Fog Swamp, Eroding Bone Island, and so on. It looked like an archipelago area covered in poison. This map was of some use to alchemists. After all, the more dangerous and strange a place was, the more likely it was to grow some exotic flowers and plants. It was a necessary item to refine some top-grade medicinal pills. This was quite attractive to alchemists. Moreover, due to the accumulation of time in these places, there might be some heaven and earth strange objects such as the Myriad Poison Meteorite Energy Shield, the 100-Flower Evil Qi, and so on. Not to mention, Lu Ping had the Myriad Poison Serum in hand, and his body had condensed the Myriad Poison Meteorite Energy Shield, so he was not afraid of this kind of miasma. As soon as he thought of heaven and earth strange objects, Lu Ping's mind flashed as if he had grasped something. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping vaguely said to himself, "Archipelago covered in poison. Myriad Poison Serum. Myriad Wonder Jade Dew, could it be that they came for the Myriad Wonder Jade Dew or the Spirit Forging Pill? Could it be that this map was what the Liao clan wanted?" The Liao clan was the Pill Cauldron clan, and from the words leaked by Peng Xiuan and Liao Hu, it could be seen that the Liao clan was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It seemed to be a branch of a clan in the Central Plains, and the Liao clan seemed to have a channel of communication between the North Sea and the Central Plains. For the Liao clan to move a branch from the Holy Land of the cultivation world to the barren North Sea, they must have some ulterior motive. Could it be for this map, the Myriad Wonder Jade Dew, or the pill recipe for the Spirit Forging Pill? If it was just for these things, there was no need for the Liao clan to operate in the North Sea for over 1,000 years. What exactly was the Liao clan plotting? Thinking about how the Liao clan's patriarch, Liao Ruinjia, had deliberately taken the initiative to befriend Lu Ping at the North Sea Palace's alchemist assembly, Lu Ping shook his head and decided not to think about this problem for the time being. The Liao clan had been operating in the North Sea for over 1,000 years. How could their objective be so easily discovered? After some time, Yao Yong, who had recovered from his injuries, ran to the earth-fire vent of the Pill Pavilion to see Lu Ping. As soon as he saw Lu Ping, Yao Yong looked as if he had seen a ghost. He winked and pretended to be deep in thought as he asked in a low voice, I heard that you actually fought with martial uncle Xian Shu outside the vast universe island? When Lu Ping entered the earth fire vent, Taoist master Xian Dian had asked him this question for no apparent reason. He didn't expect that after 2 or 3 years, Yao Yong would still ask him the same question. Lu Ping said in a bad mood, at that time I had no other choice. If I didn't stop martial uncle, what would we do if junior martial brother Ian was captured? Do you really want to clean up the sect? Yao Yong hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm not talking about that. Martial uncle Shen Shu is a 9th layer core forging expert. Although he is only slightly weaker than the 3 truths 4 spirits in our sect, he is still the most promising cultivator in our sect to condense a 7th layer golden core and achieve the avatar Laozu. Among the late-stage core forging cultivators, he is in existence whose name shakes the North Sea. How high is your cultivation? You actually fought with martial uncle Xian Shu and even knocked out Shenling sect's Su Weihong who was watching from the side. Lu Ping furrowed his brows and said, did these things spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know that I fought with martial uncle Xian Shu. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.